This is the fastest way to watch the entire Fast and Furious. Welcome to Movies Outpost as we go through all 11 movies and 2 short films in chronological order. If you've ever wondered how the story really unfolds or you just want the ultimate recap before the next chapter drops, then stick around, because this is the timeline breakdown every fan needs. From street races to world-saving missions, we're following Dominic Toretto's crew from the very beginning. So grab a seat, hit the NOS, and let's dive straight into the timeline. It all begins in the Fast and the Furious on a dark highway. A semi-truck cruises down the road when 3 black Honda Civics, each fitted with green underglow lights, suddenly speed toward it. The truck driver doesn't slow down. From the lead Civic, a masked man leans out holding a modified crossbow with a grappling wire. He fires once and yanks off the truck's windshield. Seconds later, another man shoots a second grappling wire, attaching it to the cabin. He climbs inside, but the truck driver fights back with a baseball bat. The attacker responds by shooting a tranquilizer dart into the driver's arm, eventually taking control of the vehicle. He steers the truck onto a new road passing through a construction zone and successfully hijacks it. The next day, Brian O'Connor is at the Dodger Stadium parking lot in Los Angeles. He's testing out his bright green 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX, pushing it to top speed. But he nearly loses control, which frustrates him. Later, he switches to a red pickup truck and heads to Toretto's Market and Cafe. There we meet Mia Toretto. As Brian walks in, she offers him a tuna sandwich, no crust. While she's making it, Brian keeps a close eye on Dominic Toretto, or Dom, who's in the back, watching Brian just as carefully. Soon after, a group of street racers pulls up. It's Dom's crew, Letty Ortiz, his girlfriend, along with Leon, Vince, and Jesse. Vince, who clearly likes Mia, sees Brian and gets jealous fast. Letty reminds him that Brian works for Harry, the guy who runs the local parts shop. The crew enters the cafe, and Vince sits next to Brian, trying to provoke him by flirting with Mia. Brian, annoyed, decides to leave and says he'll be back tomorrow. But Vince escalates things, telling him to find somewhere else to eat. Brian ignores him and heads for the door until Vince attacks, starting a fight in the street. Mia calls out for Dom to stop it. Dom steps in, tells Vince he's embarrassing himself, and forces him to back off. Then Dom grabs Brian's wallet, reads his name, Brian Earl Spillner, and tells him not to show his face there again. After the fight at the cafe, Brian heads to work at the Racer's Edge, a performance parts shop owned by Harry. While Brian's there, Harry gets a call from Dominic Toretto. Dom tells him to fire Brian for starting trouble at the diner. But Harry, knowing how important Dom is to his business, tries to keep the peace. He tells Brian that most of his customers are street racers who look up to Dom and copy whatever he drives. Firing Brian could hurt his shop, so Harry admits he lied to Dom to avoid letting Brian go. Despite the drama, Brian stays focused on one thing, making his car faster. He asks Harry for nitrous oxide. Harry warns him it's risky, especially for someone still new to the street racing scene. If things go wrong, the car could blow apart. That night, Brian shows up at a big street racing meet. Hector, one of the racers, greets him and jokes that Brian's aiming to go pro. Then Edwin, another racer, arrives and starts trash-talking Brian, doubting his skills. Soon, Dom rolls in with his crew. As the leader, he sets up a race and puts Hector in charge of collecting bets. Brian steps forward and wants in. He even offers his car as collateral. Then he adds that if he wins, he's not just taking the cash, he wants everyone's respect. Jesse takes a look under the hood of Brian's Eclipse, and the group is surprised by its setup. Dom, convinced Brian's serious, agrees to let him race. Everyone quickly moves to a wide open street. They block off traffic and prepare for the event. The lineup is set. Dominic Toretto, Brian O'Connor, Edwin, and a racer named Yamato. As the cars rev up and get into position, Leon listens to the police scanner, keeping watch for any signs of the cops. Once the road is clear, the race begins. Dom takes off fast, leaving everyone behind. Brian lags in last place, until he hits the nitrous. His Eclipse surges forward, passing the others. But even with the boost, he can't overtake Dom. Ignoring a warning from his car's computer, Brian hits the nitrous again, pushing the car past its limit. It starts to break down, but just when it looks like he might catch up, Dom fires off his own nitrous tanks and blasts through the finish line first. The crowd cheers as Dom claims victory. Brian walks up and says he was just inches from beating him. Dom laughs and calls him delusional, saying his driving was a mess. He points out that Brian almost blew his transmission and says any real racer would agree. It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile, winning's winning. Just then, Leon gets a heads up on the police scanner. Cops are on their way. Hector spreads the word and everyone rushes to their cars. Sirens blare as the police show up. Dom escapes into a parking lot, quickly hides his Mazda RX-7 and takes off on foot, hoping to slip away unnoticed. But an officer spots him and Dom starts running. Out of nowhere, Brian pulls up in his Eclipse and tells Dom to get in. The two speed off, with Brian showing off his driving skills as he dodges the cops. During the getaway, Dom says Brian is the last person he expected to show up. Brian jokes that maybe if he earns Dom's trust, he'll get to keep his car, but Dom quickly shuts that idea down. Impressed by Brian's moves, Dom starts asking questions, wants to know if Brian's a car thief or has a criminal record. Brian laughs it off and says he's only spent a few nights in jail for minor stuff. But he's surprised when Dom brings up something deeper. The 2 years Brian supposedly did for car theft. Dom explains he had Jesse look into Brian's background. These days it's easy to find anything online. Turning the tables, Brian asks about Dom's past. Dom admits he did 2 years in Lompoc prison and says straight up he'd rather die than go back. A little while later, Dom and Brian accidentally drive into enemy territory. Johnny Tran's turf. Johnny, his cousin Lance, and their crew of bikers surround them. They force Dom and Brian to follow them to Johnny's garage. There, Johnny brings up an old agreement between him and Dom. They had promised to stay out of each other's areas. Now Johnny wants to know who Brian is. Dom simply says he's his new mechanic. Then Johnny asks Brian if the car he was driving is his. Brian says it was, but now it belongs to Dom since he lost the race. Dom quickly clears that up, saying he hasn't received the pink slip yet. Johnny takes that as a sign that neither of them truly owns the car. Not long after, Brian demands answers. Dom tells him it's complicated. But before they can talk more, Johnny and Lance return and open fire on Brian's Eclipse. The car explodes in flames, triggered by the nitrous tanks inside. As they walk away from the wreckage, Brian pushes Dom for the truth. Dom finally explains that it all goes back to a failed business deal between him and Johnny Tran. Later, the two arrive at Dom's house where a party is in full swing. Dom invites Brian inside. Watching from her bedroom window, Mia notices Brian and decides to freshen up before seeing him. Inside, Dom is angry at his crew for leaving him behind during the police chase. Vince tries to explain that the cops were everywhere, but when he spots Brian, he confronts Dom, demanding to know why he brought Brian here. Dom shuts it down fast, saying Brian saved him from getting arrested. As the party goes on, Dom reminds Brian that he still owes him a 10-second car. Meanwhile, things get tense when Brian ends up alone with Vince, Leon, and Jesse. But Mia steps in, pulling Brian aside and taking him to the kitchen. While they chat, she opens up, telling Brian that Dom seems to have a soft spot for him, which is rare coming from her brother. The next day, as Brian heads to work, he's suddenly arrested by Sergeant Tanner and Officer Muse. They take him to a secret FBI base, but once inside they remove his handcuffs, revealing the arrest was just for show in case anyone was watching. It turns out Brian's not just a street racer, he's an undercover cop tasked with a specific mission. At the base, he meets Agent Bilkins, who's clearly upset. Not only was Brian's car destroyed, but there have been 4 major truck heists in just 2 months, and they still have no solid leads. Tanner explains that due to political pressure, Brian was placed undercover to crack the case. The robberies all involve black Honda Civics with custom modifications, targeting trucks carrying high-value electronics. Brian admits that everything seems to point toward Dom and his crew, but he's not sure Dom is the one actually pulling off the jobs. Still, he believes Dom knows who's behind it, and Bilkins makes it clear. Brian needs to find proof, and fast. Outside, we learn that Harry, the owner of the Racer's Edge, is a police informant. He's staying out of jail by helping the investigation since he's been caught with stolen parts before. Tanner also reveals that years ago, Dom nearly beat a man to death, giving Brian more to think about. Before heading out, Brian makes one request. He needs a new car. Later, Brian shows up at Dom's garage with a wrecked 1995 Toyota Supra. He tells Dom this is the car he owes him. At first, the crew laughs. It looks like junk, but when they open the hood, they realize most of the key parts are still in great shape. Jesse gets excited, saying that once they fix it up, the car will be unbeatable. He even suggests importing performance parts directly from Japan. Dom agrees and tells Brian he's signing him up for the upcoming desert race. Right then, Mia tells Brian that he's officially part of the crew. After the parts arrive, Jesse shows Brian a 3D computer design of what the finished car will look like. Brian is impressed and asks if Jesse studied engineering. Jesse admits he struggles with learning. He's good at math but dropped out of school. Still, he found his purpose working with cars. Later, the whole crew gathers at Dom's house for a Thanksgiving barbecue. Vince doesn't stick around when he sees Brian, but after they say grace, he returns to join the dinner. That night, Brian asks Mia if she'd like to go out sometime. She turns him down at first, saying she doesn't date her brother's friends. But then Vince walks in and mocks Brian. Mia shuts him down by asking the name of the restaurant Vince once said he'd take her to, then turns to Brian and tells him to take her there instead. Vince is left fuming. The next day, Hector stops by the Racer's Edge. Brian helps him out as Hector places a cash order for 3 sets of car parts. Brian notices that the parts are all for Honda Civics, the same type of car used in the truck heists. That night, while Hector and his crew are out partying, Brian sneaks into his garage to look for evidence. Inside, he finds several black Civics and begins to suspect they might be behind the robberies. But as he's about to leave, Vince shows up, catches him in the act, and hits him. Vince then drags Brian straight to Dom. Dom demands to know what's going on. Thinking fast, Brian lies. He says he's there because he owes Dom a second car and heard Hector's trying to win the desert race. He explains that Hector's been upgrading his cars and can't afford to lose. Vince doesn't buy any of it. He accuses Brian of being a cop. Brian denies it, but Dom cuts in and says they're going for a ride. Soon after, Dom, Brian, and the crew head to Johnny Tran's garage. Jesse keeps watch outside while the others break in. Inside, they find that the engines are missing from the cars. Brian also spots some electronics that may have come from a hijacked truck. Suddenly, Dom gets a warning call from Jesse. Johnny and his gang are on their way. The crew hides quickly and spies on them from the shadows. Johnny walks in with his cousin Lance. He confronts Ted Gassner, a man who smuggles engines, and demands to know where his shipment is. When Ted won't talk, Johnny forces motor oil down his throat to make him confess. Under pressure, Ted finally gives in and says the engines are at a nearby warehouse. The next day, Brian meets with his superiors to report what he saw at Johnny Tran's garage. Agent Bilkins suggests they move in and arrest Johnny and his crew, but Brian says it's all still just suspicion. There's no solid proof yet. Bilkins warns that truck drivers are starting to fight back. They're arming themselves, ready to defend against more hijackings. Sergeant Tanner then asks what Brian has found out about Hector. Brian explains that Hector's cars don't match the ones used in the robberies, the tire treads are different. He also admits he's starting to doubt whether Dom and Vince are involved either. Later, Tanner asks if Brian has read Dom's case file. Brian says he knows it by heart, but Tanner shows him photos of the man Dom nearly beat to death with a wrench. Even then, Brian asks for more time to keep working the case. That evening, Brian tells his friend he's taking Mia out to dinner. His friend warns him if he breaks her heart, he'll break his neck. Before the date, Dom invites Brian to stop by his place. At the garage, Dom shows him a black 1970 Dodge Charger, the one he and his father built together. Dom says it's never been driven even by him. He's afraid of it. Dom opens up and shares a personal story. Years ago, during a race, a driver named Kenny Linder caused a crash. He hit Dom's father's car, sending it into a wall. The fuel tank exploded, killing his dad instantly. A week later, Dom saw Kenny again, and even though he hadn't planned to, he attacked him with a wrench. He kept swinging until someone pulled him off. That assault got him banned from racing for life. As night falls, Brian and Mia are out enjoying dinner. Brian asks how her brother's crew came together. Mia explains that Vince has been Dom's friend since childhood. Letty was their neighbor and shared Dom's love for cars, which eventually led to them falling in love. Jesse and Leon showed up later and just became part of the group. She says her brother's like gravity. He pulls people in just like he did with Brian. But Brian tells her it wasn't Dom who drew him in, it was her. Getting close to Dom just came with it. Meanwhile, another truck heist is happening. Brian and Mia are asleep when his phone rings. It's Tanner. He tells Brian the hijackers have struck again. Bilkins decides it's time to arrest Johnny Tran and his crew. Brian agrees, quickly ending the call to keep Mia from hearing and finding out he's a cop. The next day, Brian, Tanner, LAPD, and the FBI move in. They quickly find Johnny and his crew and arrest them at the same time across different locations. Later that night, Bilkins gives them an update. Johnny and his gang are clean. The merchandise Brian saw at their shop was bought legally. The only charges they can press are for illegal weapons and street racing fines. That clears them of any link to the hijackings. Now under pressure, Bilkins gives Brian just 36 hours to crack the case, or he's off it. Tanner pulls Brian aside and says he's certain Dom and his crew are behind the robberies. But he warns Brian not to let his feelings for Mia cloud his judgment. Brian tells him Dom doesn't want to go back to prison. Tanner reminds him that's not his call and says it's time to choose where his loyalty lies. There are all kinds of families, Tanner says. Pick yours. The next day, the Toyota Supra is fully repaired. Brian and Dom take it out for a spin and easily beat a Ferrari in a street race. Afterward, they stop at a diner. There, Brian pretends to worry about money and asks Dom how he can afford expensive engines. He hints that it can't all come from fixing cars and selling sandwiches. Then he asks Dom to let him in on whatever business he's really running. Dom studies him for a moment, then slides a paper across the table with an address. It's for the desert race. He tells Brian, I'll test you there first. On race day, Brian arrives at the desert track. Letty is the first from Dom's crew to race and she wins with ease. Afterward, Brian runs into Jesse, who excitedly tells him he's betting his father's Volkswagen Jetta in the next race. Brian sees that Jesse is about to go up against Johnny Tran and pleads with him not to do it, but Jesse ignores the warning. The race starts and Jesse takes an early lead by firing his nitrous, but feeling too confident, he eases up. That's when Johnny hits his own nitrous and flies past him, winning the race. Jesse panics and speeds off into the distance. Leon quickly alerts Dom about what just happened. Johnny storms over to Dom, demanding that Jesse must hand over the car. Dom reminds Johnny he's not on his turf. Johnny then accuses Dom of tipping off the cops about his operation. Furious, Dom punches Johnny and the two start fighting.
I never knocked on nobody!
Vince and a couple of security guards break it up. Dom shouts that he never betrays anyone. Later that evening, Brian heads to Mia's trailer to find her. Through the window, he sees her arguing with Dom, begging him not to go through with something dangerous. But Dom, Letty, Vince, and Leon take off anyway. They're heading out to hijack another truck. Mia comes back inside, clearly upset. Brian questions her, hinting that he knows about the plan. She tries to avoid answering, but Brian finally tells her the truth. He's an undercover cop. Mia is shocked and angry, but Brian insists his feelings for her are real. Right now, he says the priority is saving Dom and the crew. He explains that the truckers are armed this time and ready to fight. Plus, law enforcement is watching the routes. Brian tells Mia she's the only one who can help stop this before someone gets hurt. She finally agrees and the two of them jump in the car, racing off to find Dom and the others. On the road, Mia tells Brian where Dom's crew has been hiding the Honda Civics. Since there aren't many truck routes and most are being watched, Brian calls into headquarters to request a trace on Dom's phone. He asks Mia for the number. She hesitates, holding back tears, but eventually gives it to him. Meanwhile, Dom and his crew arrive at the location where the Civics are stashed and begin prepping for the job. With Jesse still missing, Dom asks Letty to take his spot. Both Letty and Leon voice their concerns. They've got a bad feeling and don't think they should go through with it without Jesse, but Dom insists. He says this heist has been in the works too long to stop now. After this, he promises they're all taking a long vacation. He then pulls Letty aside and tells her about a dream he had, the two of them relaxing on a beach in Mexico. He says it's time they make that dream real. The crew gets into their Civics and heads out for the job. Back in Brian's car, headquarters finally responds with Dom's location. Brian checks the map, it's 40 miles away. He and Mia hit the gas, speeding toward the signal. At sunrise, Dom's crew moves into position, chasing down a truck on a deserted highway. Dom takes the lead in front of the truck, lining everything up. Vince gets ready with his grappling crossbow. He shoots it into the passenger seat and hooks himself to the truck, preparing to jump on. But through his rearview mirror, Dom sees something dangerous. The truck driver is armed. Dom tries to warn Vince not to go through with it, but Vince doesn't listen. The truck driver fires his weapon, but Vince manages to dodge the shot. Dom shouts at him to jump back into the car, but Vince is stuck, his arm tangled in the cable. As bullets fly, Dom and Vince both try to stay out of the line of fire. Letty pulls up to distract the truck driver, but he shoots at her, forcing her to back off. Vince tries to make the jump, but the trucker slams on the brakes, sending Vince crashing into the side of the truck. His arm gets badly caught in the harness. Dom pulls up to help, but the driver shoots out one of his front tires. Letty yells for Dom to move and tries to save Vince herself. She swerves under the trailer to get around, but the truck clips her car, sending it flipping off the road. Dom orders Leon to help Letty. Leon quickly turns back and pulls her from the wreck. Just then, Brian and Mia arrive at the scene. Vince is shot and seriously wounded. Dom keeps trying to rescue him, but his car is hit and stalls out, leaving him helpless. Brian tells Mia to drive while he climbs onto the truck. As the driver reloads, Brian reaches Vince and pulls him free, then jumps back into the car just before another shot can be fired. The trucker rams the car, forcing them off the road before speeding away. Moments later, Dom pulls up where Brian and Mia are trying to stop Vince's bleeding. Brian calls for an emergency medevac, revealing to Dom that he's a federal agent. Dom is furious, but when he sees Vince slipping into shock, he holds back. A few minutes later, the helicopter arrives and takes Vince away. Dom walks off to rejoin Letty and Leon while Mia looks at Brian in silence. Then, without saying a word, she turns and goes back to stand beside her brother. Brian races back to Dom's house and pulls a gun on him, trying to stop him from running. But Dom, also armed, says he's not planning to flee. He needs to find Jesse before Johnny does. Just then, Jesse shows up, apologizing for what happened at the desert race. But it's too late. Johnny and Lance pull up on motorcycles and open fire. As Brian and Mia dive for cover, Dom runs toward Jesse, but Jesse is hit in the hail of bullets. Brian takes off after the attackers while Dom grabs his late father's 1970 Dodge Charger to join the chase. Brian gets close, but Lance starts firing at him, forcing him to back off. Lance maneuvers behind him, ready to shoot again, until Dom suddenly appears and rams him off the road, sending him crashing down an embankment. Brian then spins around and opens fire on Johnny, hitting his bike and causing him to crash violently into a wall, killing him on impact. Moments later, Dom appears at the top of a hill. Brian jumps back in his car and chases after him, catching up at a traffic light. Dom mentions he used to race there back in high school and the railroad crossing is just ahead. When the light turns green, they go for an impromptu street race, both pushing it to beat the oncoming train. They make it across just in time, but suddenly a truck pulls out and Dom crashes into it with brutal force. Brian rushes over to help. Hearing police sirens in the distance, he tosses Dom his car keys, telling him, "I owe you." Dom takes the keys, jumps into the Toyota Supra and drives off, just before the cops arrive. In a post-credit scene, we see Dom driving through Baja California, Mexico, delivering his now iconic line,
I live my life a quarter mile at a time. For those 10 seconds or less, I'm free.
This story continues with the short film titled The Turbocharged Prelude for Too Fast, Too Furious. Brian remembers everything that recently happened with Dom. Now a fugitive, he disappears into the world of underground street racing across the city. His face spreads through the news, forcing him to stay hidden from the authorities as he moves from place to place. He eventually reaches New Mexico, where a woman who has seen him before offers him a ride to a car dealership, since he had to abandon his own car while escaping. From there, Brian begins traveling across the country, earning money by repairing cars and upgrading his own so he can keep moving. But leaving behind the thrill of speed was never an option for him. Eventually, Brian arrives in Miami trying to rebuild his life. Surrounded by fast cars and crowds of beautiful women, he finally feels like he's finding his place again, until two cars catch his eye, pulling him into the next chapter of his journey. In Too Fast, Too Furious, a crowd of street racers gathers at night for a big race organized by Tej Parker. But there's a problem. One racer is missing. Tej decides to call a friend to fill the spot. That friend is former LAPD officer Brian O'Connor. Since helping Dominic Toretto escape in the last film, Brian's been on the run, now wanted across the country. He's laid low in Los Angeles but jumps at the chance for some fast cash. Brian arrives in style, driving a silver Nissan Skyline GTR R34. Confident and cool, he proposes raising the stakes and the other racers agree. As they prepare, Brian catches the attention of Monica Fuentes. Tej then tells everyone he's added a little twist to the race. The competition begins and the drivers take off at full speed. Slapjack gets in front and blocks anyone from passing. But Brian skillfully edges past him. Slapjack hits his nitrous, blasting ahead just as the racers reach the final stretch. That's when Tej signals Jimmy to trigger the surprise. A drawbridge rises, forming a ramp. Brian and Slapjack both hit their nitrous at the last second, launching into the air. Brian soars past Slapjack mid-jump. Slap loses control and crashes into the bushes. Suki makes it across safely, but Orange Julius panics and brakes just in time. Brian lands cleanly and wins the race. As he approaches Monica, sirens wail. The cops arrive. Everyone scrambles to flee. Brian speeds off but is chased by a patrol car. He almost gets away, but another officer fires an ESD, an electronic dart that shuts down his skyline. The engine dies and Brian is forced to stop. After his arrest, Brian is taken to the station and questioned by U.S. Customs Agent Markham. During the interrogation, FBI agent Bilkins steps in. He briefs Brian on a major investigation involving Carter Verone, a wealthy man raised in Argentina, now based in Miami. Despite months of surveillance, they haven't found any solid evidence to pin on him. The FBI offers Brian a deal: help them take down Verone and they'll wipe his criminal record clean. Markham explains they already have an undercover agent in Verone's crew who's now been told to find new drivers. Even though Markham doesn't trust Brian, the FBI is going forward with the plan, hoping Brian can help them gather more intel through street racing. Brian's assigned a partner, but during a quick engine test the agent can't keep up. Brian tells them straight he wants to pick his own teammate. He and Bilkins travel to Barstow where they find Roman Pierce, or Rom, an old friend of Brian's. Roman's at a car show still wearing an ankle monitor from his house arrest. When Brian calls out to him, Roman turns cold and keeps walking. Brian follows, calling him Rom, but Roman snaps, warning him not to use that name. Only real friends can. Brian explains he's no longer a cop, but Roman's still furious, blaming him for his arrest and record. Things get heated and Roman tackles Brian to the ground. After the dust settles, Brian offers him a way out. Join him in Miami, help with the mission, and he'll be free. No more ankle monitor, no more house arrest. Roman doesn't believe it until he walks up to Agent Bilkins, who confirms the deal. With that, Roman agrees to team up. Later, Brian and Roman make their way to Miami. Roman still doesn't fully trust him, but during the drive, Brian says this is their shot to start over, and that it's time to take responsibility for their past. Once in the city, they're taken to a warehouse where they meet Monica Fuentes, the undercover customs agent who's been deep inside Verone's operation for a year. She's also romantically involved with him. Monica explains the plan. Brian and Roman must enter a street race against other drivers to earn Verone's trust and land a job in his crew. To prepare, they're given two modified cars. Brian gets a green and yellow 2002 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 7, and Roman gets a purple 2003 Mitsubishi Eclipse GTS Spider. They head to Verone's mansion, where all the racers gather. Verone tells them his Ferrari has been impounded at a boatyard 30 minutes away. The first team to retrieve the package inside the car will earn a spot on his crew, without hesitation. Brian and Roman jump into their cars, not knowing GPS trackers have been secretly installed, sending their location back to Markham's surveillance team. The race begins, and the duo quickly takes the lead, pulling slick moves to stay ahead. One racer tries to mimic their stunt but crashes into two trucks and gets run over, causing another driver to wreck too. A few racers manage to avoid the pile-up and continue. When they reach the boatyard, Brian and Roman head straight for the Ferrari and grab the package. But as they're leaving, Markham and his partner suddenly appear. Furious, Roman pulls his gun and fires at them, giving the pair enough time to escape. They return to Verone with the package, and he calmly tells them to meet him by the pool. At Verone's poolside, Roman gets irritated when he realizes the package they retrieved isn't worth much. Still, they're told they've been hired. Verone gives them a delivery job and promises no one will get in their way. If they succeed, he'll reward them with a big payout. But Roman doesn't hold back, he demands a raise. Verone, clearly annoyed, almost confronts him, but after a tense pause he lets it go and instead invites them to his club that night. Brian accepts the invitation. After leaving Verone's mansion, Brian and Roman drive over to Tej's garage. Brian asks his friend Jimmy to check out the cars. Meanwhile, Tej is busy running a jet ski competition behind the shop. Roman chats with him and asks if he still races. Tej explains he stopped after an accident and now sticks to organizing events. Brian also asks Tej if Roman can borrow a trailer for later. Then the two meet up with Jimmy, who says there's something unusual inside the cars, a connection system he's never seen before. Brian quickly realizes they're dealing with satellite trackers, which is how Customs was able to track them earlier. Roman tells Jimmy to take the trackers out, but Jimmy warns it's complicated. The system is tied into multiple car functions, and removing it won't be easy. Soon after, Brian spots Enrique and Roberto, two of Verone's men, following them. Thinking fast, Roman sets the windshield of their tailing car on fire, giving them a clean chance to slip away. Later, Brian and Roman meet with a team of law enforcement officers. Tensions rise quickly when Agent Markham picks a fight with Roman, accusing him of firing at him back at the boatyard. Roman fires back, blaming Markham for interfering with Verone's test, which nearly exposed their cover. Brian steps in and tells the group that he and Roman have officially been hired by Verone, who promised them police protection. He also reveals that Verone plans to move his money using a private jet to escape afterward. Roman adds that he doesn't fully trust Monica, suspecting she might be too influenced by her relationship with Verone. Markham isn't impressed. In retaliation, he brings up Brian's past, reminding everyone that Brian let Dominic Toretto go in Los Angeles, which cost him his badge. Despite this, Bilkins chooses to keep a closer eye on Markham instead. After the meeting, Roman questions Brian about what really happened in LA and asks for details about Toretto's escape, but Brian shuts him down. Back in the car, the two argue about the mission. They're worried. Monica might be emotionally tied to Verone, and Markham's interference is putting their lives at risk. Realizing they need to stay ahead, they come up with a plan to avoid being tracked by the customs agents. That night, they meet up with Tej and his crew for a street race against two drivers, Corpy and Darden. The goal is to win their cars. Even though their opponents have more powerful vehicles, Brian and Roman agree to race anyway, planning to time their nitrous boost perfectly to snatch victory. The first race is between Roman and Darden. Darden takes the early lead, and even with nitrous, Roman can't catch up. Meanwhile, Brian watches from the sidelines, noticing that his opponent Corpy has the upper hand. When it's his turn, Brian changes tactics. He drives straight at Corpy, forcing him to veer off course. Taking advantage, Brian hits the nitrous, quickly catches up and overtakes him, winning the race and earning new cars for both himself and Roman. Later that night, the two head to a nightclub to meet with Verone. Monica greets them and leads Brian to a table where they share a relaxed chat. But Verone watches from a distance, clearly suspicious. Eventually, he invites them to his private booth. There, Verone tells Brian he's noticed how he looks at Monica. He then scolds Roman for torching the windshield of his men's car and warns them that their biggest threat is law enforcement. Verone then leads them to a back room. Unsure of what's coming, Brian and Roman watch as Verone tortures Detective Whitworth, placing a rat on his stomach, covering it with a bucket, and heating the metal to make the rat dig through him. It's punishment for refusing to give Verone a 15-minute window to move his money without police interference. As the detective screams, Verone tells Monica to gag him. Finally, Whitworth gives in and agrees to help. Verone threatens him, "Betray me and your family suffers." Afterward, Verone turns to Brian and Roman. He tells them they'll have just 15 minutes to complete their task, or every cop in Florida will be after them. He gives them the exact time, date, and location to show up, then adds a final warning. "Betray me and you'll end up like Whitworth." As they head into the hallway, Verone pulls Monica aside and threatens to kill her if she ever gets close to another man again. Later, Brian and Roman return to Tej's garage. Roman is still on edge. He suspects Agent Markham might be working with Verone, especially after seeing her take part in the torture. But Brian defends her, saying she's just as much at risk as they are. The next morning, while Brian's asleep in his trailer, Monica suddenly shows up. She wakes him in a panic, warning that Verone plans to kill him once the job is done. She says Enrique and Roberto have orders to make sure he doesn't survive. Just then, Roman bursts into the trailer, alerting Brian that Verone's men are circling the area. He freezes when he sees Monica inside, assuming the worst. But she quickly explains that they don't know she's there, at least not for sure. Brian asks Roman to keep the men distracted so Monica can slip away. Playing it cool, Roman steps outside and strikes up a fake friendly chat with them. Inside the trailer, Monica kisses Brian and begs him not to go through with the job. When he finally exits, Enrique and Roberto get suspicious and push their way inside, searching for Monica. They don't find her, but tension rises. Enrique grabs Roman and pulls a gun. Brian acts fast. He disarms Roberto and turns the gun on him, ordering Enrique to back off. Right then, Verone arrives. He diffuses the situation and tells everyone to lower their weapons. He calmly informs Brian and Roman that Enrique and Roberto will be riding with them during the job, just to make sure nothing goes wrong. Meanwhile, back at Verone's mansion, Monica is lounging by the pool. Verone approaches and suspiciously asks where she was earlier that morning. She quickly replies that she had breakfast with friends, but he doesn't seem to believe her. That same morning, Brian and Roman meet with their superiors to report Verone's threat against Detective Whitworth. They're told Verone plans to escape via a private jet from a strip near Network Avenue. They're also warned, once the job is done, Verone intends to have them killed. Bilkins wants to cancel the mission, but Markham steps in, clearly frustrated. He insists that only he can call it off since it's a customs case. Ignoring the risk, he hands Brian and Roman 2 radios and orders them to deliver the money as planned so Verone can be caught in the act. If they fail, he promises to hit them with enough charges to send them away for good, and reminds them they'll be watched the entire time. Feeling trapped, Roman points out the obvious. If they help Verone, they die. If they back out, they go to prison. Left with no choice, the two come up with a new plan. They'll make Verone stash the cash in the cars they control and execute their own strategy. They head to Tej's garage and ask him and his crew to modify the cars they won from Corpy and Darden. Brian also tells Jimmy to install nitrous, just in case they need it during a chase. As evening falls, Brian asks Roman why he's always eating so much. Roman laughs and says after spending years in prison with terrible food, he's making up for lost time. Besides, with everything going on, he figures he won't be free much longer. Either the law or Verone might catch up to him. Feeling reflective, Brian brings up old memories when they used to play football as kids and get into trouble together. He says he regrets not being there for Roman when he got arrested and wishes he could have helped. Brian admits Roman has always been like a brother to him. But Roman isn't convinced. He asks if that's the same reason Brian let Toretto go. Then, in a rare moment of honesty, he tells Brian not to carry that guilt. Roman says his life was already falling apart because he felt alone. Hearing this, Brian promises he'll never let that happen again. The next day at Verone's mansion, he and Monica get into their car and head to the airstrip. They're being watched by an undercover officer who quickly radios in to Agent Dunn and Bilkins. Bilkins requests a helicopter for air support while Markham's team prepares to move in. Meanwhile, Detective Whitworth, still working for Verone out of fear for his family, coordinates his own officers from various hidden positions. Elsewhere, Brian and Roman go over their plan one last time. Soon after, Enrique and Roberto lead them to a quiet neighborhood where they pull up to Verone's trailer. One of Whitworth's officers reports suspicious activity at the location. Suddenly, Verone's men break through a wall, revealing a hidden stash of cash. They stuff the money into duffel bags and hand them off to Brian and Roman. Once the promised 15-minute head start is up, Whitworth gives the go-ahead for the local police to make their move. Bilkins, frustrated, realizes the local cops are now chasing their suspects too, complicating everything. Knowing they're running out of time, Brian, Roman, Enrique, and Roberto jump into their cars. Roman, determined not to go back to prison, hatches a quick plan. He wedges a rock on the gas pedal of one of the cars, sending it speeding forward without a driver. The unmanned vehicle crashes into the squad cars, creating a roadblock and giving them just enough time to escape. Back at the station, Bilkins orders a helicopter into the air to keep visual contact on Brian and Roman and make sure they're not lost during the chase. Soon, a high-speed pursuit breaks out across the city. The police close in fast. From above, the chopper fires an ESD, an energy system neutralizer, at their cars. Roman swerves just in time, dodging the shot and continuing the race, but Brian isn't as lucky. The device hits the rear of his car, and once it activates, his vehicle begins to slow down. Luckily, the neutralizer has a glitch. It doesn't fully disable the car. Brian quickly takes advantage of it. Before the car stalls completely, he tells Enrique to take the wheel. Though Enrique protests that he can't drive, Brian says he just needs to keep it steady. Working fast, Brian crawls over and disables the device before it resets. He yanks it free and hurls it at a patrol car behind them, causing confusion and chaos among the officers. With the distraction, the duo slips away and manages to break free from the police, at least for now. Feeling the rush of freedom, they celebrate briefly, knowing they've outsmarted the agents once again and are still in the game. Meanwhile, at the airstrip, Verone's private jet lands. But the area is already surrounded by Markham's team. Bilkins tells him they have to wait for Brian and Roman to arrive with the cash. Back on the road, the chase is still on. Brian and Roman do everything they can to shake off the police. Just then, the helicopter Bilkins called in starts streaming live footage of the pursuit. Even with the feed, the agents can't figure out where the duo is headed. Inside the car, Brian tells Roman it's time to put their plan into action. They lead the police to a large warehouse and quickly shut the doors behind them, cutting off the patrol cars. Seconds later, the doors swing open again and chaos erupts. A fleet of off-road vehicles blasts out of the warehouse, slamming into the police cruisers. Dozens of street racers follow, scattering in all directions and completely overwhelming the officers. Watching from above, Bilkins can't help but grin at the clever setup, though he's clearly frustrated. With so many cars flooding the streets, the agents lose track of Brian and Roman. Feeling good about the move, Brian tells the racers to clear the area so he and Roman can continue the mission alone. A short time later, Bilkins, watching the footage, spots two cars heading west and confirms it's them. The helicopter takes off again and patrol cars are sent to intercept. But when the police finally stop the two vehicles, they're in for a surprise. It's Tej and Suki behind the wheels. Brian and Roman had already swapped cars, keeping the real mission hidden from everyone, even their own team. Meanwhile, the real duo have successfully shaken off the cops and continue their mission alongside Verone's men. They celebrate their temporary victory, but Brian reminds Roman there's still one last move they have to make. Back at headquarters, Bilkins informs Markham they've lost track of the pair. Frustrated, Markham decides to stop Verone before he can escape. Meanwhile, Roman puts his plan into action. Using a hidden nitrogen-powered ejector seat, he launches Roberto straight out of the car. He then radios Brian, telling him to do the same to Enrique. At the same time, Markham's team stops Verone's truck only to realize they've been tricked. The truck is a decoy with only the driver inside. Bilkins, now furious, realizes they've been played. Just as Brian prepares to eject Enrique, the henchman unexpectedly tells him to take a different route, one that wasn't part of the plan.
Tarpon Point. There's no airstrip at Tarpon Point. Who said anything about an airstrip?
Elsewhere, Roman links up with Jimmy and tells him something feels off. They've lost contact with Brian, the feds are in the wrong place, and Monica is alone with Verone. Roman fears Brian won't make it in time. Brian finally arrives at the real drop-off point. He quickly unloads the cash, but Verone, growing suspicious, asks where the rest is. Brian tells him it's in the second car, still on the way. Verone, clearly tense, confronts Brian about the police showing up at his plane. Brian says nothing. That's when Verone reveals he knew all along that Monica was undercover. He says she was the only one who knew about the fake drop-off, and that gave her away. Verone then orders one of his men to take Monica to his yacht. She resists but backs down when a gun is pointed at her. The man then tells Enrique to take Brian somewhere quiet and finish the job. Forced to drive down a remote road, Brian sits behind the wheel, with Enrique holding him at gunpoint. In a last-ditch effort, Brian tries to use the ejector seat, but it fails. Suddenly, Roman crashes onto the scene, slamming his car into Enrique's truck. The impact gives Brian the opening he needs. A fight breaks out, but Brian can't take Enrique down alone. Roman jumps in just in time, and together they finally overpower him. Meanwhile, Verone tries to escape on his private yacht. But Brian and Roman act fast. Jumping into a Chevrolet Camaro, they launch it off a ramp at full speed, crashing hard onto the deck of the boat. The impact is brutal. Brian walks away with minor injuries, but Roman suffers a fractured right arm. Verone, shaken but still armed, approaches with his gun aimed. Brian quickly grabs the pistol he had stashed in the car and shoots Verone in the shoulder, leaving him seriously wounded. As Verone reaches for his weapon again, Monica steps in, grabbing the gun and holding it on him without hesitation. Moments later, police arrive and place Verone under arrest. The boat is brought back to shore where customs and FBI agents seize all the stolen cash. Markham, looking doubtful, asks if they're sure there were only 3 bags on board. Roman, meanwhile, checks if they're truly free of all charges. Markham confirms they've kept their end of the deal. Their records are now clean. Roman smiles and pops open the trunk of his car, revealing 3 extra bags stuffed with cash. Handing them over, he smirks and says maybe there were 6 bags after all, and now everything's accounted for. Markham, caught off guard, takes one of the bags and calls over Agent Dunn to log the extras as evidence. As Verone sits in custody, paramedics treat the gunshot wound in his shoulder. Roman watches from a distance, cracking jokes at his expense, but Brian warns him one day Verone might try to get revenge. Still feeling confident, Roman shrugs it off, saying Verone won't be getting out anytime soon. But the thought lingers in his mind and he starts to wonder what if he does. Later, Bilkins and Monica meet up with the duo to thank them for their help. They confirm the decoy drivers have been released and let them know a sedan is on the way to pick them up. With a smile, they ask the guys to return it in one piece. Both agents express their appreciation, knowing it was Brian and Roman's plan that led to Verone's capture. Now finally free, the 2 friends decide to stay in Miami and start fresh. During their walk, Brian casually brings up the idea of opening an auto shop. Roman laughs, asking how they'll afford that. Brian smirks and says, "Who said I'm broke?" Roman grins back and says, "And who said I'm hungry?" He then pulls out a hidden stash of Verone's money, tucked safely in the folds of his pants, proving he'd kept a little bonus for their trouble. This story continues with Los Bandoleros, another short film that gives us a deeper look into the lives of the main characters. Here, we see Tego in prison, reflecting on the corruption around him and the broken system that pushed them into becoming outlaws. He makes it clear that the only people they can trust are their own. In the Dominican Republic, Santos is surrounded by his closest friends as he deals with a major problem. The country is facing a severe gasoline shortage. During this crisis, Han arrives on the island, bringing a new energy to the group. Santos soon realizes how badly the lack of fuel is affecting his family, driving up food prices and making life harder for everyone. Meanwhile, Dominic Toretto is in his garage working on his car when Santos stops by with a beer and reminds him about their meeting with Elvis that night. Their goal is to plan a heist on a fuel truck. Right then, Han walks into the garage. Santos doesn't recognize him, but Dom introduces them and the two hit it off immediately. Soon after, the whole group gathers to share a meal, thankful for what they have as they prepare to take on the growing fuel crisis. But before they can move forward, they need Tego, who is still locked up. That night, everyone heads to the prison with one goal: freeing him. As they pass through the kitchen, Dom asks who owns the place, and Tego explains that it belongs to Elvis, a local politician. After Tego changes out of his prison clothes, the group heads to a party where they reunite with the rest of the team. In the lively atmosphere, Kara and Han begin to show interest in each other, while Toretto and Tego engage in a spirited conversation with Elvis. Elvis welcomes the unexpected guests without hesitation. Their talk quickly turns into business, and he tells them he won't interfere as long as their work happens outside his territory. He also makes it clear that the heist must happen only while the cargo is in motion. Dom agrees confidently, assuring him that won't be a problem. During the party, Dominic enjoys himself for a while, until Letty appears. She tries to lighten the mood with a joke, but her irritation is clear. Still, the two quickly work things out. The next day, they drive through the local streets, surrounded by people who have become like family to them. Letty watches how naturally Dom interacts with everyone and notices he doesn't hide his longing to return to the United States. She gently tries to comfort him. Eventually, they arrive at a beautiful beach to spend the afternoon together, taking in the stunning Caribbean scenery, an ideal moment to relax and reflect on what's coming next. Fast and Furious opens on a lonely mountain road in the Dominican Republic. A massive tanker truck filled with gasoline is speeding down the highway, and right behind it, Dominic Toretto, his girlfriend Letty Ortiz, and their crew. Han Lu, Cara Murtha, Tego Leo, and Rico Santos are in hot pursuit. They're pulling off a dangerous heist to steal the gas. Letty climbs out of her car as Dom drives up close to the tanker, giving her room to jump on. Once she's safely on the truck, Dom speeds up to take the lead while Han moves in behind, setting up for Cara to hook her Chevy to the first tank. Letty wastes no time. She sprays liquid nitrogen on the metal hooks and smashes them with a hammer to break the connection, then quickly moves to the next one. Han locks onto the first tank and pulls back, clearing space for Tego to line up behind the rest of the truck. Dom suddenly spots a steep cliff up ahead and warns everyone to hurry. The truck driver notices Letty in his mirror and starts swerving wildly, trying to knock her off. Rico manages to get his car hooked, but the driver rams Dom's vehicle, pushing him toward the edge of the road. In the chaos, Letty loses her hammer and nearly falls, barely hanging onto the truck's ladder. Dom orders Tego to unhook fast while dodging the driver's wild swings and gunfire. As the cliff looms closer, Dom races up beside Letty, urging her to freeze the next hook with nitrogen. She warns she can't break it without her hammer, but Dom insists, telling her to try anyway. Letty does exactly what Dom tells her. She sprays the liquid nitrogen on the hooks and Dom shouts for her to hang on tight. With perfect timing, he slams his car into the tank, breaking it loose. But as it comes free, a sharp piece of metal flies past Letty, cracking the tank and spilling gasoline right beneath her feet. Dom quickly throws his car into reverse, getting as close as he can to the truck to save her. With the danger growing, he yells for Letty to jump up ahead. The driver suddenly realizes the road curves straight off a cliff. Panicking, he hits the brakes, but it's too late. In one last desperate move, he leaps out of the truck, dragging his pet iguana with him. Meanwhile, Dom speeds up and reaches Letty just in time. She jumps, catching his hand, and he pulls her safely into the car. But their trouble isn't over yet. The tanker starts spinning out of control, crashing and flipping behind them. One of the tanks breaks loose and tumbles toward them, rolling and bursting into flames. Letty screams at Dom to do something. Staying calm under pressure, Dom slams the gas and swerves hard, dodging the flaming wreck at the last second. The tank explodes behind them in a massive fireball, plunging off the cliff as Dom and Letty escape unharmed. Later that night, the crew gathers to celebrate their successful gas heist. Laughter fills the air as Dom divides the money, making sure everyone gets their fair share and thanking each of them for their part in the job. As things calm down, Han pulls Dom aside and tells him that the cops raided his garage in Verona. It's clear the authorities are starting to close in and the recent job might have drawn too much attention. Han suggests it's time for them to leave the Dominican Republic before things get worse, but Dom shakes his head. He knows the heat is really on him, not the crew. If the police catch him, anyone with him could end up behind bars too. With that, Dom tells Han to go his own way and keep moving forward. Han gives a small smile and says he's heard about some exciting things happening in Tokyo, hinting that's where he might be headed next. After Han leaves, Dom finds Letty. She tells him that Rio de Janeiro is beautiful this time of year, suggesting they could escape there together. But Dom warns her that the police are closing in and he doesn't want her caught up in his mess. Letty looks at him with determination and reminds him of their motto, ride or die, saying they'll face whatever comes their way together just like they always have. That same night, while Letty sleeps peacefully, Dom makes a heartbreaking decision. Without a word, he packs up, leaves her share of the money from the heist and places his silver necklace beside her before slipping away into the night. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Brian O'Connor is back in action as a federal agent. He's in the middle of a high-speed pursuit, chasing a man connected to the Mexican mafia, led by the ruthless Arturo Braga. The chase rips through the city streets as the suspect crashes through stalls and crowds in a busy downtown market. The man knocks a police officer down and snatches his gun, firing at Brian, but missing. Undeterred, Brian keeps up the chase as the suspect ducks into an apartment building, cutting through a woman's home and leaping out a window onto the rooftops. Brian refuses to back off. He smashes through another window and tackles the guy, both of them crashing hard onto the roof of a parked car below. Pinned and terrified, the suspect finds himself staring down Brian's gun. With nowhere to run, he blurts out the name Brian's been after all along. David Park. Not long after, at FBI headquarters, Agent Penning scolds Brian for the chaos and property damage he caused during the downtown chase. But Brian stands his ground, explaining that he got the name David Park, a man who recruits drivers for Braga's cartel. If they can catch Park, they'll be closer to bringing down the entire operation. Meanwhile, far away in Panama, Dom is living quietly and working on his car when he gets a call from his sister, Mia. Her voice shakes as she tells him the devastating news. Letty has been murdered. Back in Los Angeles, Letty's funeral takes place under heavy FBI surveillance. Brian and the other agents are watching closely, hoping Dom will show up so they can arrest him. But instead, Dom stays hidden at a distance, silently watching as the woman he loved is laid to rest. One of the agents reports that facial recognition picked him up crossing the border, confirming what Brian already suspects. Dom is nearby even if they can't see him. That night, Mia returns home, unaware that the house is under watch. She walks into the garage and freezes when she turns around to see her brother standing there. Dom's eyes fall on the black Dodge, the same one Letty had been rebuilding ever since he wrecked it. Mia tells him that Letty refused to let anyone take the car even though she thought it was cursed. She worked on it every night, determined to finish it. Then Dom notices something hanging inside, the silver necklace he once left behind. Quietly, he asks Mia to take him to the place where Letty crashed. Meanwhile, at FBI headquarters, Agent Penning gathers the team for an update. He tells them his superiors are losing patience with the Braga investigation. It's been 2 years, and despite their efforts, along with the deaths of undercover agents like Letty, they still don't have solid evidence. Braga has become one of the biggest criminal threats in the country, yet the case remains at a standstill. Agent Stashak argues that David Park isn't an important lead. But Brian disagrees. He insists that Park is crucial. Without him, Braga wouldn't have the skilled drivers needed to move his shipments. Brian suggests checking traffic violations, illegal vehicle modifications, and street racing records to track Park down. That same night, Dom and Mia arrive at the site where Letty died. The area is quiet and dark, but on the road, Dom notices faint marks from nitromethane fuel, a rare substance used in high-performance cars. Carefully studying the scene, he begins to piece together how the crash happened. As they drive back, Dom tells Mia what he found. He's certain there's only one person in all of Los Angeles who sells nitromethane. Mia pleads with him to let it go before he gets himself killed, but Dom refuses to back down. Ignoring her warning, he speeds off into the night. Later that evening, Mia is brought in for questioning at FBI headquarters. The next day, Mia is being questioned by Agent Stashak, who pressures her to talk. When Brian sees what's happening, he tricks his partner into transferring her to another room, giving Mia a brief chance to breathe. With no other option, she decides to cooperate. That same morning, Dom tracks down the nitromethane dealer and demands answers. Cornered, the man admits that the buyer was David Park. Meanwhile, Brian meets Mia at a small restaurant and warns her that the police are closing in on Dom. He tells her to stay out of it, but she's furious. She reminds him how he lied to her 5 years ago, pretending to care while destroying her family. Brian admits his mistakes, but she doesn't let up, calling him out for hiding behind his badge and pretending to be the good guy. Later, back at the FBI office, Brian goes through files until he finds the right David Park and decides to move in. But Dom gets there first. He storms into Park's apartment and attacks him, demanding to know who owns the car that used nitromethane. Panicked, Park explains that he's just Braga's mechanic and offers to sign Dom up for the next street race instead. Dom isn't satisfied and threatens to throw him out the window. Just then, Brian bursts in, stopping Dom at the last second. He reveals that Letty had been working with Braga before things went wrong. Furious, Dom swears he'll kill Braga and anyone standing in his way, then drops Park. But Brian manages to catch him before he falls. Park is later arrested and taken to FBI headquarters. When they return, Stashak confronts Brian for taking Mia without clearance. The argument turns physical and Brian slams him into a wall, leaving him bleeding. Penning steps in, ordering them to stand down, and warns Brian that the only thing separating a cop from a criminal is one bad decision, advising him to keep his temper under control. During a meeting, the agents learn that Braga's right-hand man, Ramon Campos, has organized a street race to find new drivers. With David Park's help, Brian gets himself registered and starts modifying 3 cars for the job. At the same time, Dom prepares his own ride for the race. Before heading out, the FBI gives Brian a GPS tracker under Penning's orders. That night, at the event, Brian meets Dwight Miller, another racer working for Braga. Giselle Yashar steps in to gather the drivers and introduces them to Campos. Campos explains that Braga only wants real drivers and that they don't need to know what they'll be transporting. Dom calls him out, saying any true driver always knows what's in his car. Phoenix Calderon steps up to challenge him, but Dom holds his ground until Campos reminds everyone that he's in charge. Campos then announces that the race will run with no street closures, and Giselle hands out GPS devices with the route. The race begins, and Dom immediately takes the lead with a smooth move while Brian falls to the back. During the chaos, one driver crashes and dies, forcing Brian to veer off the GPS route to avoid the wreck. Alex tries to ram Dom off the road, but Dom counters, sending Alex spinning into a bridge where he crashes and dies. Brian slips past the wreck, leaving only him and Dom battling for first place. Just as Brian is about to win, Dom bumps his car, throwing him off balance and crossing the finish line first. After the race, Brian confronts Dom for cheating, but Dom reminds him there were no rules. Campos steps in and congratulates Dom. Confirming his spot on Braga's team, Giselle takes his fingerprint and phone number, teasing that the print is for Campos but the number is for her. As Brian walks away, Dwight mocks him for losing. The next day, Brian leads an FBI sting to arrest Dwight for possession of illegal substances. That night, he and Dom meet with Campos. During the conversation, Ramon asks if they already know each other. Staying in character, Brian says yes, and Dom adds that they do because Brian used to date his sister. When Campos steps away, Brian keeps watch, hoping to gather clues. He spots Campos meeting a man he suspects could be Braga himself. Meanwhile, Dom checks out a car in the garage behind the bar. Giselle appears and notices his interest, but Dom casually says he's just admiring the paint. When he asks if it's her car, she explains it belongs to Phoenix, who will be leading their route to the rendezvous point. The next day, Brian hands 2 glasses with fingerprints from Campos's meeting to Agent Sophie Trin, asking her to run the prints through Interpol and other law enforcement databases to confirm if the man he saw is really Braga. Right then, Brian gets a call and heads to the meeting point. There, Braga's men begin scanning all the cars with metal detectors, checking to make sure no one's carrying a tracker. Brian gets tense when he realizes the GPS device Penning planted on him is still active. Thinking fast, he shuts it off just in time before they find it. Back at FBI headquarters, the agents suddenly lose Brian's signal, and Penning immediately orders the helicopter team to be on alert. Once the inspection is done, Campos instructs the drivers to load their cars onto a truck heading for the Mexican border. That night, the convoy arrives at their destination. Giselle reminds everyone to follow every instruction carefully. Dom asks where Phoenix is, and she tells him he'll be joining them later. The team links up and prepares to move out. Taking advantage of the darkness, they drive toward the US-Mexico border, with Phoenix catching up to lead the group. As they push through the desert, a border camera briefly spots them, but when it turns for a thermal scan, the cars vanish from view. Giselle warns the team they've been detected and tells them to pick up the pace. Phoenix leads them toward a hidden tunnel entrance while border agents scramble to locate them. With helicopters closing in, Giselle urges everyone to move faster. Finally, the crew races through the underground tunnels, successfully crossing the border without being seen. Once the mission is done, the crew meets at the drop-off point to unload the shipment, but Dom senses something isn't right. Quietly, he disables the nitrogen lock and flips on the lighter inside his car, ready for whatever is coming. Phoenix soon reveals his plan to kill the entire team, but Dom confronts him first, saying he knows he's been using nitromethane. That grabs Phoenix's attention and he smirks, asking if Dom has checked his own car. Dom fixes him with a cold stare and brings up Letty's Plymouth, demanding to know what happened to it. Phoenix arrogantly admits he's the one who wrecked her car and with a cruel grin adds that the last time he saw her, she was burning alive. Furious but calm, Dom starts to laugh. Phoenix, confused, asks what's so funny. Dom looks him dead in the eyes and says he's going to enjoy what happens next. At that instant, Dom's car erupts in a massive explosion, setting off a chain reaction as the rest of the cars blow up one by one. Amid the chaos, Brian grabs a gun from one of Phoenix's men and opens fire, taking down several guards. At the same time, Dom takes on Phoenix's men in a brutal fight. Even after being shot in the back, he barely reacts and knocks out the man who fired at him. Meanwhile, Brian jumps into action, stealing the truck loaded with the merchandise and shouting for Dom to get in. The two speed away, escaping the chaos behind them. Afterward, Brian calls his boss to report that he has the cargo, but Penning already knows he's with Dom and orders him to hand over both the goods and Toretto. Seeing that Dom is badly wounded, Brian watches as he opens one of the trunks and confirms it's filled with the shipment. Brian insists he needs medical help, but Dom refuses, saying they should stash the product first. They drive to an impound lot and hide the car carrying the merchandise. As they head out, Brian reminds Dom he still owes him a 10-second car after wrecking his old one. Keeping his word, Dom gives him a car to settle the score. Later, they take shelter at one of Dom's cabins outside the city. Not long after, Mia arrives with a first aid kit to treat her brother. She checks the wound and finds the bullet didn't lodge, so she just needs to clean and stitch it. With a teasing tone, she warns it'll hurt, and Dom grins, saying she'll probably enjoy it. Moments later, the three sit down to eat. Before Dom can start, Mia stops him and insists they say grace first. They bow their heads, give thanks, and share the meal. After dinner, Dom looks through a box of Letty's belongings and finds an old photo of them together from years ago. Meanwhile, Brian sits down with Mia and opens up about his past. He admits that he let Dom go years ago because he respected him more than he respected himself. He says Dom taught him that the most important thing in life is having a code. When Mia asks what that code is, Brian quietly says he's still trying to figure it out. At the same time, Dom finds Letty's old phone and checks her last calls. When he dials the most recent number, he's stunned to hear Brian's voice on the other end. Realizing Letty had been working undercover, Dom storms out to confront him. The two get into a brutal fight as Dom accuses Brian of hiding the truth. During the fight, Brian finally admits that Letty did it for him. She volunteered to work with the FBI, hoping to take down Braga in exchange for clearing Dom's record so they could be together again. But the truth only makes things worse. Feeling betrayed and heartbroken, Dom walks away without another word. Later, Brian returns to the FBI office to check in. Penning is furious, demanding to know why he disobeyed orders and asks where the stolen goods are. Brian tells him the merchandise is safe and explains his plan to use it as bait to lure Braga into the open. Stashak doubts the plan will work, but Brian insists Braga has no other choice. He also proposes that if the plan succeeds, Dom should finally be granted his freedom. Dominic contacts Giselle by phone and asks her to connect him with Campos. When Campos passes the call to his boss, Dom questions Braga's loyalty, accusing him of killing his own drivers. Campos calmly replies that there will always be more. Dom demands to speak with Braga directly, but Campos says his boss doesn't negotiate with anyone. Unmoved, Dom tells him to explain to Braga how $60 million worth of merchandise has just vanished. After a tense pause, Campos finally agrees to meet. Later, Dom and Brian arrive at the agreed location to confront Campos and Braga, while the FBI and local police wait nearby for Brian's signal to make the arrest. Brian quietly admits he made a deal with Penning. If they capture Braga, Dom will go free. He hands Dom the keys to his car in case things go wrong and he needs to escape fast. Moments later, Campos's men show up. Phoenix starts taunting Dom, but Campos steps in and approaches them, asking about the missing goods. Brian tells him they'll see the merchandise once they meet Braga. Campos assures them his boss always keeps his word, then gives the order for Braga to step out of the car. Braga hands over part of the payment and promises the rest once the shipment is returned. Back at the FBI office, Agent Trin confirms that the fingerprints match Braga's identity. She quickly alerts Stashak, though she's still waiting on final facial confirmation. At the meeting, Brian starts to grow suspicious. He asked Braga if he was wearing a pink tie the last time he was seen in the neighborhood. Before Brian can give the signal or Agent Trin can confirm the suspect's identity, Stashak loses patience and orders the police and FBI units to move in and make the arrest. As chaos breaks out, Brian and Dom realize the man in front of them isn't Braga at all. Moments later, Trin finally gets confirmation. Arturo Braga is actually Ramon Campos. He's been hiding in plain sight the whole time. Gunfire erupts as the FBI and police open fire on Campos's crew. In the chaos, Phoenix and Campos manage to escape. Brian finally understands that Campos was Braga all along. Meanwhile, Dom spots Giselle in danger and rushes to pull her out of Phoenix's path, saving her just in time. Together, they flee the scene while Brian is left behind with the fake Braga. The next day, FBI officials meet with Penning and his team. They reveal that Braga was right under their noses and now he's vanished. They also believe Dom has crossed the border. Furious about the failure, the higher-ups suspend Brian while they open an investigation. When Brian asks what happens next, they coldly tell him it's no longer his concern. Later, Agent Trin reports that custom satellites have tracked Braga's movements to his base in Tijuana, Mexico. Penning points out that Mexico is out of their jurisdiction, but Brian is visibly frustrated. He joined the FBI to make a difference, not to stand by and do nothing. Dominic visits Letty's grave, then heads home to finish the car she never got to complete. Brian shows up and warns him that every cop is after him, but Dom calmly says he's already home. Brian insists on coming along, and though Dom warns there's no turning back, he accepts his help. Mia walks in with groceries and Brian follows her into the kitchen. Overwhelmed, she breaks down in tears and he kisses her, rekindling their bond. Later, Mia asks Dom how to say goodbye to her only brother. He tells her not to, and they share a quiet embrace before he leaves with Brian. The two drive into Mexico to hunt down Braga and Phoenix. Along the way, they stop on a hill to meet Giselle, who thanks Dom for saving her life. She gives him Braga's location and warns that going after him is almost impossible. Dom simply says he has no other choice. She kisses him on the cheek, wishing him the best. Before they part, Brian tells Dom this is where his jurisdiction ends, and Dom replies that this is where his begins. Meanwhile, Braga and a few of his men arrive at a church where the priest greets him warmly. Braga hands over a bag of money, receives a blessing and stays behind to pray. Moments later, Dom and Brian enter, guns drawn, ready to confront him. Braga calmly tells Dom that if he plans to arrest him in a sacred place, he should remember they're not so different, that he's no hero. Dom hesitates, lowering his weapon slightly, and admits Braga's right. But he adds that's exactly why he's taking him back to the border to face justice in the US. Brian moves in and cuffs Braga while Dom tells him that Phoenix is his to handle. Just then, one of Braga's men bursts into the church, sees his boss captured and rushes out to alert the rest of the crew. Furious, Phoenix immediately sets out to rescue Braga. The duo speeds toward the border, but their plan falls apart when Braga's men ambush them, unleashing heavy gunfire on Brian's car. Unaware their own boss is inside, enraged, Phoenix charges at the shooters and destroys their vehicle to protect Braga. The chase continues across the desert, and Brian shouts to Dom that they have to take the tunnel route. As the gunfire intensifies, Dom helps Brian shake off their pursuers, telling him to keep going no matter what. Brian crashes through the tunnel wall, racing toward the border with Phoenix right on his tail. Dom follows behind, driving through the collapsing tunnel and taking down Braga's men one by one in a furious pursuit. Just as Brian nears the exit, Phoenix rams his car, flipping it over. Both men crawl out battered and exhausted. Phoenix drags Braga to safety, then turns his gun on the wounded Brian. Before he can pull the trigger, Dom bursts from the tunnel in a cloud of smoke and dust. Phoenix fires at him, but Dom hits the gas, speeding straight at him. Brian grabs Phoenix by the leg, holding him in place, and Dom's car slams into him, ending the fight instantly. Dom rushes to help Brian, but his friend urges him to run before the cops arrive. Dom shakes his head, saying he's done running. Moments later, the FBI and police surround them, arresting both Braga and Dom on the spot. Later in court, the judge acknowledges Dom's help in capturing Arturo Braga, but says one good deed doesn't erase a lifetime of crimes. He sentences Dom to 25 years in Lompoc maximum security prison with no chance of parole. As the prison bus rolls down the highway toward Lompoc, Brian, Mia, Tego, and Santos close in behind it in their cars. The engines roar as they line up for the rescue. When Dom spots them through the window, he smiles faintly. He knows exactly what's about to happen. Fast 5 picks up right after the events of the previous movie, where Dominic Toretto's family uses their driving skills to flip a prison transport truck heading to Lompoc prison. Within hours, news of the bold daytime escape spreads everywhere. All the prisoners are caught again, except one, Dominic Toretto. On top of that, authorities believe ex-federal agent Brian O'Connor planned the whole thing, setting off a nationwide manhunt for 3 fugitives, Dominic, Brian, and Mia Toretto. But law enforcement has no idea where they've gone. The action then moves to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Brian and Mia walk through the busy streets until they reach a quiet neighborhood, searching for someone. They don't realize the area is protected by several armed men. Brian considers turning back, but then Vince appears, easing the tension. He welcomes Mia with a warm hug and gives Brian a simple nod before inviting them inside. Both Brian and Mia still have questions about Dominic, but Vince shares what he knows. The last time he heard from Dom, he was in Ecuador a few weeks earlier. Vince then looks at Brian and asks how it feels to be a wanted man. Later, as they sit down for dinner, Vince's wife Rosa notices they haven't eaten in hours. Afterward, Mia puts the couple's son to bed, then steps into the bathroom where she quietly throws up. Meanwhile, Brian asks Vince why he chose Rio as the place to hide. Vince explains that after everything that happened in Los Angeles, he moved through South America always on the run until he eventually met Rosa. Rosa notices Mia isn't feeling well and quietly asks if Brian knows. Mia replies, no, he doesn't. When Mia comes back to the table, Vince brings up a new job. He says they can handle it without Dom because it's a simple heist. Everything is already arranged, but they need a few more people. He manages to convince Brian and Mia to help so they can earn the money they desperately need. Later, after Brian and Mia leave, Vince watches a car pull up outside, one that looks very familiar. The next day, Brian and Mia are on a train talking about countries without extradition, places where they might be able to settle down. Just then, they see an employee walk into the cabin. They stand up and put their plan into action. Mia distracts the worker while Brian quietly steals his access card, even though there are FBI agents aboard the train. At the same time, a truck races across the desert to catch up. Brian and Mia enter the compartment where the cars they plan to steal are stored. When Brian takes a closer look, he realizes these vehicles were seized by the DEA. The truck carrying the rest of the crew finally reaches the train and they open an entrance to the compartment, revealing Dom, who is leading the group. After a quick greeting, ZZ urges everyone to hurry. Vince jumps into the first car and gets it transferred onto the truck's ramp to make off with the loot. Dom notices ZZ's pressure and tells Mia to get into the most heavily guarded car. He warns her that plans have changed and orders her to escape in another direction. ZZ grows suspicious and demands to know what's going on. When Dom gives him no answer, ZZ pulls a gun, starting a tense confrontation. The noise alerts the agents on the train who rush in to stop the heist. Dom gives Brian the time he needs to jump into the truck and block their escape. Brian leaps off the moving train and lands on the ramp while the agents try to break into the compartment behind them. At the same time, Dom takes down the men close to him while Brian fights the truck driver, causing the driver to lose control and crash the truck into the train's compartment. The train keeps moving, and Brian quickly notices the fuel tank is leaking, sending gasoline straight toward the flames. The explosion nearly blows him off his feet, and he realizes they're moments away from crossing a bridge. He shouts a warning to Dom, who grabs the last car available to escape. The agents then rush in. But ZZ takes them out, although he still can't stop Toretto from getting away with the GT-40. Dom races toward Brian as the train nears the bridge. At the final moment, Brian jumps and lands in the back of the car, with the burning truck speeding toward them. Dom slams the accelerator and launches the car off the edge. Both men plunge into the lake below and survive the fall, but their problems are far from over. Not long after, they're captured by Reyes's men. Knowing agents have died, Reyes brushes it off as part of the job. He demands to know where the car Mia drove is and offers to let them go if they give him the information. When they refuse to talk, he warns them that in Rio de Janeiro, everything runs under his control, and he threatens to find Dom's sister. As soon as Reyes's car drives off, Brian kicks a guard and Dom breaks his chains, ready to fight their captors. Meanwhile, Mia is hiding in a small favela house with the stolen car, listening carefully to the news. When she hears movement outside, she ducks out of sight but relaxes when she recognizes Brian's voice. She steps out to greet her partner and her brother. They explain they don't know where Vince is, and she tells them that the news is blaming them for the deaths of the federal agents. Brian realizes they're now listed among the most wanted and they have to run. But Dom insists the car they've taken is valuable. Something important is hidden inside it, and they need to find out what it is if they want to understand what they're facing. Later on, a special task force arrives in Brazil to capture the fugitives. This is where we meet Luke Hobbs, who orders his team to make sure their targets never reach a car, no matter what. Hobbs then asks the local police chief for the help of Elena Neves, a bilingual patrol officer, explaining his choice by making a comment about her smile. Meanwhile, the crew is busy taking apart the stolen car when Vince finally shows up. He refuses to explain where he's been but warns them that many people are hunting for them in the favela. He claims he stayed away earlier to protect them, but Brian doesn't believe it and accuses him of betrayal. Dom steps in, stopping the argument and choosing to trust Vince completely. The next day, Reyes meets with other powerful figures when ZZ bursts in, announcing that they've located the fugitives. Later, Vince sneaks up to the stripped-down car and takes a chip from it. Dom steps out from the shadows, catching him in the act and confronting him for betraying the team, even Mia. Shocked, Vince insists he thought they were only stealing cars and explains that Reyes's men only care about the chip. The noise brings Mia and Brian over. Vince promises to hand it over and prove he's telling the truth, but Dom orders him to leave. Before walking away, Vince reminds Dom that he didn't trust him when he warned him Brian was a cop and asks him to think about what has happened to their family, especially Letty. Meanwhile, Hobbs inspects the wrecked train car with Elena Neves. She knows her smile isn't the real reason she was chosen, and Hobbs admits he picked her because she's the only officer in Rio who can't be bought. Soon after, Hobbs receives information on the paths the stolen cars took, but the trail goes cold once they enter the city. Elena then points out that one of the routes leads to a nearby favela. The next day, the task force gears up for the capture. At the same time, Brian, Mia, and Dom discover the chip contains a delivery schedule and information about cash shipments. Hobbs and his team enter the favela, intimidating everyone in their way. The crew quickly figures out that Reyes has hidden large amounts of money throughout the area, and that the chip reveals his whole operation. Suddenly they hear a strange noise and realize Reyes's men are closing in. They manage to escape, but the sound alerts Hobbs's team. Hobbs quickly coordinates everyone's positions and orders Elena to stay back. Dom makes a run for it across the rooftops with Hobbs chasing right behind him. Meanwhile, Mia and Brian are running from Reyes's men while Hobbs takes out several of the attackers. Watching Dom fight, Elena decides to follow him, but both of them are ambushed by ZZ and his crew. Dom saves her from being shot, and right then Hobbs's team arrives and eliminates most of the threat. Mia and Brian are forced to jump from a rooftop and everyone believes they didn't survive. As the area clears, Elena notices Dom's necklace lying on the ground. Our protagonists have all escaped through the sewers and Dom warns that all three of them will be hunted now, so they need to split up. Brian agrees, knowing next time they might not get away. That's when Mia reveals she's pregnant. She explains that she once watched her family break apart and she can't let that happen again. Brian decides he's done running. Mia then makes Dom promise they'll stay together no matter what. The news lifts their spirits knowing their family is about to grow. Hobbs's team investigates the hideout where the GT40 was kept. They track the car's ownership back to the investor, Hernan Reyes. Elena points out that Reyes is connected to nearly every illegal activity in Rio, and Hobbs orders a full investigation on him. Dom and the others spend the night hiding in the favela. While Mia sleeps, Brian asks Dom what he remembers about their father. Dom says his dad was an exceptional man, both in life and as a parent. Brian admits he barely remembers his own father since he was never around, looking over at Mia. Brian confesses he's tired of running, and they decide they need to use the chip to take all of Reyes's money and disappear for good. But taking down the most powerful man in Rio will require a team. They start planning. They need a chameleon, a fast talker, a circuit expert, people who can slip past Reyes's security, someone who isn't afraid to fight, and precision drivers, something they already have plenty of. Roman arrives at a warehouse and spots Tej. They're laughing together when a motorcycle pulls up. Roman immediately flirts with Giselle, but she shuts him down by pointing a gun at him. Rico and Tego tease him for being too confident, and Han watches the whole scene with amusement. That's when Dom Toretto and the rest of the crew arrive. Some of them reunite while others meet for the first time. Soon after, Brian explains the mission. Hernan Reyes is a drug king who controls nearly everything in Rio. Brian tells them that Reyes keeps his money in 10 different locations and their plan is to hit every single one. Roman is doubtful at first, but once he hears the payout is $100 million, he quickly changes his mind.
I can't do this, homie.
So what we're talking about is $100 million.
You say what? 100. See, sometimes I be overthinking, man, and
During their first heist, they find dozens of women counting stacks of cash. Armed and ready, the crew storms the place, takes out a few guards, and grabs the money. With their faces uncovered, they set the cash on fire to send Reyes a clear message: prepare for what's coming next. Meanwhile, the GT40 is running smoothly after being reassembled, but Hobbs notices the navigation chip is missing. Moments later, he receives reports about a robbery at one of Reyes's properties, and he begins to suspect the fugitives used the chip to find it. Elena agrees, reminding him that no one else in Rio would dare rob Reyes. When Reyes hears about the attack, he keeps his anger under control and orders ZZ to move all the money to one single heavily protected location. The crew watches the transfer from house to house until Tej confirms that every dollar is now inside the Rio de Janeiro military police headquarters. Some members of the group start having doubts about continuing, but others become even more excited. Dom tells them the plan stays the same. At the same time, Hobbs's team tracks the crew's recent locations and uploads the data to a satellite so they can monitor their movements every 15 minutes. As night falls, Reyes arrives at the police headquarters, where a massive vault now holds all of his money. With no leads on Dom and Brian, Reyes announces a bounty on their heads and orders the entire city to hunt them down. Mia manages to get a blueprint of the police headquarters, and the crew figures out that the money is stored in the evidence vault. Everyone quickly realizes that getting out will be much harder than getting in. They need to act fast, but first they need someone on the inside to confirm the vault's model. Roman, while joking about who they're going to send in, suddenly realizes he's the one they've picked. Roman walks into the building with a package pretending to be Agent Brian O'Connor. He claims he needs to check that the evidence is safely stored, but the officer on duty refuses to let him past the front desk. When the officer threatens to call the embassy, Roman gives up the act, leaves the package, and heads out. He returns to the parking lot where Tej and Brian are waiting inside a van. Tej controls a small remote-operated car hidden in the package, sending back live video from inside the warehouse. When they spot the vault, Tej recognizes the model and tells them that cracking it is going to be a challenge. Meanwhile, Tego and Rico break into the headquarters plumbing system and install a device on a pipe. Within seconds, sewage floods the bathrooms, forcing the staff to call in a new cleaning crew. In the middle of the stench, Tego finds the right spot on the wall and sets up a device to tap into the security cameras. But these cameras are advanced, so they'll need fast, untraceable cars to stay hidden. As night falls, the crew heads to Rio's street racing scene, a place Dom instantly feels at home. There, they find the perfect cars. Dio, recognizing Dom's reputation, comments on how bold he is for bringing trouble to the track. Word has already spread about the bounty on their heads, but Dom expected that. He challenges Dio to a race, putting their cars on the line. Shortly after, Brian arrives, driving away in Dio's ride after winning the race. The next day, the team begins practicing on closed circuits so the security cameras won't catch them. Everyone brings their best, and Han starts to think he might be falling for Giselle as he watches her handle the wheel with complete confidence. Eventually, the team gets their hands on a vault identical to Reyes's, but Tej drops a major problem on them. The vault uses a fingerprint scanner. Without Reyes's print, it can't be opened. Now it's up to Han to deal with this part of the plan, and Giselle decides to go with him. On the beaches of Brazil, the crew watches Reyes's guards closely, waiting for the perfect moment to make their move. In the meantime, Han and Giselle start getting to know each other better. We learn that Giselle once served in the military, and Han admits he used to be a heavy smoker. Han thinks it's impossible to get Reyes's fingerprints from where they are, but Giselle simply smirks and tells him that no man could do what a woman can. She then puts her plan into action, riding past Reyes on the beach and brushing his hand across her skin to lift his fingerprint without him noticing. Back with the crew, they discover everyone on their team has been placed on a wanted list. They recognize the man hunting them. It's the same agent who chased them through the favela. Brian explains that Hobbs is the one the FBI calls when nobody else can get the job done. They start considering speeding up the plan, and Roman points out they'll need more space if they want to pull this off without Hobbs breathing down their necks. Soon after, Hobbs and his team track them down and move quickly. They arrive at an underground street racing spot and immediately spot the crew. Tension fills the air as Hobbs steps up to Dom and tells him he's under arrest. Dom looks at him calmly and answers that he doesn't feel arrested, noticing Elena is wearing his necklace. Brian tells Hobbs that they had nothing to do with the deaths on the train, but Hobbs doesn't care. He's only there to bring them in. Dom refuses and Hobbs' team prepares for a fight. Dom warns him he's making a mistake. Things work differently in Brazil.
This is Brazil!
Guns come out on both sides and Hobbs' men suggest backing off to avoid casualties. Meanwhile, Tej has already placed a tracker under one of the trucks. Later that night, Elena arrives home and hears a strange noise. When she reaches for her gun, Dom surprises her, pinning her down and taking back his necklace. Confused, Elena asks why he would risk his life for a simple piece of jewelry and tells him he should leave before things get worse. Dom asks her why she hasn't left either. She reveals that her husband, an honest police officer, was killed 2 years ago right outside their home in the favela, a place controlled by Reyes. She knows Dom didn't kill those agents, and before he leaves, she quietly asks if she was that special, showing she understands his deep connection to Letty. The practice runs with the cars aren't going well. Han tells Dom there's no way they're going to beat the security cameras, and jokes that the only way this plan would work is if they had invisible cars. Dom simply answers that he knows exactly where to get them. That night, the crew breaks into the police garage and steals several squad cars. The sight of them brings back old memories for Brian. Soon after, Roman, Han, Dom, and Brian line up at a traffic light. Roman throws down a bet of 100 grand, saying he'll take the first 400 meters. Han, thinking about how risky the mission is, raises the bet to $1 million. Brian then asks Dom to do him one favor. Just this once, don't cheat. Engines roar as they get ready. Right before the start, Roman hits the sirens early and jumps ahead, but he quickly falls behind. This time, Brian is determined to win. As they approach the finish line, the tension rises. Dom steps hard on the gas, but Brian uses one last burst of speed and crosses first. Back at the base, Dom congratulates Brian on the victory. Even though O'Connor is thrilled, the others tell him Dom let him win. The next day, Mia is shopping at the market when Vince suddenly appears and pulls her away, warning her that Reyes' men were about to grab her. When Brian sees her arrive with Vince, he tenses up immediately. But Mia explains that Vince actually saved her from Zizi. Grateful, Dom invites Vince to stay for dinner, saying they still owe him a proper thank you. Tego takes charge of the grill, though he's basically just burning the meat. Meanwhile, the crew relaxes and talk about what they'll do with their share of the money once the job is finished. Tej mentions he plans to open a garage, and Rico jokes that he'll pay for cooking lessons for Tego since the meat on the grill is completely burnt. Tego insists he doesn't care about the money at all. At the same time, Vince pulls Dom aside and offers to help with the next part of the plan. Dom doesn't even let him explain. He accepts his help right away and tells him there's always room for family. Nearby, Han and Giselle continue to grow closer, and the tension between them keeps building with each conversation. Roman reminds everyone that they're less than 24 hours away from pulling off the biggest heist of their lives. He hands out beers to Brian and Mia, but Mia turns hers down. That's when Brian shares the news they're expecting a baby. The whole crew celebrates, and Roman realizes that must be why Dom let Brian win the race. In the middle of the congratulations, Brian asks Dom if he threw the race just to give the prize money to the baby. Dom simply answers that he has no idea what they're talking about. He raises his drink for a toast, reminding everyone that money comes and goes, but the most important thing is the family they've built together. The next day, the team prepares for the big heist. Mia tells them that Hobbs is all the way across town, so they decide to use the small window they have. As most of the crew heads out, Vince promises Dom he'll stay behind and watch over Mia. Brian then walks up to his partner and mentions a few countries without extradition where they could start a new life together. Just then, Hobbs' truck slams into their base, smashing straight through Dom's car. Hobbs steps out and says it took him a while to find the tracker they planted on his vehicle. Without warning, a brutal fight breaks out between him and Dom. Even though Dom's punches land hard, Hobbs barely reacts. The two of them crash through walls, furniture, and glass in a raw, powerful brawl. At one point, Hobbs traps Dom in a tight hold. Dom spots his family still inside the building, realizing they haven't escaped yet. That gives him the strength to break free, but Hobbs throws him through a large window and Mia shouts at Dom to stop. Dom grabs a wrench, but instead of swinging it, he slams it into the ground, giving in to Mia's pleas. Dom, Brian, and Mia are arrested and loaded into a transport truck heading through the favela on the way to the airport. Along the route, Reyes's men ambush the convoy, destroying the vehicles. Hobbs orders his team to hold the line and protect the wounded. Elena, the only one left inside the truck with the prisoners, listens to their desperate pleas for freedom. Dom looks at her, silently urging her to help. Outside, Hobbs's men are overwhelmed. A rocket destroys another truck and grenades take out the remaining agents. Just when it seems like Hobbs is done for, shots ring out. Dom, Brian, and Vince join the fight and save Hobbs from certain death. Dom reaches out and pulls Hobbs to his feet, and the whole group manages to squeeze into the only car still running. They race out of the favela, escaping the chaos behind them. But Vince has been badly wounded. He asks Dom to make sure he gets to meet his son Nico. Dom promises he will, and Vince reveals they named the boy after him. With the weight of the loss settling in, Dom says goodbye to a brother and vows to look after Nico. Anger and grief push Dom to keep moving. Han tells the group that he secured a flight leaving in 5 hours, but Dom says they're not leaving Rio yet. The job isn't finished. Everyone thinks he's lost it. One of their own just died. Reyes knows they're coming, and the police station is now heavily protected. Even Elena tries to convince him to run, but Dom tells her running isn't the same as being free. Seeing the doubt in everyone's eyes, Dom tells them they can walk away if they want to. But Hobbs, driven by revenge, steps forward. He's in. He wants to take down the man who killed his team. Brian, done with hiding, asks Dom what the plan is. Dom explains that money is all Reyes cares about. If they take it, Reyes will have no choice but to come after them. Inside police headquarters, armed guards surround the vault. Suddenly, Hobbs and Elena crash through the front, followed by 2 more cars. They slam a truck into the concrete wall, giving Dom and Brian the time they need to attach a harness to the vault. Reyes is alerted immediately, but before anyone can stop them, the crew rips the vault free and speeds out. Now the entire city is after them, with every patrol car in Rio tearing through the streets in pursuit. Controlling the huge vault isn't easy, and Brian and Dom rely on Mia's directions to guide them out. As they move through the city with the score, the path becomes more and more difficult, forcing them to crash through anything blocking their escape. Using the vault as a shield, they push full throttle, dodging gunfire and taking out squads of corrupt officers chasing them. The streets descend into chaos as bullets fly everywhere. Just as Dom is about to take a fatal hit, Han arrives in a patrol car, drawing fire away from him with Roman right beside him.
License and registration, please!
At that moment, the team splits up, planning to regroup in a few minutes. Mia radios in, telling them they've created a 10-second window for the escape. Brian and Dom hit a highway and push the gas even harder. But soon they're boxed in and Dom realizes they won't both get out. He unhooks Brian's harness and tells him to look after Mia and their baby. Dom then spins the wheel, waiting for the perfect moment. He hits the nitrous and sends the vault swinging, smashing through the patrol cars surrounding them. More heavy firepower enters the chase, but with another precise move, Dom takes down the threat. He jumps out just before his car crashes into Reyes's vehicle. ZZ survives the crash, but Brian races back and takes him out, returning to cover Dom. Hobbs arrives moments later. Reyes, badly injured, begs for help, but Hobbs answers with multiple bullets, payback for the team he lost. Hobbs tells Dom and Brian he can't let them walk away, but gives them a 24-hour head start. He tells them the money will still be there and suggests they make the most of the time, promising he'll come after them soon enough. As Dom leaves, Hobbs checks the vault and finds it completely empty. During the 10-second window Mia created, a crew had switched the real vault with the decoy. Giselle, Tego, and Rico drove off with the empty one while the team escaped with the original. Realizing he's been outsmarted, Hobbs can't help but laugh. Later, the whole crew gathers as Tej finally cracks open the real vault. The room falls silent as they stare at the enormous fortune now belonging to them. A few months later, everyone goes their separate ways. Rosa comes home to find a special gift from Dom. Rico and Tego walk into one of the fanciest casinos in Rio, only to lose all their winnings. Roman shows up at Tej's garage in the most exclusive car in the hemisphere, where Tej prepares to roll out in a matching ride.
Huh? What your smart ass gotta say? So I guess that means there are two in the Western Hemisphere, huh?
Han and Giselle choose to stay together and forge their own future. Meanwhile, Mia and Brian live quietly on a beach in another country. Dom shows up with Elena, who has become a part of his life. While the women talk by the water, Dom tells Brian he's never seen Mia so happy. Brian says it's because they're finally free. Looking toward the cars parked nearby, Brian asks Dom for another race to prove he can beat him. Dom asks if Brian can handle the disappointment, and O'Connor fires back with the same question. The story picks up in Fast and Furious 6. Not long after the previous events, we see Dominic Toretto and Brian O'Connor racing through the narrow streets of the Canary Islands in Spain. Brian takes the lead until he reaches a hospital where a midwife greets him. Elena reassures him, saying he made it just in time for Mia's delivery. Dom follows behind and in a firm but supportive tone tells Brian he's going to be a great father. He warns him that if he isn't, he'll track him down and tear him apart. Before Brian heads inside, Dom reminds him that his life is about to change. All the adventures, missions, risks, and losses are behind him now, except for the love of speed. We then move to Moscow, Russia. Agent Luke Hobbs arrives in a quiet part of the city to meet Riley Hicks, a highly skilled agent with a spotless record. Hobbs explains the situation. A Russian military convoy was attacked and important satellite components were stolen. The cars involved seem to appear out of nowhere, causing injuries and chaos in less than 90 seconds. Hobbs believes there's only one crew in the world capable of throwing a car through a second-story window. Riley informs him they've already captured one of the people involved. They head straight to the Interpol facility, where Hobbs expects to confront Toretto, but instead he finds another man. Hobbs demands to know where Owen Shaw is. As expected, the man refuses to talk. Hobbs wastes no time and launches into a brutal fight, tearing the interrogation room apart once it's over. Hobbs states that Shaw is in London. Riley suggests they go after him, but Hobbs replies with one final line: "To hunt wolves, you need wolves." Back in the Canary Islands, Dom and Elena are enjoying a quiet life. While Dom steps out to work on a car, he's caught off guard by Hobbs's voice behind him. Hobbs says finding him was easy, and Dom replies that he wasn't exactly hiding. They talk briefly about the paradise Dom now lives in with no extradition, before Dom finally asks why Hobbs has come. Hobbs explains that a crew of skilled drivers attacked a military convoy in Russia. When Elena walks out with a gun ready to defend Dominic, Hobbs quickly reassures her he's not there to make an arrest. Instead, he needs Dom's help. Hobbs hands over a set of photos taken the week before, and Dom freezes when he spots Letty in one of them. At first, he thinks it can't be real, but Elena reminds him that if there was even a small chance her own husband was alive, she would go looking for him too, no matter what. Dom thanks her and asks Hobbs for every detail he can provide. Hobbs agrees, but only if Dom brings the whole team. Dom wants to handle it alone since it's personal, but Hobbs insists that without his family they won't get anywhere. He's been chasing Shaw across 4 continents and still hasn't caught him. He needs Dom and his crew. We then cut to each member living their best life. Roman is surrounded by luxury. Tej is helping people wherever he can, and Giselle and Han are building a peaceful life together in Tokyo. But that peace doesn't last. Agents suddenly appear at their door ready to make a move. At that moment, a call from Dom rings through, reaching all of them. He asks for their help, and each one agrees without hesitation. Meanwhile, Brian and Mia are enjoying quiet family life far away from all the chaos. Dom stops by to greet his nephew Jack, and then he and Brian talk about the life they've built. Dom shows Brian the photo of Letty. Brian suggests it could be a trick, but the uncertainty starts to weigh on him. He decides to join Dom to find out the truth. Dom reminds him that he chose to leave that world behind, but Mia steps in. They're family and they face their problems together. She also says she'll feel better knowing they're bringing Letty home as a team. Once in London, the crew reunites. Hobbs and Riley arrive too, though no one fully trusts them yet. Brian asks about Rico and Tego, last seen in Monte Carlo, while Roman jokes that they weren't supposed to be doing this anymore. Hobbs quickly shuts him down. Dom steps in and reminds everyone they already have the best team in the world. Hobbs explains their target: Owen Shaw, a former Air Force major turned dangerous strategist. Shaw's crew has been operating across Europe for years, but their recent attacks have made them a major threat. He's trying to build a Nightshade device, a tech bomb that can shut down a military communications network for 24 hours, putting national security in danger. Shaw only needs one final piece, and Hobbs wants their help before it's too late. He shows them a photo of Letty and offers a chance to bring their family back together. Dom agrees, but only if they get Letty home and receive full pardons. This time, they're not up against cops or dealers. Though Roman still wants to know if they're getting paid, that night one of Shaw's men agrees to work with Interpol. They wire him up and send him to meet Shaw, who's suspicious the cops released him, but the man insists he didn't talk and hands over a car. Once Interpol confirms Shaw is present, the teams move in, but Tej suddenly warns that the tracking signal tripped too early. Brian realizes Shaw planned this. They're walking into a trap. The crew prepares while Hobbs and Dom wait nearby. Shaw gives his associate a bag of cash and slips away just as Brian and the others reach the warehouse. Inside, they discover the place is packed with explosives. The pillars erupt as it moves, sending the entire building into chaos while Shaw escapes. Shaw's modified car rockets through London streets. Dom and Hobbs spot him and give chase. When Shaw sees the police, he accelerates and activates a system that flips a squad car right over him. More police vehicles crash, but Dom and Hobbs refuse to give up the pursuit. Meanwhile, Han reports they're close to Interpol, but Shaw's crew ambushes them during the heist. Veg, one of Shaw's top drivers, arrives in a matching car and with support from a truck helps the crew escape. Just as Giselle is about to be taken out, Han saves her at the last second. The targets speed off and the team follows, but Shaw's people attach devices to their cars, allowing them to take control remotely. Tej is the first to crash, followed by Roman, whose car smashes through a building. Brian breaks free by slamming his car into a wall, stopping the device from controlling it. Shaw and Veg regroup while Dom and Brian arrive, continuing the chase through London's tight tunnels. Owen splits away, forcing Dom to follow him while the others go after Veg. Brian tries to stop the truck, but at the perfect moment, Veg cuts in front, flipping his car. Dom and Hobbs stay on Shaw until they finally catch up, only for another vehicle to slam into Dom. He looks up and recognizes Letty behind the wheel. Shocked, he abandons Shaw and goes after her. Hobbs keeps chasing, jumping onto Shaw's vehicle from an overpass, but Shaw quickly shakes him off. Dom manages to corner Letty, but she shoots him and runs. Later, the team realizes how deep they've gotten, and Roman suggests they walk away. Dom removes the bullet Letty shot him with, making Brian think the Letty they knew is long gone, but Dom refuses to give up on her. Letty returns to an abandoned garage where Shaw and his crew regroup. Shaw warns them not to underestimate their enemies. When he finds an old photo of Dom and Letty, he worries she could be a problem since she once rode with the other side. Letty insists she remembers nothing. Hobbs arrives with new intel. Shaw has stolen a database showing the locations of the final component he needs. The list is only useful for 92 hours, meaning Shaw's next move will be in 4 days. Hobbs begins assembling pieces from Shaw's car and sends Han, Giselle, and Roman across London to track down the sellers. He also asks Tej for cars without computers, so Shaw's team can't take control of them again. The next day, Tej and Hobbs arrive at a high-end car auction, but their simple outfits make the staff mistake them for workers. Tej doesn't let it slide and decides it's time to teach the employee a lesson. Meanwhile, Roman and the team watch one of the sellers, with Roman suggesting that he and Han should approach first. But Giselle reminds him they're dealing with a man who won't take them seriously, so she and Riley step in instead. Dom studies the bullet he removed, and Brian mentions that only one type of gun fires it, an illegal weapon in the UK, which gives them a solid lead. At the shop, Giselle asks Fuse about 2 cars with ramps and reinforced bodies and thanks him politely. When he tries to hit on her, Riley immediately shuts him down, making sure they get the information they need. Over at the auction, Tej buys every luxury car on display, forcing the rude worker to suddenly treat them with respect. Tej then asks for the man's fancy shirt for Hobbs, who also demands his pants and watch before they leave. Fuse later informs Shaw about the women who visited his shop. Meanwhile, Dom and Brian track down a seller of Russian weapons at an antique store. After taking out the guards, Dom interrogates the owner, who explains that a woman bought guns and ammo the week before. His description fits Letty perfectly. Once they get the details, Dom knocks him out and they leave calmly. Suddenly, Letty and 2 others storm Fuse's shop and open fire without her realizing who she's attacking. Han and Roman rush in while Giselle and Riley defend themselves. The chaos escalates and Giselle pulls the injured Fuse aside, demanding Shaw's location. Before dying, he manages to say one name: Braga. Letty is chased by Riley, while Ja is pursued by Roman and Han. The 2 fugitives race into a crowded subway station. Riley catches Letty and the 2 engage in a fierce fight. Ja quickly overpowers several approaching officers, and when Roman and Han confront him, they discover they're no match for his strength. Pinned down by Riley, Letty escapes by biting her, sending both of them tumbling down the stairs. The fall gives Letty the chance to slip away into the subway tunnels. Meanwhile, Roman and Han, still embarrassed by their defeat, decide to stay quiet about what happened. Letty and Shaw's crew then report the death of Ivory, one of Shaw's top men. His cold reaction unsettles her, and she steps away to work on her car. Shaw follows, telling her he never saw her as the sentimental type. He explains that when he found her in the hospital with no memory, he felt protective of her, making the idea of losing her harder to face. Back at the base, the team returns feeling defeated. Tej explains that he discovered something strange. The city's cameras shut off whenever Shaw and his crew are nearby. Hobbs decides to look into it himself at the public surveillance department. They also recover a harpoon from Fuse's shop, and Giselle reveals that Braga is working with Shaw. This shocks Dom and Brian. With the connection between Letty, Braga, and Shaw becoming clearer, they realize Braga must know Shaw's plans. Brian decides he has to confront him in the same prison where he originally put him, even though he's still wanted and slipping into the country will be dangerous. Brian feels guilty for ever bringing Letty to Braga and believes he must set things right. Hobbs visits the surveillance office to check the subway footage. He's told the cameras were conveniently down for maintenance that morning. Hobbs points out the same thing happened during the Interpol attack, hinting that someone inside is helping Shaw. Before leaving, he demands access to all security feeds and insists the maintenance be postponed. The chief quickly agrees. Brian arrives in Los Angeles as a prisoner. Stoshak greets him with sarcasm about his orange jumpsuit and scolds him for risking his career to chase Shaw after breaking so many rules. On the ride, Stoshak warns Brian that he has only 24 hours to finish the job. He must be out before 9 a.m., because once his fingerprints hit the system, escape will be impossible. Inside the jail, Stoshak promises him a cell in the public area, but Brian intentionally breaks his nose to get sent to solitary. Back in London, the team gains access to the city's cameras. Tej modifies the harpoon using titanium wire and a nitrogen tank, warning Roman to stay away. Of course, Roman doesn't listen. At the same time, Han tells Dom about an upcoming street race. Just before the harpoon fires and slams into the wall between them. Back in Los Angeles, a guard shuts off the security cameras, and Brian hears Braga speaking from outside his cell. Braga explains that he knows everything Brian did in Rio, and says Shaw has always been one step ahead. He reveals that Brian is the reason Letty ended up in danger after getting involved with his cartel. We see a flashback of Phoenix ramming Letty's car. He failed to kill her, shooting the gas tank instead and causing an explosion. She somehow survived. When she landed in the hospital with no memory, Shaw went there to finish the job, but stopped when he realized she didn't remember anything. Braga's taunts push Brian over the edge. Armed men rush in and Brian launches into a brutal fight, taking them down one by one. He grabs Braga and forces him to talk. Braga says Shaw keeps a tight watch on his people and the only way to get close is if Shaw allows it. In London, an underground street race pulses with music and engines. Dom arrives and immediately spots Letty collecting cash for a race she won. When she prepares for her next opponent, she finds Dom standing there. She recognizes him and jokes about how lucky he was that she missed the other night. Dom calmly says he just wants to race. Letty warns him he's about to lose his car. Dom smiles and replies, "Race or die." The words hit her hard. They launch into the night, weaving through traffic as police try to keep up. Dom pulls off a smooth move that surprises Letty. On the final stretch, both hit their nitrous, but Letty's runs out and Dom takes the win. Afterward, they drive to a quiet spot. Letty is ready to hand over her keys, but Dom focuses on the pattern of mistakes she's making. She tells him not to act like he knows her, but Dom proves otherwise. He gently lists details from their past, from meeting her when she was 15 to the scars they got together in the Dominican Republic. Letty is torn, unsure what to believe. Dom tells her he came for her because he's certain she's still the same person deep down. Before he walks away, he places her necklace back in her hand. Just then, Shaw arrives in another car, clearly aware of the deep history between Dom and Letty. He questions why Dom is working with Hobbs instead of relaxing on a beach with Elena. Shaw explains that he has figured out Dom's greatest weakness, his family. That makes Dom predictable and easy to break, giving Shaw control over the situation. He offers Dom the chance to walk away with his family and stay safe, but Dom answers that he'll only leave when Letty leaves. They both realize they're holding leverage over each other, so Shaw calmly drives off, promising they'll meet again. Hobbs tells Riley to have Tej track Shaw's car through the city cameras. He then pulls Dom aside, saying they're getting closer to Owen and hoping Dom is getting closer to what he's after too. The next morning, Letty looks at an old photo of her and Dom while holding the necklace he returned. Shaw walks up and examines it, asking if she'll be able to take Dom down when he gives the order. With a simple look, she tells him yes. Meanwhile, Tej reports that they couldn't track Shaw for long because he knows every blind spot in the system. Still, Riley believes they've found the right area, a hideout with several escape routes, so she and Hobbs head out. When they arrive, the place is already cleared, but Hobbs finds a clue on the ground. Later, Tej explains that the paint at the scene is special, invisible to infrared, and only used at certain European military bases. Hobbs asks him to look into Shaw's likely targets, and they discover he's heading for a NATO base in Spain. Shaw already has an 8-hour lead. Hobbs alerts the military to lock down the base and sends transport for the team and their cars, but Shaw's men are already making their move. Brian returns to London and the team brings him up to speed. Shaw is preparing to attack the base in Spain. Hobbs and Riley are already ahead, and they relay that Dom refuses to continue without Brian. As they talk, Brian admits that what happened to Letty is on him. Dom tells him to keep that to himself, because from here on everything they do is for her. In Spain, Riley spots Adolfson, one of Shaw's tech experts, disabling the perimeter security, leaving the entire base exposed. Hobbs immediately orders the military to pull the missing component from the site to mislead Shaw. When the team hears this, Brian realizes Shaw predicted everything. If he's always one step ahead, he won't attack the base. He'll target the convoy transporting the component. Soon after, a truck races toward the convoy. Shaw's crew disrupts the formation and clears the smaller threats so Shaw, Ja, and Letty can reach the transport truck, but the heroes are ready and prepare to launch their plan. Dinger sets up a high-tension cable between two hills, forcing the truck to stop. From inside, a tank rolls out, crewed by Shaw's team. Tej quickly realizes they need to adjust the plan. They never expected a tank. Giselle and Han speed forward as Dinger warns that Dom is approaching. Shaw orders the cannon to be readied. Giselle jumps from her bike onto Dinger's car. He tries to crush her, but Han intervenes long enough for Giselle to disable him. Meanwhile, Dom, Brian, and Roman close in as the tank fires at them. They improvise, lining up in the same lane, but the tank swerves violently, and only Roman manages to stay beside it. The tank destroys everything in its path. Letty urges Shaw to stop, saying this isn't the plan, while the heroes try to steer the chaos away from civilians. Roman cuts in front of the tank and slams the brakes to avoid a direct shot, but the tank rams him forward. Dom looks for a way to turn around as Roman's car sinks deeper under the tank's weight. Roman climbs onto his roof to tie down the cannon. Brian pulls into the next lane, getting close enough for Roman to leap onto his car at the perfect moment. Roman's Mustang remains stuck and Brian pushes it toward another lane so it can serve as an anchor. Shaw tells Letty to get out and release the cable. The crushed Mustang slips over the edge, dragging the tank. Dom, terrified for Letty, speeds up and puts himself in the cannon's line of fire. Just as the tank is about to shoot, it suddenly halts from the anchor's pull, launching Letty into the air. Dom crashes into the guardrail, leaps out, and catches her midair. Together, they land safely on a passing car, Dom saving her life in the process. Later, the chip Shaw wanted is still safe at the base. The commander asks what they should do with Letty since she worked with the enemy, but Dom immediately steps in to defend her. Hobbs is eager at the idea of prosecuting Shaw's team, while Shaw seems oddly calm about how things have turned out. Brian approaches Letty to apologize for everything, but she tells him that even without her memories, no one can force her to do something against her will. Nearby, Han and Giselle talk about settling down in Tokyo. Letty then turns to Dom and asks how he knew there would be a car beneath her to break the fall. Dom admits he didn't know, he just had faith. Hobbs brings Shaw forward and gestures for Dom to step up. Shaw asks if they really think they're winning, then reveals that even their own family has been dragged into the conflict. He tells Brian to call Mia. At the same time, we see Shaw's men entering the house where Mia handed baby Jack to Elena. Mia is captured, and when Brian hears her screaming in Klaus's arms, he lunges at Shaw without hesitation. Shaw explains his terms. He walks free with the chip and no one gets hurt. The commander refuses, saying one hostage can't outweigh the safety of millions. But Hobbs realizes the situation has shifted. He draws his weapon, forces the soldiers to stand down, and warns Dom that if Shaw escapes, their chance at freedom disappears too. Riley then releases Shaw's team. As Owen prepares to leave, he asks his girlfriend to come with him. Everyone looks to Letty, but it's Riley who steps forward to join him. Shaw's crew heads to the base runway to make their escape. He tries to call Klaus to tell him Mia is no longer needed, but Tej cuts the signal. The team gets ready to move and Letty chooses to fight beside them. Shaw's men sense Dom's crew approaching. Roman wonders where Shaw could possibly run, until a massive plane roars overhead and lands right in front of them. Owen orders his team to end it. They jump onto the moving plane while Dom's crew races alongside. The heroes push forward, knocking enemies off balance before managing to board. Inside, Dom slams into Riley, giving Mia the chance to run. Veg chases her while Dom goes after the others. Klaus fights Brian, and just as Hobbs tries to climb aboard, another car crashes into him, knocking him aside. Letty confronts Riley again, and the two break into another brutal fight as Shaw orders the plane to take off. Giselle tells Han to get under the wing so she can fire a harpoon at the flap to stop the liftoff. But another car crashes into Giselle, throwing off her aim and causing her to miss the shot. Meanwhile, Tej takes the wheel so Hobbs can climb onto the plane from underneath. Inside, Brian breaks free from Klaus and charges straight toward Shaw. Dom is locked in a fight with the largest member of the crew while Shaw easily overwhelms Brian. Just as Shaw is about to finish him, Dom shoves Klaus backward, sending heavy crates crashing into Shaw. Dom yells for Brian and Mia to run. Outside, the battle continues. Jao fights Roman while Brian and Mia race away in a car with Veg close behind in her modified vehicle. At the perfect moment, Brian slams the brakes, letting Veg shoot past. She loses visibility and crashes hard into part of the structure. Inside the plane, Hobbs finally makes it aboard and confronts Klaus as Dom takes on Shaw. Roman and Jaw trade blows on top of a car until Tej rams them backward into a turbine that destroys their vehicle. Mia and Brian speed closer to safety, but as the plane lifts off, a cable hooks under Han's car and drags it upward. Dom, Letty, and Hobbs keep fighting their opponents. At first, they're pushed back, but soon they gain the upper hand. Roman fires a harpoon and Letty opens a hatch, cornering Riley. Hobbs hands Letty another harpoon and she fires it, sending Riley flying out of the plane. Roman and Tej's car begins to rise as well. An enemy manages to grab Giselle and pull her from the half-lifted vehicle. Han reaches for her while Mia takes the wheel and fires another harpoon at the plane. Giselle fights off her attacker, but the struggle throws her off balance. Han lunges to save her, but the enemy comes back, forcing Giselle to let go so he won't fall. Han watches helplessly as she disappears. Driven by grief, he takes down the man responsible. The team fires harpoons into the plane, preventing it from taking off. It's clear they need to jump before impact. Just as Dom prepares to leap off the moving aircraft, he spots Shaw still alive and turns back to finish what he started. Dom catches up in a car and slams into Shaw, fighting to take the chip. As the vehicle keeps rolling forward, Dom jumps away, causing Shaw to crash into a wall and fall out of the plane. The massive aircraft breaks apart across the runway, pieces bursting into flames until the whole structure is destroyed. The team sees one last car shoot out from the wreck, but it flips with Dom inside. When the wreck finally stops, everyone searches through the fire, until Dom walks out holding the suitcase. Letty runs to him and kisses him. When Mia asks about Giselle, Hans tells her that she didn't make it. Dom hands the suitcase to Hobbs. Hobbs asks the price for returning it, and Dom simply says $13.27, the place he calls home. Days later, several cars pull up at the Toretto house. The whole family gathers for a barbecue, remembering the ones they've lost. Han mentions his plans to go to Tokyo. Hobbs arrives to tell them they're officially free and wishes them well. Letty then approaches Elena to thank her for everything she's done for Dom. As Elena says goodbye, she explains that she and Dom come from different worlds. Everyone sits down to eat. Letty admits she still doesn't remember much, but she finally feels like she's home. They join hands to give thanks for the meal. Roman speaks up, reminding them to cherish the good times, honor those they've lost, and appreciate the fast life that brought them together. In a mid-credits scene, Han races through the streets of Tokyo, until he's suddenly struck by another car. The vehicle explodes and the man responsible walks away, calling Dom to say they'll meet soon. This story then transitions to the Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift. We follow Sean Boswell, a 17-year-old who loves cars and street racing. On his first day at a new school, he's in the parking lot when he starts talking to a girl named Cindy. She jokes about his car, saying it looks like something used to deliver pizzas. Right then, her boyfriend Clay shows up. He confronts Sean for talking to her, but Sean calmly explains that Cindy was just checking out his car. Clay tries to provoke him, calling Sean's ride slow and warning him not to risk racing it. Sean fires back, saying at least his car wasn't paid for by his dad, then adds a sarcastic comment about how well Clay must know the manual of his own car. Sean decides to walk away, but Clay, angry and embarrassed, throws a baseball and breaks Sean's rear window. Sean is ready to fight, but before anything happens, Cindy steps between them. She suggests they settle things with a race, even offering herself as the prize for whoever wins. Both guys agree, and they head to a new housing development area that's still under construction. Before the race begins, Cindy warns Clay that if he loses, their relationship is over. The race starts on the blocked-off streets, and Clay quickly takes the lead. Soon, a car full of their school's football players pulls up and blocks Sean's path. Refusing to give up, Sean pushes through everything in his way and tries to close the gap. Desperate to catch up, Sean takes a risky shortcut but crashes into the foundation of an unfinished house. Even after the hit, he gets back on the road and continues racing. Near the end, Cindy makes it clear she'd rather be with Sean than Clay. This sends Clay into a rage and he begins slamming his car into Sean. Cindy begs him to stop, but he ignores her. Clay eventually loses control and crashes into a stack of concrete pipes. Sean wins the race, but his own car flips violently when he can't stop in time. After all the chaos, the three teens involved in the illegal race are taken to the police station for causing massive damage to the construction site. While watching a recording of the race, Sean casually says it was fun, but the officer warns him that he's in serious trouble. Meanwhile, Clay and Cindy are basically off the hook. Their parents have strong connections, so they'll only face a fine for speeding and the damage done. Sean's mother soon arrives at the station, and the officer explains that her son is in deep trouble. There's enough evidence to send him to jail. She tries to defend him, saying this is the third city they've moved to in 2 years, but it doesn't help. In the end, she makes a deal with the judge to keep him out of jail. Sean is ordered to move to Tokyo, Japan, and live with his father. Once Sean arrives in Tokyo, he goes straight to his dad's place. His father is surprised to see him earlier than planned, especially since he wasn't alone when Sean showed up. After they get inside, the two sit down to talk. His dad explains that his mother had no other choice and that sending him to Japan was the only way to avoid jail time. He also tells Sean he can't keep running whenever things go wrong. Because he promised Sean's mother he'd take responsibility, his father sets strict rules for living under his roof. Sean must attend school every day and come home right after. Most importantly, he's banned from going near cars or getting involved in any kind of racing. And his dad warns him that there will be serious consequences if he disobeys. The next morning, Sean wakes up to a note from his dad telling him he needs to catch the train to school before 7. He heads out but still ends up late to class. As he walks in, he notices a girl named Neela, and she instantly catches his attention. When the teacher asks why he's late, Sean explains that he took the wrong train and that he's new. The teacher welcomes him but tells him to change his shoes before entering the room. After class, Sean goes to the cafeteria where he meets another American named Twinkie. They get along right away. Twinkie starts offering to sell him all kinds of things: a laptop, a phone, even a pair of Michael Jordan sneakers. None of it interests Sean until he notices a car steering wheel hanging from Twinkie's backpack. When he asks about it, Twinkie quickly says it's not for sale because it belongs to him. Curious, Sean asks what kind of car he drives and wants to see it. Twinkie happily agrees and they head over to check out his ride. After taking the car for a quick spin, they drive to a private parking lot where a street racing meet is going on. The atmosphere is lively, with everyone hanging out and showing off their cars. While looking around, Sean spots Neela again and walks over to her. He compliments her car and they start talking. But they're not alone. Neela's boyfriend DK Takashi sees them and isn't pleased. He turns to his friend Han to ask who the new guy is, clearly unhappy with what he's seeing. Meanwhile, Twinkie notices Takashi heading toward Sean and quickly steps in, saying they were just about to leave. But Neela's boyfriend pulls her close and turns to face Sean, who explains that he doesn't speak Japanese and asks what Takashi said. Takashi replies that it means he should go back to where he came from. Annoyed, Sean fires back, saying he thought Japan was a free country where a girl could talk to anyone she wanted. Irritated, Takashi asks Sean if he even knows who he's talking to, and the tension rises when Sean mocks him instead of backing down. Neela steps in quickly and asks Sean to leave before things get worse. Twinkie pulls him aside and warns him that DK is the nephew of a Yakuza mob boss and apologizes to Takashi on his behalf. At that moment, Han steps forward and suggests they settle it with a race. Both agree, but Sean doesn't have a car, so Han offers to lend him his own, curious to see what the new kid can do. As they ride up in the elevator to the race level, Sean asks Twinkie if DK is really that good. Twinkie explains that DK stands for Drift King, meaning he's the best at drifting. Sean, unfamiliar with drifting, admits he doesn't know what it is since racing in Japan is nothing like what he's used to in the States. Twinkie explains that the car Han is lending him, nicknamed the Mona Lisa, was rebuilt from the ground up. He warns Sean that Han put a lot of effort into it, then gives him quick drifting tips, telling him to use the handbrake and steer hard, begging him not to wreck the car. Soon the racers line up, and once the race begins, Sean takes the early lead. But when he reaches the first turn, he loses control and crashes. DK smoothly drifts around the corner, showing off his skills. Sean keeps going, but without knowing how to drift. He crashes again while DK effortlessly stays ahead. In the end, Takashi proves why he's the Drift King, finishing the race easily while Sean struggles to keep up. A few minutes later, the loser finally crosses the finish line with the car completely destroyed. Han walks over with a slight smirk and tells Sean not to leave just yet. Later that night, when Sean returns to his father's house, his dad discovers he's been racing again. Furious, he tells Sean to get out, but after a moment he gives him one final warning instead. He explains that if Sean can't make things work in Japan, he'll end up in jail, and he must follow the house rules if he wants to stay. The next day after school, Han is waiting outside and tells Sean to get in the car so they can take a drive. They stop at a spa, and Han tells him to go inside and find a man with a claw tattoo because that man owes him money. When Sean approaches and delivers Han's message, the man has no choice but to come outside and hand the cash directly to Han. Then they take off again. As Sean drives, Han tells him that he's part of the business now and that he'll probably need more help in the future. Sean says he'll do it only if Han teaches him how to drift, but Han makes it clear that this isn't something he gets to negotiate. Later, they arrive at a casino and go to Takashi's office. When Takashi sees Sean, he asks Han why he brought him. Han explains that he's there to pay for the car Sean wrecked during the race. Morimoto, one of Takashi's loyal guys, asks Sean when he plans to race again. With confidence, Sean fires back, questioning if Morimoto really wants to say that. Takashi cuts in and asks Han if he's ready to lose another car. Han agrees to race, but only if they bet the 86 Corolla. Takashi isn't impressed and raises the stakes, suggesting they bet the 72 Skyline instead. Then he tells Han to take his new friend out of the office so they can talk privately. Once they're alone, Takashi asks Han when the delivery is going to arrive. Han reassures him calmly, telling him not to worry and that he'll take care of everything. Meanwhile, outside the casino, Sean calls his father and lies, saying he's staying late at school to finish homework and will be home later. Not long after, he runs into Neela, who's surprised to see him there. She asks what he's doing, and Sean jokes that he's there for drifting lessons from her boyfriend. Before she leaves, Neela warns him that he doesn't want to get involved in this world, and that he doesn't really understand her situation or what's happening around them. From a distance, Han watches the interaction and suggests that maybe Sean should find himself a nice Japanese girl, like many men from his country do. Later, while they're driving, Sean asks Han if everything is okay. Without revealing too much, Han says he'll take care of DK. Curious, Sean asks if Takashi is part of the Yakuza. Han explains that DK isn't, but his uncle is. He adds that Takashi likes pretending he's a gangster in his small office, but Han still needs him around so his uncle won't interfere with his business. Interested, Sean asks if Han has ever raced against DK. Han replies by asking why anyone would race without a good reason. In his view, proving who's faster doesn't matter unless something real is on the line. A moment later, a car speeds past them on the highway. Han tells Sean to hit the nitrous to catch up. Soon after, a police car spots them but surprisingly doesn't give chase. When Sean asks why, Han explains that the patrol cars aren't modified. If someone's driving over 180 kilometers per hour, the police don't even try to follow. Later on, they head to a party at a bar where Han's friends are hanging out, including Twinkie. He comes over to Sean, excited to see him settling into life in Japan. Han then invites Sean to check out his garage, and when they arrive, Sean is amazed by all the cars inside. To his surprise, Han gives him one, telling him that he'll now be representing him in future races. The next day, Han and his crew start teaching their new friend how to drift. But for Sean, it's far from easy. He struggles through the lessons and crashes the car several times while practicing. Later, he spots his father at a workshop repairing a damaged car. Sean walks over and asks if it belongs to him and what happened to it. His father explains that he bought it in that condition and will decide what to do with it later. When Sean gets to school, two classmates bring him up to the rooftop where he finds Twinkie caught in a scuffle with Morimoto over a defective product Twinkie refuses to exchange. Sean steps in to break things up, but Morimoto shoves him in frustration. Trying to calm the situation, Sean offers Morimoto an electronic device to replace the faulty one and asks him to take care of it. Morimoto agrees and leaves with his crew. Twinkie, however, is upset. He tells Sean that getting involved will now make all his customers expect free replacements. Later, Sean apologizes to Neela for interfering in her life the previous night. She forgives him and they share a short smile. That night, Sean and Han talk and Sean asks why Han let him drive his car, knowing he would destroy it. Han answers that he has enough money to fix it, but what he really needs are people he can trust. He says people judge you by who you're with, and that even a car can show what someone is worth. For him, that's a price worth paying. He adds that life is simple. You make choices and you don't look back. Curious, Sean asks why he races if not to win. Instead of answering, Han decides to show him. They drive to a street where they see a car with two girls inside. Using his drifting skills, Han circles around them smoothly, showing off. The girls are impressed and one of them slips her phone number to him before they drive away. The next day, Han tells Sean that he won't learn drifting without real practice. He explains that the first drivers to master the technique did it by experimenting in the mountains and encourages him to do the same. Determined, Sean begins practicing. Later, Sean and Twinkie walk around the city selling different items. Afterward, back at Han's garage, Sean watches as his mentor hands over money to Takashi. As the days pass, Sean keeps practicing until he finally starts to get the hang of drifting. One night, Sean's father comes home from work and notices his son still isn't home. The next day, Sean and Han are out drifting again, each in their own car. This time, it's clear that Sean has fully mastered the technique. That night, he races against Morimoto, and by using everything he's learned, Sean ends up winning. His opponent breaks down, frustrated and embarrassed. Takashi walks over to Han and hands him the keys to the car they had bet on earlier. Everyone congratulates the new drifting champ while Neela watches proudly. The next day at school, Neela gets a message from Sean on her computer saying he's never seen her drift. She replies that it's only because he's never asked. Later that night, Sean and Neela go out to dinner, and she opens up about her past. She explains that her mother passed away when she was young. The only thing she remembers is leaving Australia right after finishing high school and working as a waitress until Takashi's grandmother adopted her. Sean shares his own story, saying his parents divorced when he was 3, and ever since then he and his mother moved constantly because of the trouble he kept causing. That same night, they head out to the mountains to practice drifting. Neela tells him she used to come there as a kid even before she could drive just to watch the big racers, and once she got her license she never stopped returning. The next day, after more practice, Takashi arrives with his crew. Without saying a word, he walks straight to Sean and beats him up, warning him to stay away from Neela or the next thing he'll be driving is a wheelchair. He then tells Han that he should start looking for a new driver. As he leaves, Han tells Sean that he didn't just play with fire, he threw the whole box of matches into gasoline. The following day at school, Neela notices the bruises on Sean and immediately goes to Takashi's office determined to break up with him. But Takashi refuses to accept it. He humiliates her, claiming her mother wasn't just a waitress but something worse, and that she should feel grateful to him and his family. His words anger Neela, and she slaps him. Still, Takashi continues to belittle her, insisting she's nothing compared to him. That night, Neela heads to Han's garage looking for Sean so they can talk. Meanwhile, Mr. Kamada, the head of the Yakuza, makes an unexpected visit to check on Takashi's operations. During the inspection, he discovers that Han has been skimming money. Outraged, Takashi decides to deal with it himself. He storms into Han's garage, punches him, and accuses him of hiding secret deals. When he sees Neela there, he pulls out a gun and threatens to kill Han, but Han calmly reminds him that he needs him, saying Takashi's whole operation would have collapsed long ago without his help. At that moment, Twinkie creates a distraction by closing the garage doors, giving Han the chance to knock Takashi down and take the gun. Sean jumps in too, fighting Morimoto and managing to knock him out. Han then gets into his car and speeds away. Sean and Neela try to escape as well, but Morimoto blocks their path. Refusing to back down, Sean floors the gas and hits him to break through. Both Takashi and Morimoto get into their cars and begin chasing Han and the others. In the chaos, Morimoto's car slams into Sean and Neela, but moments later he crashes head-on into another vehicle, causing destruction across the road and leaving Takashi to continue the chase alone. Soon enough, Takashi catches up to Sean and Neela, ramming his car into theirs. But Han sees the danger and hits the brakes, slowing Takashi down just long enough for Sean and Neela to escape. Sean drives toward a crowded street and people quickly move aside as the cars rush past. But a series of unlucky events ends with Sean and Neela crashing head-on into another vehicle at an intersection. Meanwhile, Takashi fires at Han, but before Han can react, another car slams into him from the side, trapping him completely. Within seconds, Han's car explodes, When Takashi sees the crash, he flees the scene. Sean is left frozen in shock while Neela grabs his arm and leads him away. They rush into the subway and head to Sean's father's house. Not long after they arrive, Takashi, still furious, shows up intending to kill Sean. A fight breaks out, and Sean manages to land a few hits before Takashi pulls out a gun. At that moment, Mr. Boswell steps in and points his own weapon at Takashi, forcing him to stop. To calm the situation, Neela makes a deal. She agrees to leave with Takashi if he spares Sean's life. Sean begs her not to go, but she chooses to protect him and follows Takashi. Before leaving, Takashi gives Sean a cold warning, "I'll see you when your daddy isn't around." Then he gets in his car and drives off with Neela. Later on, Sean's father is furious about what happened and decides he's sending his son back to the States on the first flight out. But Sean refuses. He says he's tired of running from his problems, and that it's time to face them head-on. His father listens, admits he's right, and acknowledges that Sean hasn't made the same mistakes he once did. After that, Sean meets up with Twinkie, who warns him to leave Japan because DK is out to kill him. With all the trouble he's caused for Mr. Kamada, Twinkie says Sean is as good as dead, but Sean refuses to run. He believes the only way out is to speak directly to the Yakuza boss and ask him to call off his nephew, knowing Takashi will listen to him. Twinkie tries to stop him, calling him crazy for even thinking about it. But Sean insists he has no other choice. Twinkie finally agrees and hands him something he says Han would have wanted him to have. He pulls out a backpack filled with the money they earned selling items around the city. Twinkie says Sean will need it if he wants any chance of surviving his meeting with Mr. Kamada. Sean asks if Twinkie needs the money himself, but Twinkie brushes it off, saying he'll find a way to earn it back later. Soon after, Sean heads to the place where Mr. Kamada is staying. At first, he's stopped by several of the boss's men in an alley, but they allow him to pass. Inside the bar, he spots Neela, who warns him to leave immediately. Takashi tells him he's come to the wrong place. Mr. Kamada motions for Sean to approach. Sean hands him the bag of cash that Han was accused of stealing. But Mr. Kamada asks if Sean really thinks he can walk in, return the money, and leave alive. Calmly, Sean explains he only came to bring back what belonged to him and apologizes for the trouble caused by Takashi. Still, Sean offers a peaceful way to end the conflict. Mr. Kamada asks how he plans to fix all the damage. Sean proposes a drifting race on the mountain. Whoever loses has to pay and leave Tokyo for good. At that point, Takashi jumps in, reminding his uncle that he already beat Sean once. Mr. Kamada responds that if that's true, it should be easy for him to do it again. The next day, Sean, Twinkie, and the rest of the crew arrive at Han's garage, only to find that the police took all the cars. The only one left is the same car Sean wrecked during his first race. It's useless for competition, and even though the Mitsubishi Lancer he destroyed on the night Han died is gone, the engine is still in perfect condition and can be reused. Because of this, Sean's father decides to help. He offers up his old Ford Mustang, and with everyone pitching in, they start restoring it at the shop, making sure it's ready for the upcoming race. Later, they take the car to the mountain to test it and fine-tune the handling. Twinkie believes Takashi picked this mountain for a reason. He knows every inch of it. He's the only racer in Tokyo who has ever made it down the mountain's lowest, most dangerous section. Finally, the night of the race arrives. Takashi takes the lead early, confident Sean will crash on the tight corners. But Sean stays focused and uses everything Han taught him to keep up. During one section, Takashi swings too wide on a turn, giving Sean the opening he needs to move into first place. Takashi chases him and starts ramming his car into Sean's, trying to regain control. As they approach the final stretch, Takashi tries to slam into Sean, hoping to knock him off the cliff, but Sean hits the brakes just in time. Takashi misses, loses control, and his car tumbles over the edge of the mountain, ending the race for good. While Takashi's car falls into the abyss, Sean floors the gas to reach the finish line. But just then, the wrecked vehicle drops directly into his path. Sean swerves around it just in time, avoiding a crash, and crosses the finish line safely, winning the race as Takashi's friends rush to help him. Meanwhile, Sean's crew gathers around to congratulate him, and Neela chooses to leave with the winner. Mr. Kamada approaches and informs Sean that his debt is now cleared. After that, Sean and Twinkie step up as the new leaders of the group, and life returns to normal, with Neela now officially by Sean's side. During the celebration, Twinkie tells him that someone wants to challenge him to a race. Sean first refuses, saying he's done for the night, but Twinkie insists the challenger knew Han and was practically family. Hearing that, Sean accepts. To his surprise, the mysterious racer turns out to be Dominic Toretto, arriving in a car he says he won years ago in a bet with Han. Finally, Neela gives the signal, and the race between Sean and Dom begins. The story then continues with Fast and Furious 7. In London, Deckard Shaw visits the hospital where his brother Owen is being treated. As he stands beside him, Shaw remembers how he always had to protect Owen, even when Owen acted like a small-time gangster. He knew things would eventually lead to this moment. Shaw takes Toretto's necklace from Owen's hand, the same one Letty had once given Dom. To Shaw, that necklace represents the burden he now carries. He tells Owen to rest while he goes to settle the score, then walks out of the hospital, leaving behind the damage he caused on his way in. Meanwhile, Dom drives Letty out to the Sonoran Desert, a place known for its underground street races. Letty, still struggling with her memories, asks if they used to come here. Dom tells her they help make this place what it is. The air is filled with speed, noise, and excitement as engines roar non-stop. Letty gets ready to race, and Dom gives her a few tips. Once the signal is given, she takes off, pushing the car hard. She wins the race when her opponent's engine fails. As she returns, the crowd surrounds her with praise, but the attention becomes too much. Overwhelmed, Letty punches Hector and runs off without another word. Dom lets her go and jokingly teases Hector for not putting up much of a fight. On the other side of town, Brian looks like he's preparing for a race, but he's really dropping off his son Jack at school. He still feels out of place in this quiet routine, though the teacher tells him he'll adjust. Brian admits that this new life scares him more than he expected. Later, Dom heads to the cemetery where he finds Letty standing in front of her own gravestone. What once seemed like a strange joke now leaves her feeling lost. She notices the sledgehammer in Dom's hand and asks what he plans to do with it. Dom admits he wants to destroy the gravestone, but Letty stops him. She tells him that on the day of the accident, she didn't just lose her memory, she lost the version of herself he remembers. Now she feels like someone new. It hurts her that she can't look at him with the same memories he carries so strongly. Letty explains that she needs time to find out who she is again. She gives Dom a gentle kiss, then quietly walks away. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Agent Hobbs is settling into the endless paperwork at the diplomatic security office. Elena teases him about the lack of action in his new role, then heads out. Hobbs follows her to her car to hand over the letter of recommendation she requested. When he returns to his desk, he notices a man standing there. Realizing he doesn't have his weapon within reach, Hobbs calmly asks for a moment while he continues searching. He warns the man that he's using the wrong computer, but the stranger replies that he's looking for the people who put his brother in the hospital. Hobbs tells him it wasn't a team, it was just him. When Deckard Shaw pulls out a USB drive, Hobbs flips the desk and the fight erupts instantly. The two clash violently, destroying the office as they battle. Hobbs manages to grab a gun and fires, forcing Shaw back. Elena rushes in to help, but Shaw throws a grenade. Hobbs grabs Elena and shields her, diving through a window as the blast sends them crashing onto a car below. His quick action saves her life. Above them, Shaw calmly walks away from the burning building, still thinking about what happened to his brother, Han's image lingering in his mind. Later on, Jack is playing with a package left by the door, but Brian quickly picks him up and takes him to the car. From the doorway, Mia tells Dom about the package, explaining that it was sent from Tokyo. They both assume it must have come from Han. Watching Brian drive a minivan, Dom thinks about how much Brian's life has changed. Mia has seen how hard the adjustment has been, and she quietly tells Dom that she's pregnant again. She hasn't told Brian yet because she's afraid of adding more pressure. Dom reassures her, reminding her that she's the best thing that ever happened to him. Right then, Dom gets a call from Deckard Shaw. Just moments after Shaw has destroyed Han's car in Japan, Dom hears the threat in his voice and quickly realizes the call is coming from Tokyo. He shouts for everyone to get down, knowing the package is a bomb. It explodes and tears their home apart. Mia panics and tries to reach Jack, but Brian had already locked him safely inside the car. Dom now sees that the danger surrounding them is growing fast. Later, Dom visits Hobbs in the hospital. Hobbs had asked to be contacted the moment he woke up. Dom checks on Elena first, making sure she's okay, then talks to Hobbs, who is heavily bandaged. Hobbs mentions he has a daughter and he asks Elena to take her out for a meal. Once they're alone, Dom asks what happened. Hobbs explains that Owen Shaw has a brother and he's far more dangerous. The file on Shaw reveals he was a skilled killer in British Special Forces, someone the government preferred to keep hidden. They shaped him into a weapon, and when they decided he was no longer useful, they tried to eliminate him because he knew too much. They sent 2 elite operatives after him, but both failed. Shaw has been off the grid for 6 years. Dom asks where to find him. As an agent, Hobbs warns him not to go after Shaw, but as a brother, he tells Dom to track him down and not to miss. Meanwhile, Mia is in the Dominican Republic, staying at Dom's friend's place for protection. He jokes about how difficult it was to get them safe in Rio, but says having them there is an honor. He promises they'll be protected and hands her a call from Dom. Dom tells her that their problems in London have finally caught up with them. Mia admits she still hasn't told Brian about the baby because she knows he'll want to stay with her, and Dom will need him more than ever. Dom tells her they'll meet in Los Angeles in 2 days, but first he has to go to Tokyo to find Han. In Japan, Twinkie tells Sean that someone wants to see him. After the race, Sean explains that Han never talked about his past, he always left his enemies behind. Sean hands Dom the items recovered from the crash. A photo of Giselle and the necklace. Seeing them only deepens Dom's drive for revenge. At Han's funeral, Tej and Roman arrive to pay their respects. Standing over his friend's grave, Dom silently vows to avenge him. Tej notices a car circling the area and warns the others they're being watched. Roman says he can't handle any more funerals, and Brian tells him there's just one left. Deckard Shaw's. Dom gets into his car and takes off after Shaw. The chase leads them into a tunnel where they come face to face. Both release their brakes and hit the accelerator, crashing into each other at full force. After the impact, Shaw calmly steps out. Dom follows, pointing out that Shaw reinforced his chassis. Shaw warns that going after a man's family was a mistake, the same threat Dom once gave Owen. Dom reaches for his sledgehammer, but Shaw draws a gun, making it clear this won't be a fair fight. Suddenly, armed men descend from above. Shaw uses the distraction to slip away while they surround Dom. Dom fights them off until a man steps in to stop the chaos. He introduces himself as Mr. Nobody, sent on Hobbs' recommendation. As police approach, Mr. Nobody tells Dom there's a bigger issue at hand and offers a way to help him reach Shaw at the covert operations base in California. He hands Dom a bucket of beers and explains that Shaw's strength comes from being a ghost. Mr. Nobody makes it clear he doesn't care about Shaw personally. He cares about an opportunity. He explains that a militant group led by terrorist Mose Gioconde has kidnapped Ramsey, a hacker who created the Global Tracker, a program that can tap into any digital system all at once: phones, satellites, cash machines, computers. With it, anyone can be found anywhere. Mr. Nobody says that with the Global Tracker, they could have located Osama bin Laden in hours. It's powerful and dangerous. Dom asks why they need him since he could just keep hunting Shaw. Mr. Nobody explains that if Dom helps rescue Ramsey, he'll have full authorization to use the Global Tracker to track Shaw, leaving him with nowhere to hide and keeping Dom's family secure. Dom agrees but says he'll do it his own way, with his crew. Mr. Nobody expected that and has already gathered them. He tells Dom that Ramsey is being transported through the Caucasus Mountains in Azerbaijan. If she reaches the destination, she'll be lost. Roman sums it up. They have to attack a convoy protected for nearly a mile and a half on each side. Frustrated, he says he's tired of being told what to do, whether infiltrating bases or bringing down planes, and wants a say for once. He suggests a location for the ambush, but the others say it's impossible because it's the most secure spot on the mountain. Roman argues that's exactly why it will work. They won't expect it. He then asks Tej for a plan. Mr. Nobody welcomes the crew into his garage and introduces their newest member, Letty. Dom walks over and she tells him she visited the house but found only ruins. Holding the necklace brings back faint memories and they begin preparing. The team reviews the plan, noting that this mission will take more than speed. In the next scene, the crew waits in a dark room. The space shakes and Tej teases Roman for being nervous. An alarm sounds, a hatch opens, and they realize they're on a plane flying over the mountains. One by one, they drive their cars out of the plane and into open air. Roman freezes, refusing to jump, so Tej activates the parachute on his car, forcing him out. On the ground, the team lands on the mountain road, ready to intercept the convoy. Roman is still drifting in the air, but the others focus on the target, convinced Ramsey is inside the main truck. Once spotted, the enemy prepares to fight. Tej leads with his armored vehicle, breaking their formation. Though the heavy fire slows him down, Dom and Letty manage to hook onto the truck's door. With help from Brian and Tej, they rip it free. Brian smashes through his windshield, leaps inside, and takes out the guards. He finds Ramsey, terrified, begging him to stay back. He calms her and promises to get her out. An enemy vehicle closes in. Brian pushes Ramsey to jump into Dom's car just before Shaw collides with them. Another fighter confronts Brian and he quickly realizes he's outmatched. Meanwhile, Dom speeds through the mountains with Ramsey, dodging attacks and clearing threats. Brian and Letty face another enemy when a shot hits the truck's driver, sending the vehicle toward a cliff. Brian tries to escape but gets cornered. As the truck hangs over the edge, Roman arrives and knocks Shaw away from Dom. Brian climbs out, but the truck starts slipping. Letty races forward, getting close enough for Brian to grab onto her car. She pulls him to safety seconds before the truck falls into the ravine. Shaw survives the encounter, and Dom tells Roman to head back with the others. Soon, Dom is cornered on a cliff by dozens of cars. Mose Gioconde steps out, calling Dom a problem and offering to spare him if he hands over Ramsey. Dom tells Ramsey to put on her helmet, spins the car around, and lines up at the cliff's edge. Even Shaw watches with interest. When the shooting starts, Dom floors it and launches the car off the mountain. They survive the fall. Later, the crew stops at a dock so Ramsey can recover. She says she's not sure whether to thank them or yell at them for throwing her off a cliff. Dom asks about the Global Tracker and she explains she sent it to a friend in Abu Dhabi. The team is shocked she gave up the location so easily, but Ramsey says she figured enough out to trust them. The ex-cop, the tech genius, the alpha woman, and the clown. Tej corrects her, saying Letty isn't Dom's wife. Ramsey assumes they work for the government, but Dom says they simply share the same goal. He tells Tej to make the call. They're heading to the Middle East. On the plane, Brian and Dom talk about the mission. Brian admits he misses the action. Dom tells him he always saw his courage from day one, but his greatest achievement is being a good husband and father. In Abu Dhabi, the crew arrives in luxury cars. Roman says he feels hotter than usual. Not from the desert, but from the monuments around him. He and Tej notice Ramsey and try rock, paper, scissors for her. But Safar stops them, warning them not to try anything. Safar greets Ramsey and she immediately asks about the device. He says he sold it. Dom explains they need it because Ramsey hid key data in it. Safar says it's safe but extremely well protected. He reveals he sold it to a Jordanian prince who installed it in his supercar, a bulletproof machine that can reach 390 kilometers per hour. It's kept in the prince's penthouse. Safa explains that tomorrow, during the longest day of the year, the prince is hosting a party. That's their chance. Everyone dresses in their sharpest outfits to infiltrate the tower. Dom and Letty step into the elevator, both admitting they feel out of place. Dom is moved by how stunning she looks, and she gets small flashes of her past. When the doors open, they're surrounded by gold luxury and women painted in gold. Meanwhile, Tej and Ramsey begin hacking the building circuits, but security is tight. The prince's guards and cameras watch everything. Letty moves in, but Kara the bodyguard spots her. After taking down a guard, Letty heads to the prince's room. Tej guides her through cutting a wire to access the full system, then signals Roman to create a distraction. Roman puts on a dramatic scene to stall security while Dom and Brian reach the vault. Inside, Brian explains the car is worth $3 million, hits 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and only 7 exist. Dom lifts the car so Brian can search under it for the device. Before Letty can leave, she's confronted by Kara and her guards. Letty jokes the guard must have fallen for her charm, but Kara says she has none. The guards attack, and as the intruder alert locks down the building, Letty fights her way through them. Curtains begin closing around the vault. Letty braces herself as Kara joins the fight. They crash through walls, with Kara overpowering her at times until Letty grabs a knife and turns the fight around. Ramsey warns that a squad is heading for the vault. Dom tells Brian to hurry. They're taking the car. Letty and Kara fall from the second floor as guards drag Roman out. Tej holds the curtain open for a moment. Dom starts the car and takes out the guard closing in. The vehicle smashes through walls, sending the party into chaos. Shaw arrives, firing into the air. Tej and Ramsey run as enemies shoot at Dom, but the armored car keeps pushing through the penthouse, slamming into Shaw and stopping near a window. Dom hits the gas, launching the car into the next tower. The brakes fail, and the car keeps accelerating toward a third building. Brian retrieves the device, and he and Dom jump out just in time. Dom lands at the edge as the car crashes and explodes. That night, the crew returns to Safar's garage. Safar complains he got them into the country's most exclusive party, only for them to destroy the place. Mr. Nobody arrives, joking about Dom's idea of discretion. Safar is asked to step out so they can talk privately. Brian gives the chip to Mr. Nobody, who praises the crew for a messy but successful job. He says his men are ready, keeping his promise, then hands the chip back to Ramsey so she can activate the global tracker and track Shaw. Ramsey tracks Shaw from the moment he left the tower, explaining that every camera in the hemisphere is scanning for his face. They finally locate him inside an automated factory. Dom suggests waiting until dawn so Shaw will be worn out, but shortly after, Dom decides to leave with Mr. Nobody's team. He says his family are the best behind the wheel, but they're not killers. Brian senses Dom's plan and joins them. At the factory, Mr. Nobody's men get into position. Shaw sits alone, eating what looks like his last meal. Offended they only sent 12 men, Shaw pulls a grenade pin with his teeth and sets it beside his plate. Everyone steps back except Dom, who asks if he's ready to meet his maker. Shaw mocks them, reminding them that the enemy of your enemy is your friend. Suddenly the lights cut out. Gates explode open as an armed squad from Jakande storms in. Mr. Nobody's team fights back, but they're quickly overwhelmed. Mr. Nobody uses special night vision goggles to take down several attackers before he's shot. Even while wounded, he keeps fighting until another bullet hits him. Brian and Dom return fire but are forced to retreat, leaving the global tracker behind. Shaw throws a grenade that wipes out what's left of their advantage. The crew escapes in a truck with Mr. Nobody still armed and conscious while checking his injuries. He tells them to leave him. His med team is already inbound. He warns them to protect Ramsey since only she can access a key part of the global tracker. Dom tells Shaw that a war is coming and it will be fought on streets they know. Back in LA, the team prepares, knowing the global tracker will track them. Tej suggests hacking it, but the antenna range is a problem. Brian says the safest plan is to keep Ramsey moving with the team while Dom goes after Shaw. Later, Brian calls Mia, warning her that something big is coming. He says if she doesn't hear from him in 24 hours, she has to move on and give Jack a good life. Mia refuses to say goodbye. She finally tells him she's pregnant again, a baby girl who needs her father. She was afraid to tell him because she thought he'd be disappointed with a quiet life. Brian tells her the best choice he ever made was getting that terrible tuna sandwich on their first date. They remind each other how much they love one another. Dom returns home, heads into the garage, and takes out his father's car for one final run. Above Los Angeles, Jakande orders the global tracker activated to find Dom so Shaw can face him while the rest go after Ramsey. Once the signal hits, everyone spreads out. Ramsey begins the hack, triggering a drone launch to eliminate her. Brian drives with her at high speed, dodging the drone's shots and even sliding under a truck before it's blown apart. They escape just in time. Meanwhile, Shaw crosses paths with Dom again and Dom heads toward a parking garage. Police try to step in after spotting high-speed cars, but their cruiser is destroyed by a missile. Dom and Shaw close in for another collision. Across the city, Brian and Roman line up their cars. In a quick move, they get Ramsey to jump from one car to the other through their open windows. She barely makes it before a missile destroys Brian's car behind her. The global tracker keeps tracking her, confirming she's still alive, and Jaconde orders the drone to follow the hacking signal. Dom lifts his car onto two wheels, lining it above Shaw, and fires down at him. News of the chase spreads across the city. Hobbs sees the broadcast from his hospital room. Jaconde then orders the satellite tower assisting Ramsey's hack to be destroyed. Hobbs instantly realizes Dom must be behind it. The tower goes down, cutting Ramsey's signal. Tej confirms the hack can't continue. Meanwhile, Hobbs decides he's done waiting. He gets up, tears off the last cast from his arm, and suits up. He tells his daughter Samantha that Elena will be over soon, then heads out. Shaw climbs out of his wrecked car, throws his gun aside, and grabs a metal rod. Dom points a gun at him, asking if Shaw really thought this would be a street fight. Dom then tosses his own gun, and the two crash into each other in a brutal brawl. Tej tells Brian he must reach a tower to manually reroute the signal. The message is intercepted, and enemies are sent to stop him. Chaos fills the streets. Roman's car is nearly hit by gunfire, and they call Letty to step in while Dom keeps fighting Shaw. A rocket slams into Roman's car, destroying it. The global tracker continues tracking Ramsey, who jumps from Roman's car into Letty's just in time. Brian climbs the building when a squad arrives, led by the same fighter from the mountains. Brian fights his way through them and reaches the target point, but the same man attacks him again. The opponent has the advantage until Brian manages to tie him to a railing, sending him falling through an access shaft. Hobbs suddenly arrives in an ambulance. Letty's car is hit by a missile, and when she spots the drone, Hobbs crashes straight into it, destroying it on impact. Brian follows Tej's lead to get Ramsey in position to finish the hack and regain control of the global tracker. Dom and Shaw keep fighting until a helicopter appears, aiming at them both. A missile hits nearby, cracking the structure. Just before Shaw can strike again, Dom tells him that in a street fight, the street always wins. Dom stomps hard, breaking the weakened ground and sending Shaw falling to the level below. The helicopter locks onto Dom, but Hobbs arrives with heavy firepower, unloading round after round into Jaconde and his team. In the chaos, however, shots hit Letty's car. She calls for help, and Dom, desperate to reach her, grabs Shaw's grenade bag, jumps into his car, and races through falling debris and missile strikes. Dom pushes forward and rams his car into the helicopter. He only clips it, and the crash sends him slamming into the ground. The crew rushes to him. Hobbs spots the grenade bag still inside the helicopter wreck and fires until it explodes. He then clears the debris off Dom's car so they can pull him out. Brian tries everything to revive him, but nothing works. Letty tells him to stop and holds Dom in her arms. She begs him to fight and confesses she has all her memories back, even their wedding in the Dominican Republic when he gave her the necklace as a symbol of their love. She tells him if he dies, she dies too. Dom opens his eyes and jokes she took her time remembering. Letty asks why he never told her they were married. Dom says he couldn't force her to love him. Days later, Hobbs escorts Deckard Shaw to a reinforced cell in a CIA black site, a hallway lined with weapons to remind Shaw why he can't escape. Meanwhile, the crew spends a quiet day at the beach. Brian gets up to play with Mia and Jack. Everyone watches, realizing Brian is family. But he deserves a life away from danger. Things will change without him. Dom stands and walks away, unwilling to say goodbye. On the road, as he stops at a light, Brian pulls up beside him for one last run. Dom remembers living his life a quarter mile at a time, and how through all their races and battles, Brian became his brother. They speed off together as memories flash through Dom's mind. Dom reflects that wherever Brian goes, he'll always be with him, and he'll always be his brother. But now their paths have to part. Everything picks up again in Fast and Furious 8, or The Fate of the Furious, as we see Dominic Toretto and his wife Letty spending time in Havana, Cuba. They're far from the busy streets of Los Angeles and now enjoying the calm scenery of the island. Suddenly, Dom learns that his cousin Fernando is in trouble with a man named Raldo, who took Fernando's car over an unpaid debt. Dom promises to help, but Raldo's attitude doesn't sit well with him, so he challenges Raldo to a race and even bets his own car. Fernando warns him that Raldo drives the fastest car in Havana, but Dom reminds him that it's never about the machine, it's about the driver. Raldo then insists that Dom must race using Fernando's damaged car. Dom removes everything unnecessary from the vehicle and prepares the Cuban nitrous before heading to the starting line. When the race begins, both cars tear through the narrow streets. Dom faces several setbacks, and even when Raldo cheats, Dom still manages to stay in the fight. As the engine starts failing, Raldo orders his men to interfere, but Dom hits the nitrous and pushes forward. The engine catches fire, the windshield shatters, and Dom spins the car around to drive in reverse, managing to take the lead and win the race. Unable to stop the burning car, Dom jumps out, allowing it to roll off the edge and crash into the ocean. The crowd gathers, celebrating his victory. Raldo offers Dom the keys to his own car and shows him respect. Dom says the respect alone is enough and refuses to take the car as a reward. Later, Dom and Letty enjoy their quiet time in the Caribbean. During a private moment, Dom wonders if Letty might be pregnant. and the two start thinking about when they might begin a family. The next day, Dom heads home and notices a woman struggling with her car. This is where we first meet Cypher, who gladly accepts his help. They exchange a few words, but Dom grows suspicious when she casually asks how his honeymoon has been. She then reveals she purposely removed a part from the engine and insists he listen to her. To make sure she has his full attention, Cypher mentions a detail from his daily routine, how he always walks this exact route carrying a black coffee with no sugar. Cypher tells him she wants him to work for her. Dom refuses, but before he can walk away, she shows him something on her phone. Whatever it is, it forces him to reconsider because it threatens his family in a way they can't control. Somewhere else, Luke Hobbs is coaching his daughter's soccer team. He fires up the girls with a loud war cry and tells them that if they win, everyone gets free manicures. As the game begins, Agent Allen approaches Hobbs with news. The Damocles 7 device has been stolen by arms dealers in the Gulf. Allen explains that this weapon can shut down an entire city's power grid and the fallout would be disastrous. They want Hobbs for the mission, but warn him that the government won't back the operation, and if things go wrong, they can't get him out of prison. Hobbs' daughter scores a goal, and when she spots Agent Allen on the sidelines, she instantly realizes her dad is about to take on another mission. Hobbs admits he has the perfect team in mind. Not long after, Hobbs reaches out to Dom with the details of the job in Berlin. Dom agrees and promises to pull the crew together. A short time later, the whole team arrives in Germany ready to carry out the mission. Roman creates a distraction that sets the plan in motion while the others move in to steal the device, but as soon as they secure it, enemy forces surround them. Dom calmly announces that Phase 2 is about to begin. Even though Roman had no idea there was a Phase 1, Tej then triggers their backup plan, lining up the team's cars to open a path just in time for a giant wrecking ball to swing through and wipe out the attackers. As they escape, Letty notices something strange about Dom's behavior. The group splits up to meet at a safe location, but before they can regroup, Hobbs tells Dom he'll buy the beers when they get home. That's when Dom suddenly turns on him, slamming his car into Hobbs' vehicle and flipping it violently. Dom walks up to the overturned truck, grabs the stolen device, and keeps moving. Even though Hobbs is badly injured, he warns Dom that if he leaves with that weapon, he'll come after him himself. Hobbs keeps giving him chances to stop, but Dom, with a cold and determined expression, continues walking as the police surround Hobbs. Before they take him in, Hobbs tells the team that Dom has turned against them and orders everyone to fall back, saying it's already too late for him. Dom then races toward a runway where a plane lowers just long enough for him to drive straight inside and disappear later. Tej looks through Dom's phone records and finds multiple calls to numbers that can't be traced. Ramsey explains that whoever contacted him used technology designed to hide its origin. To her, the fact suggests betrayal. Dom stole a dangerous weapon and ran, but Letty snaps back, saying she owes her life to Dom and refuses to believe he'd betray the family. Meanwhile, at the federal penitentiary, Hobbs is escorted inside and meets Mr. Nobody, along with his new assistant, Little Nobody. The junior agent explains that they can release Hobbs if he admits to the crimes in Berlin, treason, espionage, and destroying public property. Doing so would label him as a criminal off the books, allowing him to work for them unofficially. Hobbs refuses, insisting he's no criminal and won't make any shady deals. He says he'll get out on his own. Mr. Nobody wishes him luck, but when his assistant mentions Hobbs' daughter, Luke stops moving. He snaps the chains around his wrists and slams the rookie against the wall, warning him never to bring up his daughter. Mr. Nobody steps in, telling Hobbs to let the kid learn. As they leave, he tells his assistant that he blew the chance he was given, and now the consequences are on him. Inside the prison, the inmates Hobbs once put behind bars threaten to kill him the moment he steps into the halls. Even Deckard Shaw mocks him, calling him a crooked cop who finally got what he deserved. The two men can't stand each other, and Hobbs fires back, saying that unlike Shaw, he won't be stuck in here for long. Shaw just laughs. Meanwhile, on Cypher's plane, Dom immediately clashes with Rhodes, one of her men. Cypher steps in and welcomes him aboard. Her presence is cold and commanding. She shows him part of her weapons stash and admits she respects men who follow their own rules. But she has no respect for his attempts to play hero with his family, knowing deep down he still lives for the 10 seconds between start and finish. Back in the prison, Hobbs and Shaw continue arguing, bringing up the day of the office explosion as they threaten each other with a fight to the death. Suddenly, Hobbs' cell door unlocks. Mr. Nobody has given him a chance to escape, but Hobbs refuses. Before he can step out, Shaw grabs a guard's stun gun, opens the surrounding cells, and triggers a massive prison break. With dozens of inmates rushing out, Hobbs decides he has no choice but to make his move as well. Shaw and Hobbs fight their way through the chaos, battling guards and prisoners as they sprint toward freedom. The two get closer and closer, ready to clash with each other, but before they can, Mr. Nobody's armed team intercepts them outside. At Mr. Nobody's secret base, Hobbs is brought in to meet the rest of the crew, who Little Nobody has handcuffed. They're quickly released, and when Roman tries to walk out, he's told to stay since they're all now on the top 10 most wanted list, except him, who landed in 11th place, much to his frustration. Mr. Nobody then shows them a photo of Cypher, calling her a top-level cyber-terrorist. Ramsey explains that no one truly knows her motives, but she can hack into anything and vanish without a trace. Even the hacker group Anonymous avoids crossing her. Mr. Nobody adds that Cypher is working with Dom now, which shocks the entire team. Little Nobody reports that Dom helped her steal the EMP device, a weapon capable of shutting down an entire city. Roman realizes they were called in to track Dom down, a job that feels impossible. That's when Mr. Nobody reveals he has already recruited Deckard Shaw to help them. When Hobbs sees Shaw, he immediately refuses to work with him, and the rest of the team also holds back because of their history with the Shaw family. But Shaw makes it clear he isn't there to join them. He explains that Cypher came to him first to steal the device, and when he refused, she targeted his brother Owen using his condition against him. Now Shaw wants revenge. Mr. Nobody steps in to settle things, reminding them that besides him, only two people have ever been able to track Dom, Shaw and Hobbs, so they'll have to work together whether they like it or not. Roman suggests using the global tracker to locate Dom, and Tej and Ramsey start tracking his signal. But Dom's location keeps shifting across the globe because Cypher is masking his movements. Tej eventually finds a workaround, and when they search again, Mr. Nobody reveals that Dom's most recent location is inside their own facility. Suddenly an explosion shakes the base, concussion grenades roll in, forcing everyone to take cover. Cypher storms the room with Dom at her side. Dom shows no reaction to seeing his former family in danger as Cypher mocks them, especially Shaw. She steals the global tracker from the central system and heads for the exit. Letty cuts Dom off, begging him to tell her whether he's truly abandoning his family. He says nothing. Cypher then kisses him in front of everyone before pulling him away. After the attack, the team tries to recover, and Letty is the most shaken. She's convinced Dom is being forced into this, and refuses to believe he betrayed them. Roman brings up Brian, but they all remember their promise not to involve Brian or Mia ever again. Meanwhile, Dom confronts Cypher about the kiss. She reminds him why he agreed to work for her. Elsewhere on the plane, Elena is being held prisoner along with a young boy, Dom's son, whom he never knew existed. Elena explains she discovered the pregnancy right after learning Letty was still alive. She planned to tell Dom after their honeymoon in Cuba, but they were both captured before she had the chance. She admits she hasn't named the baby yet because she wanted Dom to do it. She begs him to save their child at any cost. Cypher enters the room, fully aware Dom might attack her. To test him, she hands him Rhodes's gun. Dom immediately points it at her, but Cypher warns that if he pulls the trigger, her men will kill his son instantly. With no other option, Dom lowers the gun and hands it back. Before he leaves, he places his necklace on the glass where Elena and the baby are held. Back at Mr. Nobody's base, everyone grows frustrated after losing the global tracker. Ramsey explains that Cypher and Dom likely entered the country using ghost flights, a method that lets aircraft slip through satellite blind spots. Shaw tracks Dom's next move to New York, so the team prepares to follow. To stay low profile, they move to a new secret facility stocked with high-end cars. Tej picks a tank-like vehicle while Roman begs for a bright orange Lamborghini, though no one thinks that's a good idea. Meanwhile, Dom drives through New York City. After pressing a hidden button that makes his car emit a strange sound, he pulls into an alley, claiming he needs to check the engine since he can't risk any problems. Cypher gives him 5 minutes but quickly loses visual contact. Dom uses the moment to slip away. While Cypher scans every reflection she can find, Dom enters a quiet bar and meets a woman having tea. This woman is Magdalene Shaw. She reminds him that he once took everything from her family, and Dom says he wants to give something back. He explains that when he first saw his son, he couldn't even hold him because they were separated by bulletproof glass. Magdalene realizes he's planning something dangerous. Back in the alley, one of the trucks shifts aside, revealing Dom again. He removes a part and keeps moving with his plan. Elsewhere, the rest of Dom's crew waits at the toy shop. Hobbs reviews Deckard Shaw's file, noting his bravery and the honors he earned before being branded a traitor. Shaw in turn thinks about Hobbs's reputation and wonders if, under different circumstances, they could have made a great team. Cypher then uses the global tracker to locate the Russian Minister of Defense and sends Dom the exact route of his convoy. The target is traveling in an armored limo. Dom asks about his crew's response, but Cypher says they haven't shown up yet. She orders her team to hack every nearby car with factory-installed chips, more than 1,000 vehicles within a 3-kilometer radius, without caring who might be inside. Chaos erupts throughout the streets as the hacked cars crash into each other, forming barriers and overwhelming the escort. Dom prepares to move. The team receives an alert about Dom's location and heads out immediately. Cars suddenly drop from parking garages, smashing down and trapping the limo completely. With every vehicle under Cypher's control, she tells Dom to get to work. Dom approaches the limo carrying a saw and a bulletproof shield. He threatens to cut the gas tank and ignite it unless they hand over the briefcase. They eventually surrender it. As Dom escapes, he runs straight into his crew. Cypher orders him to flee, and Ramsey warns everyone that he's just stolen a nuclear football. The team tries to block him, but Dom refuses to stop. When he hits the gas, Little Nobody breaks formation and triggers a trap that lets Dom slip away. The entire crew speeds after him through the streets of New York. Little Nobody, still inexperienced with teamwork, falls into another ambush. The rest of the group keeps pushing forward in the chase, and Letty eventually manages to pull up beside Dom. But Dom fires the nitrous, and even though she and Tej latch onto him with reinforced cables, they can't stop him. The team finally surrounds Dom, slamming into his car from all sides. Completely pinned, Dom fights desperately to break free, driven by his need to protect Elena and his son. The cars around him start to catch fire, and Cypher orders Dom to move faster. In a last attempt, Dom hits the nitrous again, causing Roman to lose control and flip over. Dom then breaks free of the car door Hobbs used to trap him and crashes into Letty and Tej's vehicles. But the damage to his own car is too much and he abandons it, fleeing on foot with the briefcase. Shaw immediately gives chase while Cypher watches the scene grow more chaotic. Under pressure, Dom shoots Shaw, and Letty uses the distraction to grab the briefcase and run. Dom fires a warning shot into the air, and Letty, shaken, says she knows he still loves her and won't pull the trigger. Before she can escape, Rhodes slams into her violently, ready to kill her to retrieve the briefcase. Dom steps in and forces Letty to hand it over, leaving her heartbroken and confused by what feels like a final betrayal. Hours later, the team confirms Cypher now holds nuclear weapons, the EMP, and the launch codes. Hobbs asks about Shaw, and learning he didn't survive the gunshot hits the group hard. On Cypher's plane, Dom finds Elena gagged and tied down. Cypher confronts him about letting Letty go and tells him he's forgotten the reality of his situation. Holding Dom's son, she forces him to beg for the child's life. In a cruel display of power, Cypher orders Rhodes to execute Elena, breaking Dom completely. Letty later identifies Rhodes as one of Owen Shaw's men, which ties him to Mose Gioconde, the man who tried to steal the global tracker before. The group realizes Dom has stopped Cypher's plans twice in the past, making him her target for revenge. Cypher tries to comfort Dom in a twisted way, claiming his suffering is only psychological. Dom realizes she's using him to spark a global crisis, but she insists she's creating accountability, proving that any nation abusing its power will face consequences. She plans to launch a missile to deliver that message. Before leaving, Dom tells Cypher to kiss his son, reminding her that the child is the only reason she is still alive. Back at the base, the team manages to find a lead on Cypher, thanks to information connected to Rhodes. The few data points they have link to a bank account which traces back to a set of coordinates. Considering the recent attack on the Russian convoy, Mr. Nobody explains that the location is a secret naval base in Vladivostok used to upgrade old Cold War submarines. The facility has been seized by a terrorist group and the Russians haven't been able to retake it. Little Nobody suggests reporting the discovery, but because the US and Russian governments aren't communicating, Hobbs says they should handle it themselves. If they wait for government action, a global war could break out. He eventually convinces Little Nobody to act for the sake of preventing a disaster. They're told transport is coming within the hour, and they now have clearance to use any vehicle they need. Hours later in Vladivostok, Roman shows up with the bright orange Lamborghini, and Tej brings a tank. The team waits outside the base, and Hobbs warns Letty that the situation has changed. If Dom becomes a threat, Hobbs won't hesitate to stop him. In the freezing cold, Roman keeps talking non-stop until they finally spot Dom approaching with the EMP. Dom storms toward the occupied base as the terrorists activate their defenses. Using the EMP, he triggers a massive blackout that lets him break through. Gunfire rains down on his car, but he must wait 60 seconds for the device to recharge. Cypher orders him into position directly beneath the submarine she intends to steal so the EMP can hit it with full force. While waiting, a helicopter attacks Dom's vehicle. When the next EMP blast fires, it shuts down the sub and even knocks the helicopter out of the sky. Cypher then takes control of the submarine systems and orders her men to start moving it. The team realizes they can't allow Cypher to escape with a nuclear-capable submarine. Ramsey believes she can counterhack the system if she gets close enough to the base, while Tej argues they should infiltrate the sub and remove the chip before Cypher can launch any missiles. They decide to attempt both plans. Everyone mobilizes toward the base as Dom destroys anything blocking his path. The team breaks into the base as Cypher is alerted to their arrival. Fighting their way through heavy gunfire, they push past the terrorists. Dom breaks a chain, dropping a steel beam that crushes 3 enemy vehicles after completing his part of the mission. Dom flees the base, but Cypher suddenly forces a change of plans. She orders him to meet up with Rhodes if he ever wants to see his son again. Meanwhile, Tej, Roman, and Little Nobody reach the submarine just as Ramsey begins her hacking battle with Cypher. Both women fight for control of the massive subsystems, while Letty faces several attackers to buy Ramsey precious time. She manages to defeat multiple enemies, and Hobbs clears out others. Cypher then spots the team inside the submarine and seals a door, cutting Tej off from the rest. Letty, thrown against the walls during the fight, urges Ramsey to hurry, but Cypher successfully knocks Ramsey out of the system. Now everything depends on Tej, though he can't reach the console, and Roman and Little Nobody have no idea what they're looking for. Letty smashes through a window, notices the sub's spinning propeller, and uses it to take down her final opponent. Dom meets up with Rhodes as Cypher prepares the nuclear missile for launch. Roman and the others still can't find the chip, but Tej tells them to look for a countdown. They finally spot it and pull the chip free, shutting down the launch sequence. Cypher then orders her team to guide the submarine out. The crew gets ready to fall back, knowing Cypher can't fire any missiles anymore. But a wave of terrorists closes in behind them. Hobbs warns that the bay's gate is closing soon, and if it traps the sub, Cypher will lose it forever. They have 15 kilometers to cover before the sub reaches open water, and Roman's Lamborghini is struggling on the icy terrain. Once the sub is in the water, Cypher orders her men to find an escape path to deeper seas. With Dom still under her control, she instructs Rhodes to eliminate his team. Tej starts firing the tank's heavy weapons to slow the enemies, and Hobbs uses his truck to do the same. Suddenly, a rocket destroys Roman's path, sending his car sinking into the frozen water. Tej throws a hook to pull the Lamborghini back, but the car sinks completely, launching Roman out of the water while he clings to the car door. Gunfire rains down as he prays not to get hit. Then, with a violent explosion, the cable snaps. Roman uses the door as a makeshift sled, crashes into a terrorist on a motorcycle, and wipes out the remaining attackers with their own gun before jumping onto Hobbs' truck. High above the water, two men in flight gear head straight for Cypher's plane and break inside. We learn that Deckard Shaw is still alive, and his brother Owen is with him. Cypher is shocked, unable to understand how he survived. It's revealed that when Dom shot Shaw in New York, Tego and Rico loaded him into an ambulance, where their mother, Magdalene Shaw, nursed him back to life. Once on board, the Shaw brothers quickly eliminate the guards. Owen heads for the cockpit to secure the pilots while Shaw handles the rest of the threats. We also learn that the truck blocking Dom's view in the alley that day in New York was driven by Raldo, working under Magdalene's orders. She explains that Dom gave them a device to track Cypher and pushes her sons to board the plane and finish the job. Owen fights his way through the corridors with precision while Shaw complains that his brother has gone too far. Their mother's tough influence quickly shuts him up and he reluctantly backs Owen up. Meanwhile, Dom waits in his car for a signal. When the call finally comes from Shaw, confirming he has Dom's son, Dom acts immediately. Rhodes fires at Letty, but Dom throws off the shot and gets out of the car to confront him. He sends Rhodes flying and then snaps his neck, ending him for good. Cypher discovers Dom has killed her enforcer and claims he has doomed his child. Dom corrects her, he just saved him. He then takes off to rejoin the fight. On the plane, Shaw places headphones on Dom's baby, playing soft music to keep him calm while the chaos unfolds around them. Cypher orders her men to stop Shaw from escaping with the child. On the ground, Hobbs tells everyone to line up behind his truck so it can absorb the missile impact.
We got another problem!
Inside the aircraft, Shaw faces wave after wave of armed guards while holding the baby, taking down each attacker one by one. Back on the ice, Dom closes in on his family, ready to help them destroy Cypher's forces using the terrorists' own missiles against them. Cypher grows desperate and orders the submarine beneath them to launch its torpedoes. Hobbs tells Roman to take the wheel so he can manually redirect one of the torpedoes on the ice. Meanwhile, Shaw stays focused on keeping Dom's baby safe no matter what happens. Cypher commands the submarine to rise and break through the ice, and the team feels the danger closing in fast. Letty's car nearly gives out as the ice shatters around her, but she activates the nitrous just in time to recover. Dom realizes Cypher is running out of options. He's already destroyed her teams, taken out Rhodes, and sent 2 assassins toward her plane. Refusing to give up, Cypher fires a heat-seeking missile at Dom. But Dom reacts instantly, pulling off a sharp maneuver that causes the missile to swing around and target the submarine instead. Cypher orders the sub to dive, but Dom accelerates, leading the missile straight into the hull. The explosion destroys the submarine, but Dom's car is swallowed by the flames. Dom leaps out at the last second, and his entire family races in, surrounding him with their cars to shield him from the fire. Up on the plane, Shaw reaches Cypher's position but runs out of bullets. He reveals that Dom's necklace held the tracker that led him straight to her. He tells Cypher he's there to settle what she did to his family. But before he can take her down, she grabs a parachute pack, opens a hatch, and escapes into the sky. Owen then reaches the cockpit and orders the plane to land safely with Dom's son unharmed. On the ice, Dom reunites with his family and promises Letty he'll explain everything. Roman celebrates by snapping photos with the wrecked submarine behind him days later. The family meets again in New York. Dom waits anxiously until Mr. Nobody arrives, reporting that Cypher has been spotted in Athens. She's no longer considered a threat. He also tells Hobbs that his record has been cleared and he can return to work. But Hobbs chooses to pause his career to spend time with his daughter. Then Shaw arrives, carrying Dom's baby. Dom realizes that Shaw fought Cypher to get back at her for watching over him like prey. Dom finally holds his son for the first time. Looking up, he silently promises Elena that he'll protect their child. During dinner, Dom thanks everyone for standing by him during the hardest moment of his life, and introduces his son to the family. He names him Brian. The story now continues with Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw. The film opens with an MI6 rescue team preparing for a mission to recover a programmable supervirus that's currently in the hands of the tech terrorist group known as Edeon. This virus, stored inside a secure metal case, is the main objective of an operation led by Agent Hattie Shaw. She and her team infiltrate the facility, hoping to retrieve it before anyone else can. At the same time, we see Brixton Lore approaching on a motorcycle. He's a former MI6 agent who has been turned into a cyber-enhanced operative by Edeon. His implants give him incredible strength and speed, making him a dangerous opponent. When Hattie senses trouble, she quickly throws a grenade and her team pushes forward, fighting their way through the guards who are protecting the virus. A ferocious battle breaks out between both sides, but Hattie eventually reaches the case and secures the virus container. Before she can leave, Brixton arrives. Not recognizing him, she asks who he is, but Brixton ignores an MI6 agent's warning and wipes out the entire team with ease. Hattie tries to escape by ducking into a truck, but Brixton's attacks force her off the road. Knowing she can't let Etion take the virus, Hattie injects herself with the only available dose and escapes on foot. Realizing he has failed his mission, Brixton grabs a radio and pretends to be part of the MI6 team, framing Hattie for killing her squad, stealing the virus, and fleeing the scene. After sending out the report, he eliminates the last surviving agent. Soon after, his own crew arrives and Brixton orders them to track down Hattie, clean up the scene, and make sure no evidence or witnesses remain. Elsewhere on a split screen, we see the daily routines of former DSS agent Luke Hobbs and former MI6 agent Shaw. Both men receive separate calls informing them that the virus has gone missing. Hobbs, who's in Los Angeles, and Shaw, who's in London, each head to a bar in their cities. There, they question and fight people who might know something about the virus's location. The next morning, Hobbs sits in a cafe with his daughter, Sam. She talks to him about a school project she still hasn't finished, her family tree. She shows him a photo that includes her uncle and asks why he never talks about their family in Samoa. Hobbs pauses and explains that sometimes life brings difficult situations, but they still have to be faced. He tells her that no matter what, he's her family. Meanwhile in London, Shaw visits his mother, Magdalene Shaw, who is in prison. She asks if he has spoken to his sister, Hattie. Shaw admits he hasn't. Magdalene reminds him that the two of them were inseparable growing up, always getting into trouble together, even pretending to rob banks with homemade explosives. She urges him to find Hattie and says that when she is released, she hopes to see both her children waiting for her outside. Back in Los Angeles, Hobbs and Sam are still at the cafe when they are approached by Victor Locke. He tells Hobbs that the CT-17 virus is actually a biological weapon called Snowflake. Locke hands him a file containing information on Hattie, the MI6 agent now believed to have stolen the only dose of the virus. He also mentions the scientist who created the virus, who has now disappeared. Locke explains that Hobbs has been assigned to track down Hattie because she is carrying the virus, and time is running out before it becomes a global threat. Even though Hobbs doesn't want to work with Locke, he understands the danger and agrees to take the mission. In London, Shaw is approached by Agent Loeb. At first, Shaw refuses to talk, but Loeb gets his attention by showing him a photo of Hattie. He explains that she has taken a weapon unlike anything the world has seen before, a programmable disease that can target any DNA sequence and has a 100% fatality rate within 72 hours. He warns that if MI6 finds her first, she'll be treated as a traitor, but if Shaw helps locate her and recover the virus, he'll be granted immunity. Meanwhile, Hattie receives a voicemail demanding that she return the virus. Realizing her own agency now believes she killed her team, she prepares for the worst by setting traps throughout her apartment. Locke tells Shaw that the CIA has set up an office in London and that they're bringing in a US agent to join the search for Hattie. Later, Shaw and Hobbs meet at the CIA's secret London office. The moment they see each other, a heated argument breaks out, as neither one wants to work together. Shaw quickly decides he's going solo and leaves. Hobbs plans to do the same and asks the surveillance team to show him every recorded sighting of Hattie. After watching the footage, he realizes she is highly skilled and extremely resourceful. Meanwhile, Hattie heads to a hotel and changes her appearance so she won't be recognized. At the same time, Shaw checks his sister's apartment and discovers the traps and hidden weapons she left behind. Not long after, Hobbs spots Hattie outside the hotel, and the two immediately get into a fight. Meanwhile, Shaw is ambushed by a group of men at his sister's house. At the same time, Hobbs manages to handcuff Hattie, but she quickly turns the tables by locking him in a tight chokehold that wraps around his whole body. Even so, Hobbs pushes through and eventually brings her down. Back at Hattie's place, during the fight between Shaw and the attackers, a grenade slips to the floor. Shaw spots it and immediately dives on top of it to protect everyone from the blast. The next day, inside Etion's headquarters, Brixton undergoes another enhancement procedure. As the upgrade continues, an unseen director speaks to him, claiming that humanity must evolve before it destroys itself and insisting that human weakness will one day be replaced with mechanical perfection. In London, back at the CIA's secret office, Hobbs interrogates Hattie about the virus. She refuses to answer any questions, saying she has no idea what he's talking about and insists she didn't kill her team. She's surprised when Hobbs tells her he actually believes her. During the questioning, Hobbs gets a call from his daughter. While he answers it, he asks another agent to watch Hattie. She cleverly slips out of her cuffs and attacks the agent while Hobbs casually talks with Sam, who suspects her dad might like the fugitive. Hobbs rushes in when he realizes what's happening, but Hattie turns a gun on him, catching him off guard. At that moment, Shaw bursts into the room and aims a gun at Hobbs. The three end up in a tense standoff until Shaw reveals that Hattie is his sister. She then admits that she injected herself with the virus. Suddenly, Brixton's team storms the building. They knock Hattie unconscious and manage to capture her. With no other choice, Hobbs and Shaw decide to work together. They charge straight into Etion's men, fighting them head-on. Hobbs follows the kidnappers by using the same escape path they took, while Shaw races down the side of the building inside an exterior elevator. Hobbs leaps into a group of Brixton's operatives and takes them down one at a time. Right then, Hattie regains consciousness and cuts the rope holding her and her captor, leaving both of them hanging on a glass rooftop. As the captor attempts to strike, Hobbs tackles him, while Shaw steps out of the elevator and takes down more of Brixton's men. Hobbs goes head-to-head with Brixton, but the cyber-enhanced agent is faster, stronger, and nearly impossible to stop. Shaw jumps in to help, but his attack also fails. Hobbs quickly activates an explosive carried by one of the operatives, and when it detonates, the blast gives them the opening they need to escape. Shaw quickly grabs a car and tells Hattie to get in, but Hobbs aims his gun at them, making it clear he's coming too. Brixton's team immediately launches a relentless chase, doing everything they can to stop the trio. During the pursuit, Hobbs leans out of the car window, grabs one of the attackers by the neck and slams him against a wall to slow their pursuit. Inside the car, Hobbs demands answers. Shaw explains that 8 years ago he killed Brixton and has no idea how he's still alive. Shaw keeps speeding forward until they run into 2 trucks blocking the road. He performs a risky stunt by driving under both trucks. Brixton repeats the same move without effort, closing the distance again. Seeing the enhanced agent still behind them, Shaw makes a sharp turn around a bus. Brixton crashes into it, giving them just enough time to get away. Later, Brixton returns to Etion headquarters. Using the company's control over global media, he broadcasts a message framing Hobbs, Shaw, and Hattie as traitors. The trio watches in shock as every news channel shows them as wanted criminals for something they didn't do. Shaw explains that Etion is a covert organization made up of mercenaries with enormous amounts of dirty money, obsessed with upgrading humanity because they believe they're saving the world. Hobbs says he has heard whispers about the group and suggests hiding in a safe house, but Shaw refuses, warning that Brixton is the deadliest assassin he has ever faced and will never stop hunting them. As they argue over their next move, Hattie decides the priority is finding someone who can remove the virus from her system. That's when Hobbs shows her a photo of the scientist, revealing he already located the man before the attack and knows exactly where to find him. Soon after, Professor Andreyko steps outside to buy a newspaper and is immediately caught by Hobbs and Shaw. Meanwhile, at Etion headquarters, Brixton speaks with the organization's director over the radio. The director warns him that the mission has become more complicated now that Hobbs and Shaw are involved. Brixton insists he can handle both ex-agents and still recover the target. The director orders him to find Hattie, extract the virus, and reprogram it so they can begin Phase 1. He explains that their plan is to wipe out the weak and anyone who stands in their way, claiming this will create a perfect system. He also tells Brixton to consider recruiting Hobbs and Shaw, but makes it clear that if he fails, he will face the consequences himself. Meanwhile, Shaw interrogates Professor Andreyko about the virus he created, while Hattie reveals she injected herself with it 30 hours earlier. Hobbs suggests trying to neutralize the virus, but the professor explains that it isn't that simple. Snowflake isn't designed for just any DNA sequence, it is lethal to everyone. In 42 hours, the capsules inside Hattie will dissolve, releasing the virus into her bloodstream. From there, it will spread into the environment and trigger global contamination within a week. Andreyko explains that he originally designed the technology to deliver vaccines more effectively, not as a weapon. But Etion twisted his work into something dangerous. The only way to prevent the virus from spreading is to incinerate the infected person or extract it using a specialized device. That machine is stored inside Etion's lab where Snowflake was developed, however. He warns them that trying to enter the facility would be almost certain death. After that, the trio heads to Shaw's place to gather weapons and gear for their raid on Etion's facility. Shaw contacts a friend in Moscow to arrange support, and he plans a way for them to leave the country without being detected. He even prepares new identities for all 3 of them. Thanks to this, Shaw and Hattie pass through airport security without trouble. Hobbs, however, gets stopped because of his fake ID. While he's delayed, the Shaw siblings talk on the plane about their mission and the risks involved. Hattie is worried about what will happen if they fail. Eventually, Hobbs manages to board the plane as well. Later that night, Professor Andreyko is ambushed in a parking lot and kidnapped by Brixton. Back on the plane, Hobbs and Shaw begin arguing in low voices, irritating everyone around them. Shaw is convinced Hobbs only joined the mission to impress Hattie. Their arguing attracts the attention of the Air Marshal, Dinkley, who tells them to calm down. After a short but awkward exchange, Dinkley gives them his contact details and says they might need a 3rd team member someday. Elsewhere, inside Etion's base, Brixton subjects Andreyko to intense psychological pressure, threatening him with a gun to force him to reprogram the virus for their plans. Meanwhile, the trio arrives in Moscow at the home of Margarita, Shaw's friend, who is known for robbing Russian mobsters. Later, the group studies Etion's facility through a digital display. Shaw tells Margarita they're after the CT-17 viral extraction machine and begins explaining the plan with Margarita, providing all the necessary equipment they'll need. At that moment, Hattie quietly tells Hobbs that if anything goes wrong, he must not let her live since the virus would spread. With the mission underway, Margarita delivers Hattie to Brixton, who asks whether she was captured alone. She claims she was, but Brixton warns her that if she's lying, he'll make her regret it. After that, Brixton and his team transport Hattie to Edion's main facility. Meanwhile, Hobbs and Shaw suit up and prepare to parachute onto the complex. Once they land, they work their way inside and manage to infiltrate the building. Brixton brings Hattie into the extraction room, where Professor Andreyko is already being held. He tells her that the procedure will be quick. As Hobbs and Shaw move through the facility, Hobbs begins planting explosives while they search for Hattie. Shaw is suddenly ambushed by a group of security guards, forced to fight them off on his own. At the same time, Hobbs comes face to face with a huge muscular man and knocks him out with a single punch. The duo eventually reaches Brixton and his operatives.
Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. Access granted.
But the moment they get close, they are ambushed. Brixton's men overwhelm them with a coordinated attack, and the two heroes are knocked out cold. Hattie is strapped to a table for the extraction procedure, but she manages to overpower the two agents watching her. She frees herself, grabs the device, and Professor Andreyko decides to escape with her. They make their way into another lab where Hattie quickly takes down the agents inside. Meanwhile, Hobbs wakes up chained to a chair with Shaw tied up across from him. Brixton has attached batteries to their chairs, sending electric shocks through them over and over. Brixton recalls how 8 years earlier Etion approached both him and Shaw with data predicting humanity's extinction. He believes Edion's plan will save the world and that Snowflake is the shock humanity needs to evolve. Hobbs calls him a genocidal maniac, but Brixton ignores him. He explains that Etion paid him to kill Shaw when Shaw refused their offer, and when Shaw shot him, it became a blessing, turning him into the Black Superman. He then offers both men one final chance to join Etion, promising them the same cybernetic upgrades. Just then, Hobbs notices Hattie sneaking into the room disguised as a lab worker. He tells Brixton they agree to join. Stalling for time and signaling to Shaw that their plan is underway, Hattie steps forward with a gun aimed at Brixton's head, threatening to kill him. Her gun fails to fire, but Andreyko blasts Brixton with a flamethrower. Hobbs and Shaw use the chaos to break free and fight off the nearby operatives before jumping into a four-wheeler. They spot Hattie and manage to pick her up. She explains that she hid the extraction device inside another truck, so Hobbs jumps off the vehicle and retrieves it. Shaw and Hattie then race out of the facility under heavy gunfire, with Etion agents in pursuit. Back inside the lab, Brixton kills Andreyko, then jumps onto Hobbs's truck and reaches his motorcycle just before the entire base explodes. He activates a swarm of drones to continue chasing Hattie. Shaw stays ahead of the agents, driving straight into a building just as Brixton's drones catch up. Hobbs manages to destroy one drone with his truck while the other fires at Shaw. Shaw launches out of the building and shoots the drone in midair, blowing it apart. The four-wheeler is damaged from the landing, so Shaw heads toward Hobbs, who takes out multiple enemy cars with his truck. As Shaw tries to pass Hattie over to Hobbs, Brixton arrives and reaches for her but misses. He jumps onto his motorcycle again and opens fire on Shaw, who manages to leap onto the back of Hobbs's truck. Hobbs hands the wheel to Hattie and joins Shaw on the back as Brixton also boards the truck. The three engage in a fight, but Brixton easily overpowers them with his enhanced strength. Their intense chase causes the entire facility around them to collapse. A huge tower crashes down, forcing Brixton to abandon the fight. Hobbs, Shaw, and Hattie finally come to a stop, but the extraction machine has been damaged. Hattie, exhausted, is ready to accept the worst option, but Shaw refuses. He can't risk losing his sister. They need a safe place to hide, but with the entire country searching for them, they have no options left. Hobbs reluctantly suggests going to his home country, Samoa. Dinkley arranges their flight and again offers to join the team, but they turn him down. When they arrive in Samoa, Hobbs leads them to his family's compound and knocks on the door. His older brother Jonah answers by punching him down the steps. Furious that Hobbs disappeared for 25 years and has now returned as a wanted man. Before the fight escalates, their mother steps in and happily welcomes Hobbs back. Inside the house, Hobbs pleads with Jonah to examine the damaged extraction machine and help him save the world, but Jonah wants nothing to do with it and begins chasing them out of the house until their mother steps in. She orders everyone to help their brother and even threatens them with her slipper if they refuse. Meanwhile, Brixton is back at Etion headquarters receiving repairs. The director now agrees that Hobbs and Shaw must be eliminated. His team soon tracks the trio to Samoa and prepares to head there. In Samoa, Hobbs and his family begin getting ready for the fight. Hobbs tells Hattie about their father's criminal past and how he used his sons as part of his crew. When Hobbs realized his family was in danger, he turned his father in and left the island. Jonah then shows them his custom car workshop and explains that he eventually straightened out his life and now works with clients around the world. Hobbs plans to arm everyone but discovers their mother has replaced all the guns with traditional Samoan weapons because she hates firearms. Shaw and Hattie realize the situation is worse than they thought, but they decide to use whatever they have. Everyone begins preparing for battle. Jonah repairs the extraction machine. Hobbs, Shaw, and the brothers set up explosives and traps while Hattie hacks an Eteon glove she stole and finds a way to disable the enemy's weapons, but only for a few minutes. Later, Hobbs joins Hattie as she watches the sunset. She regrets not spending more time with her brother, knowing family is all she has left. Hobbs agrees, feeling guilty that his own daughter barely knows her Samoan relatives. They promise each other that after this is over, they will make more time for family. With only 30 minutes left before Snowflake goes viral, Jonah finishes repairing the extraction machine and starts the process. At that moment, alarms go off outside the compound. As they move out to face the threat, Hobbs apologizes to Jonah for leaving the island all those years ago and promises to come home more often after this. Jonah accepts and the brothers share a brief hug. Shaw hands Hattie the extraction device and tells her to stay close in case they need to escape quickly. At that moment, Brixton and his team arrive on the island. Hobbs steps forward to confront them, calling out to his brothers and the Samoan villagers to get ready. Brixton orders his men to fire, but their guns suddenly shut down. Hobbs triggers an explosion and Shaw lights a gas trail that surrounds the agents, trapping them inside a ring of fire. Hobbs and his brothers charge into battle, taking on Eteon's operatives in a fierce fight. The Samoan warriors overpower most of the agents, but Brixton puts up a tough fight, matching the brothers blow for blow. Hattie is grabbed by one of the operatives, but Shaw rushes in and takes down her attacker, protecting her. Soon after, a gunship lands nearby. A shaken Hattie tries to move through the chaos, but Brixton grabs her and drags her toward the helicopter. Shaw spots them and jumps into a tow truck with Hobbs climbing onto the back. Before the chopper can lift off, Shaw drives forward and launches the vehicle, giving Hobbs the chance to hook a chain onto the helicopter. Shaw slams the brakes and starts pulling the chopper back while the pilots struggle to gain altitude. Brixton gets frustrated and throws one pilot out of the aircraft before finally lifting the chopper into the air, dragging the truck behind it and leaving its wheels barely touching the ground. At that moment, 3 more trucks pull up and hook their chains to the one behind Shaw's, forming a line to keep the helicopter from lifting off. Brixton tries to swing them all over a cliff, but the trucks activate the boosters at the same time, causing the chopper's engine to blow and pulling the convoy back onto the road. Eteon's weapons then come back online, and the agents open fire, forcing the other trucks to break loose. Shaw leads the remaining cars through a field filled with traps. The helicopter almost breaks free again, but Hobbs holds onto the chain with sheer strength and manages to reattach it. Inside the chopper, Hattie fights off the agents, causing even more damage. The helicopter finally loses control, crashing and pulling the truck over the edge of the cliff. Brixton recovers first from the wreck. He sees Hattie with only 4 minutes left on the extraction machine and orders another agent to kill her as soon as the process finishes. Hobbs and Shaw crawl out of the river below, shouting for Hattie, but Brixton blocks their path. He warns them that this is the end, but they refuse to back down. They both rush him, but Brixton is too fast. His enhancements let him predict every move, allowing him to dodge and counter easily. He mocks them for being ordinary humans, but Hobbs and Shaw keep fighting. Hobbs finally lands a solid strike to Brixton's head, giving them a chance. The two decide to synchronize their attacks. Hobbs deliberately takes a hit so Shaw can land one of his own, and they repeat the tactic. Working together, they overpower Brixton until Hobbs slams him onto a rock. Meanwhile, Hattie manages to take out the guard watching her just as the extraction completes. She joins Hobbs and Shaw, who stand over the defeated Brixton. Shaw regrets what Brixton became but refuses to kill him. Suddenly, the Eteon director activates a failsafe, triggering a self-destruct sequence inside Brixton. His body shuts down and he falls into the sea. A nearby helicopter powers on and the director hacks into its speakers. He reveals that he and Hobbs know each other, promising that they will meet again soon. The thrilling saga continues with Fast and Furious 9. We open on a racetrack, where a young Dominic Toretto watches his father race alongside a lineup of fast cars. The shine of his signature necklace glints in his rearview mirror. When he pulls into the pit, we learn it's 1989 and we meet his father, Jack Toretto. His crew warns Jack about the risks of the track while Jacob works under the hood. Dom stays close, supporting his father in every way he can. Jack heads back into the race, but several traps have been set. The event is full of adrenaline and sharp skill until disaster strikes. Another driver hits Jack's car, sending it flipping through the air before it bursts into flames. Dom runs toward his father in a panic, but he's too late. All he can do is watch as the fire takes Jack away. In the present day, Dom is raising his son Brian, teaching him everything he knows about cars. Letty joins them just as a car suddenly approaches their isolated home. Dom tells Brian to hide and prepares for a possible threat. But instead of danger, Roman steps out of the vehicle, announcing that it's only them. Soon after, Ramsey and Tej arrive as well. They explain they couldn't contact Dom and Letty because neither of them owns a phone. The team shows an urgent transmission from Mr. Nobody, whose plane was attacked. Ramsey hasn't been able to decode all the data yet, but they confirm the message was sent only to them. Letty asks why, and they explain that Mr. Nobody had captured Cypher, but the plane was ambushed mid-flight to free her. They believe it crashed in Montequinto. Tej says they need to find him, but Dom surprises everyone, especially Letty, by saying they're not part of that life anymore. Roman reminds him this could be their chance to catch the person responsible for Alina's death, but Dom still refuses to get involved. Tej then tells the group they'll be leaving at 8 a.m. in case Dom and Letty change their minds. That night, the couple tucks Brian into bed. Letty hands Dom her necklace and quietly says goodbye before joining the crew, explaining that they're not like Brian and Mia. Once alone, Dom studies the video again and notices a necklace in the footage, one he clearly recognizes. Realizing what it means, he changes his mind. Before the plane takes off, he arrives to join the team. In Montequinto, Spain, the group heads deep into the restricted area to locate Mr. Nobody's crashed plane. Ramsey warns them to move quickly since they're entering a militarized zone. When they reach the wreckage, they find no survivors, only a strange device that seems to be the source of the distress signal. Suddenly, military forces ambush them. Letty manages to hide the device on her motorbike before everyone takes off. Roman gets separated and ends up fighting off dozens of soldiers on his own, but the rest of the team escapes. Just when the pressure becomes overwhelming, Roman reappears and catches up with them. As they race toward a minefield, Dom asks how fast they need to drive to avoid triggering the explosives. Tej answers that they need to hit about 130 kilometers per hour. They speed through the danger zone while the military pulls back. Explosions erupt all around them but never directly hit, and a mysterious figure watches from a distance. Roman's truck, however, is too slow. After striking a mine, the vehicle catches fire. Another explosion launches him into the air, wedging the truck between two large rocks. Tej can't reach him because the truck is resting on top of a live mine. With sheer determination, Roman forces the windshield open, climbs out, and manages not to set off the explosive. Even though it looks like the truck crushes him, he narrowly escapes death yet again. Meanwhile, Dom and Letty look for a way out but are suddenly stopped by a group of armed men. Dom manages to take one of them down, but another vehicle slams into Letty and knocks her off her bike. Dom quickly pulls his car under her, catching her before she hits the ground. At that moment, the mysterious figure from earlier steps out of the trees and grabs the device. Dom and Letty both recognize him immediately. It's Jacob. Dom and Letty race after him as he speeds toward a cliff. At the same time, Tej and the rest of the team try to cross a fragile wooden bridge, but it collapses after being struck by another vehicle. Even though it looks like they fall straight into the canyon, they manage to reach the other side. Military helicopters begin firing on Dom and Jacob, but neither of them slows down. Jacob drives off the cliff on purpose, allowing a plane to catch his car midair using a special hook. Dom, dodging gunfire, heads toward the broken bridge. With no other option, he uses a hanging pillar to hook onto his car and swings across the gap, landing hard but safely on the opposite side. It's a rough landing, but they finally shake off the military forces. Later, aboard a transport plane, the team meets Stashak, who explains that news of a spy plane crashing in a hostile country is already causing problems. He agrees to fly them wherever they need to go, but he refuses to take part in anything beyond that. While everyone discusses their next move, Ramsey announces that she has decrypted more of the coordinates from the encrypted file. Letty then asks Dom if he knew Jacob would be there. Tej, confused, asks who Jacob even is. Letty explains that Jacob is Dom's brother. Everyone is stunned. None of them even knew Dom had a brother, let alone one with such impressive abilities. As Roman keeps talking, Dom drifts into a memory of the accident, recalling how Jacob seemed far less shaken by their father's death than he was. Days after the tragedy, the Toretto family went to sign some official papers. While Dom handled the documents, Jacob noticed Kenny, the racer involved in the crash that killed their father. When Jacob approached him and asked him to leave, Kenny recognized him and called him Toretto's useless kid. Frustrated, Jacob picked up a wrench to scare him off. Kenny tried to apologize, but he hints that Jack had known his risky moves on the track would eventually cost him his life. Hearing this pushed Jacob over the edge. Dom rushed in to stop him, but Dom instead strikes Kenny with the wrench, leading to his arrest. It's a memory that continues to haunt Jacob even as an adult. Later, Jacob meets with Otto, who congratulates him on successfully using the magnet to retrieve the device from Mr. Nobody's plane. Inside their base, Cypher remains locked in a high-tech glass cell. She comments on Jacob's skill, pointing out that he rescued her without a scratch, before subtly trying to manipulate him by reminding him he has always lived in Dominic's shadow. Uncomfortable with her games, Jacob shifts the topic and reveals the disc he took. He hands Cypher an old computer and orders her to locate the other half of Project Ares, warning her not to hack anything beyond that task. Within moments, Cypher finds the location and tells him retrieving it will be simple, unless Dom gets involved. Meanwhile, in the Caspian Sea, the team breaks into an abandoned base. Dom admits he no longer recognizes Jacob or understands what he's planning, but he insists on facing him alone. The team refuses to let him go through it by himself, reminding him that they always have his back. Later, Roman starts joking that they might actually be invincible, since they've survived mission after mission without a single serious injury. Letty joins Dom to prepare their weapons and both admit they miss the rush of their old lives. Soon after, Tej announces Mia has arrived. Letty had already told her about Jacob's return. Dom warns Mia that joining them now puts everything she has built at risk, but she explains that her children and Dom's are completely safe. Brian is looking after them, which is why she wants to help this time. Ramsey then presents Project Ares, a device built to control any system that runs on code. She explains that if Ares connects to a satellite, whoever controls it could take over global weapon systems and rewrite the world order within minutes. Knowing how dangerous it was, Mr. Nobody split the prototype into two halves, each requiring its own activation code. Since Jacob already has one half, their mission is to find the code before he does. Dom suggests they need to split up if they want to outsmart Jacob. Tej adds that Mr. Nobody's transmission mentioned a name connected to the code, someone tied to Han's supposed death. Letty and Mia prepare to investigate. Before they leave, Dom stops Mia to tell her that on the day Han died, he received a picture from Mexico with a Tokyo postmark, hinting that something important ended there. Mia asks what he plans to do about Jacob, and Dom answers simply, he's going to find him. Dom then recalls his time in prison where he worked in a shop with Santos and Leo, who became his friends. They once warned him about a crack in a fuel line. If air slipped in, the engine would choke. They explained it was a common sabotage trick in racing, but if the crack widened, the car could explode. This memory left Dom questioning everything about the day of his father's final race. After his release from prison, he went to an underground race where the crowd cheered for Jacob, who was no longer living in Dom's shadow. Dom didn't expect to face him so soon, but he challenged Jacob to a race. If Jacob won, he could return home, but if he lost, he would have to keep driving and never come back. Before the race began, Dom confronted Jacob. He revealed that he knew Jacob had sabotaged their father's engine since he was the last one who checked the car that day. With that truth out in the open, the Toretto brothers lined up at the start line. A young woman dropped the flag, signaling the race that would change their lives forever. Both brothers hit the nitrous, but Jacob used his too early and lost control. Dom pulled ahead and won, while Jacob kept driving into the distance without stopping. In the present, Dom returns to the old racetrack in search of Buddy. Time has changed Buddy, but the track looks exactly the same. After greeting him, Dom asks about Jacob, knowing Buddy took him in after he was exiled. Buddy tells him the worst thing you can do to a Toretto is take away his family, and reminds Dom that while he has people who love him, Jacob has no one. He warns Dom that if he and his brother clash again, one of them might not survive. Dom thanks Buddy for looking after Jacob, but Buddy urges him to make peace with the past if he wants any kind of future. Before Dom leaves, Buddy reveals the only thing he knows: Jacob is in London. He wishes Dom luck and hopes he finds the peace he's looking for. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Letty and Mia arrive in Tokyo, searching for answers connected to Han. During dinner, Mia admits she kept in touch with Jacob after the incident, until one day he simply disappeared. She asks Letty how she's feeling, and Letty explains that after getting her memories back, she felt the need to face the chaos in her life to find her own peace. She also confesses that it worries her to see young Brian hiding whenever visitors arrive. Suddenly, Letty looks up, remembering something Han once said. Tokyo is like the Mexican border for anyone running from the United States. Right then, she spots a Mexican flag hanging in a nearby window. Meanwhile, in Germany, Sean, Twinkie, and Earl have secured permission to build rocket engines in exchange for a bit of cash. The team, however, can't seem to agree on anything. In the middle of their argument, Roman and Ted show up. Sean proudly shows them a car fitted with a remote-controlled rocket engine. They test it by racing it against a plane preparing for takeoff. The three builders cheer with excitement, leaving Roman and Tej completely confused until the car suddenly explodes. Tej explains they were sent by Dominic Toretto to find some wheels. Sean and Twinkie recognize the name, but Earl has no idea who he is. Back in London, inside a luxury jewelry store, Magdalene Shaw is busy stealing some expensive pieces. As alarms blare, Dom finds her outside attempting to steal a getaway car. He jumps in beside her to talk. The car speeds through the streets with police quickly closing in. Dom tells her he's looking for someone with serious resources. Magdalene mentions that an American in her crew recently bought a large stash of weapons for something big in Edinburgh, adding that he looks a lot like Dom. Dom admits it's his brother. The chase continues until Magdalene shakes off several police cars with a smooth maneuver. She warns Dom that Jacob has placed a bounty on anyone who can track him down. They finally pull up to a grand mansion hosting a lavish party. Before Dom steps out, Magdalene reminds him that nothing is stronger than family love. But when that love turns to hate, nothing is more dangerous. Dom walks through the crowd of women in luxury cars until he comes face to face with Otto, Jacob's partner. Otto boasts about being filthy rich thanks to his father, a dictator, and offers Dom some company. Dom ignores him and heads straight for Jacob. The moment Jacob senses him, he says the brother Dom once knew is gone. Dom responds by saying he still sees the scared kid who caused their father's death. Jacob snaps back, demanding that Dom leave, just like he forced him 2 years ago. The tension boils over, and soon both brothers are pointing guns at each other. Just then, Interpol agents burst in. Otto declares he has diplomatic immunity since, as the son of a head of state, the mansion counts as an embassy. The agents arrest Dom for attempted murder and take him into custody. As Dom is being transported, Otto tells Jacob they need to prepare for Edinburgh to track down the other half of Project Ares. They still need the activation code, but they believe they're close. Inside the transport truck, Lesa, an old friend of Dom's, greets him with a grin. She hands him a weapon loaded with Jacob's biometrics, something that will help him track down his brother. Meanwhile in Tokyo, Letty and Mia enter the apartment with the Mexican flag hanging in the window. Inside, they find a photograph of their friend Han beside a woman they don't recognize. Suddenly, a young woman named Elle appears, calls out their names, and takes down the first intruder. More armed men arrive, triggering a fierce battle between the three women and the attackers. They begin to get overwhelmed, until Letty crashes through a window and is saved at the last second by Han, who steps in and takes out the remaining threat. In Edinburgh, a package is being transported to a high-security vault. Otto sets up a device inside a church while Dom waits for word from Ramsey. She informs him that by using Jacob's fingerprints she has tracked him and his team nearby, but her computer suddenly glitches. Security cameras across the city start shutting down. At the same time, authorities receive an alert. Jacob was hiding inside the transported package, using it to sneak into the vault and steal the second half of Ares. Out on the streets, Roman and Tej continue searching for their target. Roman spots a delivery rider who looks like a trained fighter and tackles him without warning. Tej reports the incident, but before he can finish, his metal chain snaps and sticks to a nearby truck. Both men realize an electromagnet is hidden inside the vehicle, causing all the interference. When they spot the men inside the truck, they're immediately threatened at gunpoint. Police begin flooding the streets, and Dom quickly deduces that Jacob won't use the roads to escape. Looking up, he sees him flying across the rooftops. Ramsey spots Otto leaving the church and decides to follow him. When Dom tells her to pursue, she admits she doesn't know how to drive, but the situation leaves her no choice. Moments later, she finds herself behind the wheel of a driverless truck. Inside the back compartment, Tej and Roman see her take control. Ramsey activates the magnets, helping the team pull enemy vehicles and weapons out of the way. She slams the gas and speeds after Otto while Tej and Roman fight off the men attacking them. Dom continues chasing Jacob across the rooftops as Ramsey accidentally triggers the magnet again, pulling phones from bystanders and dragging random metal objects toward the truck. Dom jumps out of his car and climbs the building, sprinting across rooftops. Meanwhile, Tej and Roman finish off the last of the attackers in a chaotic brawl inside the truck. Dom finally catches Jacob midair and the two crash through an apartment window, starting a violent hand-to-hand fight. Otto heads toward Jacob's escape point while the Toretto brothers smash furniture and tear through walls in a brutal clash. At last, Jacob dives out of a window and lands on a moving bus to escape. Dom refuses to lose sight of Jacob. From a lower level, Ramsey destabilizes Otto's car while Dom pushes Jacob off the overpass. Both brothers crash down together onto Ramsey's truck. Jacob tries to escape in another car, but Ramsey activates the magnet and drags the vehicle straight through the surrounding buildings. Later, Otto arrives back at his base and demands the best drivers available to chase down Toretto. Cypher mocks him, calling this the moment when desperate villains make mistakes and give the heroes a chance to win. She even suggests he's nothing more than a puppet being controlled by someone else. Jacob is taken to the base in the Caspian Sea, locked inside a cell by Dom's crew. Meanwhile, Tej and Ramsey admire the magnet's power, and after teasing Roman, Letty and Mia appear with a shocking surprise. Han is alive. The team rushes to embrace him, overcome with relief. Jacob watches from his cell, seeing the kind of affection he never experienced. Later, Han explains everything. After Giselle's death, he felt empty and lost. Mr. Nobody found him and offered him a job to steal a device from two scientists, but he left out an important detail. Elle adds that one Saturday, when she came home to get a coat, she saw her parents' car explode through the window. Han also witnessed the explosion and was injured while trying to rescue her from the men who arrived afterward. Han taught Elle how to survive, knowing she would always be hunted. Because she is the key to Ares, the activation code is encoded in her DNA inherited from her parents. Han also reveals that Mr. Nobody once warned him about one of his best agents turning traitor. When Deckard Shaw showed up, they used the attack as a cover to fake Han's death. Suddenly, alarms start blaring throughout the base. Otto's men break in and restrain the team. Jacob walks out of his cell, revealing he was the traitor in Mr. Nobody's organization. That's how Otto was able to track Dom so easily. Jacob says he finally has the activation code, and after taking the other half of the Ares device, tells Dom that the best thing to come from their father's death was that it let him step out of Dom's shadow. Dom fires back, saying the only good thing about that tragedy was that their father never saw what Jacob became. Enraged, Jacob finally reveals the truth. Their father wanted to throw the race because he was drowning in debt. He asked Jacob for help, but neither of them knew the car would explode. Jacob swore to keep the secret, and he kept that promise until today. Jacob leaves with Elle, and not even Han can stop him. Dom tells Ramsey to activate the magnet, causing every gun in the room to fly away while also pulling the pins from the smoke grenades. Using the chaos, the team attempts to escape. However, the team is moments away from being caught. So Dom chooses to stay behind. He closes the hatch, deciding to face the soldiers alone and keep them from reaching his family. They pin him down, but as he spots the door beginning to open, he finds the strength to rise. He pulls several soldiers with him and they all fall together. Dom hits the water below and sinks into the darkness. He wakes from unconsciousness into a memory, his father speaking to him and Jacob about the strength of a united family. He remembers how their father tried to protect them from the weight of his struggles. Dom then walks through a door and finds himself on the racetrack watching a young Jacob nervously follow their father's orders, never realizing those actions would lead to tragedy. He relives the moment he exiled Jacob, then suddenly snaps back to reality as Letty dives into the water to save him. When Dom awakens, he thanks Letty for rescuing him. Later, they review their situation. Jacob now has everything needed to activate Project Ares. All he's missing is a rogue satellite with the amplifier required to spread the signal. Stopping him won't be easy. They can't prevent the satellite launch, and they'll have to take on Jacob, his private army, and the satellite in orbit, which can only be hacked physically. Dom and Letty believe they can manage it, but Roman panics, saying they're dealing with something way beyond anything they've faced before. When he asks if they plan to steal a space shuttle, the answer is simple. Yes. In Tbilisi, Georgia, Jacob and Otto oversee the launch preparations. As they leave, they hand Elle the Ares device, which activates in her hands. Jacob explains that the signal link will begin once the satellite reaches orbit. Meanwhile, Roman and Tej sit inside a car strapped to a plane. Sean and Earl are piloting, asking if they're ready for takeoff. Roman definitely isn't, especially because they're in the same car that blew up earlier. The pilots try to reassure him, though Earl keeps running last-minute simulations. On the streets below, the team prepares to attack the convoy transporting the Ares device and the truck carrying Elle. They must disable the device before Roman and Tej reach the satellite. Jacob gives the order to begin signal transmission. Roman and Tej are launched into the sky and their car's booster ignites, sending them into space. They stare back at the planet while Otto's men try to wipe out Dom's team on the ground. What Otto's forces don't expect is that the heroes' cars are equipped with electromagnets, allowing them to manipulate vehicles around them. Gunfire follows them as Dom slows an enemy car. Letty and Ramsey use their magnet to pull an entire truck toward them. Han and Mia latch onto another vehicle, climb inside, and fight their way through to reach Elle. The guards have orders to kill them, but Mia and Han take them down with quick, heavy blows. One attacker escapes with a parachute but detonates a grenade midair. Back on the huge armored vehicle, the satellite antenna fails to receive the signal. Jacob climbs onto the roof to repair it himself, but one of Otto's men follows with orders to eliminate him. Otto calls Jacob to say the device is working perfectly, and that he has partnered with Cypher. Jacob fires back, calling Otto a spoiled rich kid, and vows that he's finished. The fight on top of the armored truck erupts with full force, and nothing in the streets can stop the showdown between Jacob and Otto's soldier. Letty and Dom use their magnets to push two enemy cars aside, sending them flying through the air for a moment. Both race toward the giant truck. Dom sees Jacob being knocked down and uses the magnet to ensure Jacob lands on a nearby car instead of the road, which crashes into Mia's vehicle. She manages to steady it, preventing Jacob from hitting the ground. Letty takes control of another car and uses it to take out one of Otto's men chasing them. Jacob jumps into Han's car but chooses a different path. Otto tries to calm Cypher, updating her on the situation, but Dom's interference frustrates her. Cypher decides she will end it herself. Elle opens fire on the armored truck, but her shots can't break through. Realizing the vehicle can't be stopped from the outside, the team switches to a risky plan. Using their magnets, they pull dozens of cars from every direction trying to block the truck's path, but it's not enough. If they fail, they're all done for. Dom asks Letty to position herself beside the truck so they can try to flip it over. They both move in toward the wheels, but heavy gunfire disrupts Letty's approach. Suddenly, Jacob appears beside Dom to help. Together, they line up by the front wheels and lift the rear of the enormous vehicle. But the pressure is too much. Their car is moments from being crushed. Without hesitation, Jacob jumps out through the passenger door. Dom scoops him up into his moving car, saving him from being crushed. Meanwhile, Roman and Tej finally reach the satellite. They attempt to activate the magnets to destroy it, but the equipment malfunctions. Roman suggests crashing into the satellite to break it. Tej refuses at first, doing so could kill them, or strand them in space with no fuel to return. Roman pushes him to believe, saying maybe their family wasn't invincible after all, maybe they've simply been lucky. On the ground, Dom reaches the convoy with backup. In space, Roman accepts the risk and chooses to die with dignity. Ramsey pushes them forward from the ground. Time is running out. Tej activates the nitrous, slams into the satellite and destroys it. Back on Earth, the team abandons the armored giant. Just as Dom is about to jump away, he sees an aircraft approaching. Cypher is piloting it. She locks onto him immediately. Dom activates an explosive and launches it forward, forcing the truck off its path. The massive vehicle tumbles down a hill. As Dom fights to steer it, Cypher fires missiles that flip the truck again. Dom escapes just in time before it plunges off the cliff straight into Cypher's plane. But she survives once again, revealing she was controlling the aircraft remotely. After the battle, Jacob approaches Dom and hands him back the keys to his car. He warns Dom that from now on he'll be on many people's radar. Dom remembers their father wasn't perfect and realizes he owes Jacob more than anger. He lets Jacob keep the car as a sign of forgiveness. Mia steps forward and gives her brother a heartfelt hug. They say an emotional goodbye, promising they'll see each other again. Weeks later, Dom takes his son to the racetrack. He explains that this is where he last saw his father, and it's the place where he learned everything he needed to know about life. In one final memory after Dom confronted Kenny all those years ago, he promised Jacob that everything would be all right, that no matter how hard things got, they would face it together as a united family. Back in Los Angeles, Dom's house has been rebuilt. The family grows, old friends return, and impossible reunions become reality. Santos mentions that Tego has opened a restaurant, and Dom tells his son to thank them for the meal. As everyone gathers around the table, there's one empty chair, until they all hear Brian O'Connor's car pulling up once again. In the post-credits scene, Deckard Shaw is seen training, punching a heavy bag that turns out to have a man trapped inside. Suddenly, someone knocks on his door, someone he never expected to see. That brings us to Fast X. We start with a flashback from 10 years ago during the events of Fast 5, when the crew pulled off the vault heist in Brazil. Back then, the team stole a vault full of cash belonging to drug lord Hernan Reyes. What we didn't know at the time was that Hernan had a son named Dante Reyes. Dante saw the whole thing unfold. He even tried to stop the heist, but Brian O'Connor and Dominic Toretto were too skilled, and the vault still ended up in their hands. Dante also watched as his father, Hernan, was killed by Agent Luke Hobbs. During the chase, Dante was thrown into the ocean and was believed to be dead, but he survived, kept quiet, and faked his death. For all these years, he's been planning his revenge on the family. And now he's finally making his move. Jump to present-day Los Angeles. A car is drifting across an empty lot. It's Dominic Toretto's son Brian learning how to drive with his dad guiding him. After a tough drifting lesson, Dominic tells him that fear is one of life's greatest teachers. But Brian insists he's not scared of anything. Dominic knows that's not true, but they wrap up and head home because Abuelita has come over for a family gathering. Inside, the whole crew is already there. Everyone's sharing food, talking, and enjoying the moment. Abuelita gives a small speech about their bond, their history, and the legacy they've built together. She raises a toast, and for a moment, everything feels calm and happy. Then we hear that Roman has a new mission coming up in Rome. The agency needs a special chip stolen from the city, and Roman Pierce is leading the job. Before he leaves, Dominic tells Han to team up with Tej and support Roman on the mission. Later that night, while Dominic is in the garage working on his car, Abuelita walks in and reminds him to keep his family close, because that's what truly matters. After the quiet moment passes, the night settles in. Dom checks on his son who's fast asleep and then sits with Letty. He tells her that little Brian claimed he wasn't scared of anything, but Dom knows that's not true. What really scares him is losing his family, especially his son. Things start to shift from peaceful to tense. Outside the family's safe house, a sleek DeLorean pulls up. Behind the wheel is a badly injured Cypher. Yes, the same Cypher responsible for Alina's death and the fate of the Furious. Dom still carries that pain, but he controls his anger and lets her inside. Cypher explains that she was confronted earlier by a man who called himself Dante. He arrived at her base without fear, even dragging in 2 of her dead guards. Dante demanded her tech team, saying he needed their skills to find Dominic Toretto. Cypher refused and ordered her guards to aim their weapons, but Dante laughed it off. He told her he wasn't threatening her life, he was threatening the families of her guards. The moment he mentioned their children, every guard turned their gun on Cypher instead. With everyone distracted, Dante grabbed her encrypted tech module and escaped before she could react. Meanwhile, Cypher is left fighting her own guards just to escape. She holds her ground for a while, but there are too many of them closing in. She tries to break away through an elevator, but one guard slips inside at the last second and shoots the cable, sending the lift crashing down. Using her quick thinking, Cypher uses the guard's body to soften the impact and manages to survive. That's how she ended up at Dominic Toretto's door, warning him that Dante Reyes is coming for him, his family, and his son. Moments later, FBI agents arrive and confirm everything Cypher said. Dom realizes the threat is real. One of the agents asks about Roman and Tej, and Dom explains they're already on a mission in Rome. But the agent tells him no mission was ever authorized. It's all a setup. So Dom and Letty rush to Rome, leaving little Brian with Aunt Mia. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew is already in Rome preparing to start what they think is a normal job. Roman speeds through the streets in a golden Lamborghini packed with power while Han follows in another car, chasing down a convoy. When the moment's right, they knock out the drivers. That's when Tej and Ramsey jump onto the truck and try to take control. But something's wrong, they can't steer. Suddenly, they realize who's behind it. Dante is watching the whole mission unfold. Using the tech he stole from Cypher, he can take control of any vehicle he wants. He starts by causing chaos, blowing up the lead Hummer protecting the truck, then destroying the rear one trapping Han. Dom and Letty finally arrive to help their friends just as things escalate. Tej goes inside the truck, and that's when he makes a terrifying discovery. There's no high-tech chip inside, just a massive bomb. The chase intensifies as Dante Reyes enjoys the chaos more than anyone could imagine. Toretto jumps into action, firing a harpoon from his car with a steel cable to stop the truck. But Dante sees what Dom is doing and opens the back doors, letting the giant bomb roll out. The truck reaches the tension of the steel cable, flips over, and crashes, but even that isn't enough to contain the situation. Roman and Hans slam their cars into it to slow things down, yet the bomb breaks free and begins rolling through the streets of Rome. Dom and Letty immediately chase after it as it tears through the city. Police join the pursuit, chasing Dominic, while Dante, not wanting to miss the show, grabs a motorcycle to follow the action up close. Before riding off, he plants a bomb on a nearby agency Hummer. Letty spots it just in time and warns little nobody, who barely escapes before it explodes. Letty tries to chase Dante, but he pulls a sharp move, turning the police onto her. She loses her bike, gets surrounded, and is arrested while Dante slips away. Meanwhile, the bomb keeps rolling, heading straight toward the Vatican. Dante plans to destroy it and frame Dom for the attack. Roman begs Dom to leave the area, but Toretto refuses. Instead, he hits a ramp on the bridge, launching his car into a crane arm. The impact forces the crane to swing around and knock the bomb into the river. It detonates underwater while Dante watches from a distance, enjoying every second of the destruction. Dom's car is nearly totaled, but he manages to escape the blast. Despite stopping the bomb, the shockwave still damages the Vatican, and now the entire Fast family is being framed as terrorists, with Dominic Toretto painted as their leader. We move to the agency's headquarters, where we meet Ames, the new director in charge. Soon after, Tess arrives at the agency headquarters. She's the daughter of Mr. Nobody, the former agency leader who trusted the Toretto family with dozens of missions. But after the Vatican incident, Ames, the new director, is determined to bring Dominic in. Tess disagrees. She knows Dom and his family have always served the agency well. Still, Ames calls for a vote and the international members agree to target Dom, ignoring Tess, who reminds everyone of the loyalty Dom had to her father. Ames wastes no time preparing his team and boarding a plane. His top priority is capturing Dominic, but first he wants Dom's son Brian. A SWAT unit storms Mia Toretto's house trying to take the boy, but Mia fights back fiercely. Still, there are too many agents, so Brian hides in the bathroom. Suddenly, Jacob Toretto, Dominic's brother, arrives with an explosive entrance, taking out the entire SWAT team with ease. Jacob tells Mia he's taking Brian because Dominic asked him to. Outside, Brian is disappointed to ride in a small car, but Jacob assures him it's for his safety. Next, we jump to Naples, where Tess enters a hidden agency bar. After dealing with a few thugs, she meets with Toretto. Tess shares information about the agency's plans and reveals that Letty is being held in a maximum security black site prison. She also explains that the man behind everything is Dante Reyes, the son of former crime boss Hernan Reyes. That's why Dominic asked her to help him get to Brazil, and as one final favor, to break Letty out of that prison. Tess agrees. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew arrives in London after being shipped inside a massive container. Since they're now internationally wanted, they have to stay hidden. Back at the black site prison, Tess reaches the remote facility holding Letty. After speaking with her and passing along a necklace from Toretto, Tess offers a plan to break her out. She wounds Letty on purpose and makes herself a hostage, all as part of the escape setup. We then move to Brazil, where a huge street party is underway. Dominic drives into the crowd and one of his old friends spots him. We also see Isabel Neves, the sister of Elena, who died in the Fate of the Furious. Both of them arrive with their cars, ready for a race. But Dom isn't here to race, he's here for Dante Reyes. Right on cue, Dante pulls up in a loud purple car, showing off designer bags and a stack of cash. After making a comment toward Isabel, Dante confronts Dominic, accusing him of stealing his father's vault and causing Hernan Reyes' death. He makes it clear he wants revenge by targeting Dominic's family. Dom fires back, telling him he'll stop him and admitting he burned the vault money years ago. Dante declares that Brazil now belongs to him, and suddenly many people in the crowd pull guns on Dominic. But the locals respect Dom's street code and Dio steps forward, returning the stolen cash and choosing Dom's side instead of Dante's. To settle things, they agree to race the old-fashioned way. 4 cars line up at the start. Before they launch, Dante tells Dominic he's been studying him for years, then asks a chilling question: who are you going to save today? He means it. And the answer will be clear very soon. The race kicks off and all 4 cars stay tight together. Dominic's old friend hits his nitro first and jumps ahead. But here's the twist. Dante planted explosives on both his car and on Isabel's car. He wants to force Dominic to choose who he'll save this time. Toretto slams into Isabel's car to push her clear, but Dante detonates both bombs anyway. Dominic's friend is killed in the blast, but Dom manages to stop Isabel's car just in time to save her.
I win, baby!
Dante speeds away, celebrating what he sees as another victory. Meanwhile, young Brian and Uncle Jacob stop at a gas station. Jacob snaps some photos of him and works on getting a new passport ready. Back in London, the rest of the crew is in trouble. Dante hacked their accounts and drained every dollar they had. They're completely broke, but in classic Roman fashion, he steps up to the plate. He reveals he's been carrying stacks of cash. Cash still works when nothing else does. Jacob and Brian then head to the airport dressed like they're heading on a vacation. But security cameras catch their faces and Ames is alerted. After checking the footage, he also sees Tess helping Letty escape and tracks their flights. He assumes Dominic is already in Rio de Janeiro. After rescuing Isabel, Dominic sits with her as she shows him old photos of Elena. During their quiet moment, Isabel shares what she knows about Dante. She has documents on his past and important information about his father, Hernan Reyes, intel that Dominic can use in the fight ahead. Meanwhile in London, the rest of the crew tries to buy supplies using the cash Roman brought. So they stop at an upscale cafe. There they bump into a man who runs one of the most reliable black markets online. They offer him money for equipment, but he betrays them immediately, reporting their location because of the huge reward on their heads. Their faces spread across every screen, leaving them no choice but to escape with the police closing in. With nowhere to hide, Han comes up with an idea. Back at the prison recovery area, Cypher and Letty regain consciousness. Cypher uses her skills to knock out the medical team by releasing gas into the room. She frees herself, then releases Letty as well. Cypher explains her escape plan and they move quickly. But there are only 4 minutes left before the lockdown resets. Letty refuses to leave without settling what Cypher did in the past, and a fierce fight breaks out between them. They trade blows, throw each other around, and both end up exhausted on the ground. In Rio de Janeiro, Isabel shows Dominic Toretto all the records she uncovered. Dante struggled with severe mental health disorders, which include psychopathic traits, and was sent to multiple institutions throughout his childhood. Each time, Hernan Reyes stepped in to pull him out. Out of all of Hernan's properties, everything was seized except for one abandoned police station still under Dante's name. Toretto decides to go there. Isabel offers to join him, but Dom tells her it's far too dangerous. They part ways, promising to race again someday. Dominic heads to the abandoned station, but Ames is already tracking him. Before Ames can move in, a group of locals tries to stop him, but he quickly takes them down and continues the chase. Meanwhile on the plane, young Brian and Jacob receive 3 small bottles from a helpful flight attendant. Since hitmen are hunting them, Jacob brings Brian to the bathroom for safety. 3 assassins rush after them, but Jacob waits at the door and takes them out one by one. The flight attendant, secretly a big fan of Jacob, seals the compartment to help him keep Brian protected. Down in the cargo hold, Jacob pulls out one of his high-tech gadgets, a small jet-powered glider. He takes off with young Brian, flying them toward a safe location. Meanwhile, Han and the rest of the crew arrive at a hidden base. Han steps inside and is immediately confronted by Deckard Shaw, who assumes Han is there for revenge over their past. This sparks a fast, intense fight between them, but it ends abruptly when an agency SWAT team bursts in to capture them both. Forced to work together, Han and Shaw take down the guards side by side. After the final agent is neutralized, Shaw pulls Han out of the line of fire and says, "Now we're even."
Now we're even.
Right after, the rest of the crew finally slips inside, since the door had locked behind Han earlier. Elsewhere, Toretto reaches the abandoned police station. Inside, he's met with a disturbing setup from Dante. The entire room is covered with screens stacked with information about Dominic's life. Photos of Brian, pictures of Mia, shots of Letty, and even old family memories. Dante has studied every detail. Right then, Dominic gets a call from him. Frustrated and furious, Dom tells Dante he can't believe someone born into privilege ended up so lost, with no honor, no loyalty, and no family. He tells Dante that without family he's nothing. Dante fires back, saying he never had a choice, that Dominic took everything from him by killing his father and destroying their fortune. Now Dante plans to return the pain by tearing Dom's life apart one piece at a time. Toretto demands they face each other, but Dante calmly says it's not time yet. There are still more people he needs to hurt. At that moment, we cut to Dante arriving at Isabel's home, where he kidnaps her. Realizing Dante is slowly gaining the upper hand, Dominic slams his phone down in anger. Right then, Agent Ames arrives with his full team and arrests Dominic. Toretto is now being transported to prison. At the same time, back at the agency's black site, Letty is making her escape. When she finally reaches the surface, she's stunned to find herself standing in the middle of Antarctica, surrounded by freezing winds and nothing else. With no way to survive out there, she heads back inside, where Cypher is waiting with coats and boots, joking that her escape plan comes with a little less frostbite. Meanwhile, at Deckard Shaw's hideout, the rest of the crew discovers a collection of powerful vehicles and heavy gear. It's there they realize Dante was the one who emptied their bank accounts, sending the money to hitmen all over the world to hunt them, and anyone who ever helped them. One of those targets is Shaw's mother. Enraged, Shaw arms himself, grabs the most valuable car he owns, and says time to dig some graves. While Toretto is being transported, Ames can't resist taunting him. He tells Dom his time is over, that being behind the wheel doesn't matter in this new world. But then Toretto quietly buckles his seatbelt. A second later, an explosion hits, flipping the entire transport truck. Ames and the other agents scramble out, and that's when the truth is revealed. Dante was the one who fired the shot, and he's not alone. He steps out of his car with Isabel held hostage, ready to kill her right in front of Dominic. This sparks an intense shootout between the agency agents and Dante's hitmen. Just when it looks like Dante has the upper hand and is seconds away from killing Isabel, Tess arrives out of nowhere. She takes out the remaining hitman with a powerful strike, catching everyone by surprise. With Dante cornered, he's forced to release Isabel. Toretto sees his opening and unleashes a brutal beatdown on Dante, even knocking out one of his teeth. But before Dom can stop him for good, a sniper working for Dante shoots Tess, and another hitman fires at Ames. Everything erupts into chaos. Dante's men move in to kill Isabel, but Toretto shields her with a car door, taking the danger head-on. Dante escapes in a helicopter and steals the global tracker device from Tess. With it, he now has the power to track Dominic's son. Thankfully, Tess isn't badly hurt, and she leaves with Isabel. Ames also survives thanks to his bulletproof vest. Meanwhile, Jacob and young Brian arrive at a hidden base where Jacob has been building a custom supercar. The kid is nervous since Dominic isn't with them, but Jacob assures him his dad will join them soon. They don't get much time for comfort. The alarms suddenly blare. Dante's hitmen have arrived ready to capture Brian. Jacob fires up the supercar. Surrounded on all sides, he tells Brian to launch one of the rockets. The kid nails it, blasting 2 enemy vehicles in true action movie fashion. The chase intensifies as Jacob and Brian destroy more cars on their escape route. Seeing the mayhem, Dante decides to join the pursuit and floors it in his own car. Jacob stays ahead, pushing the supercar onto the highway, doing everything he can to keep Brian safe. Meanwhile, aboard the agency plane, Toretto confronts Ames and demands he fly low enough for an exit. Ames complies, bringing the aircraft close to the runway. Toretto doesn't hesitate. He launches his car straight out of the plane, crashing down onto 2 enemy vehicles and destroying them on impact, then steps out without a scratch. After that, Toretto pushes the pedal down and finally reunites with his son Brian. But just as they come together, Dante jumps back into the chase on the highway. He hits his nitro and closes in on Jacob's car. At that moment, little Brian is busy trying to repair one of the rockets, giving Dante the perfect opening. Dante reaches out, snatches Brian, and pulls him straight into his own vehicle. He then rams into Dominic's car, forcing him into oncoming traffic, but Dom manages to dodge every car with precise control. More of Dante's hitmen arrive, aiming to eliminate Dom. That's when Jacob makes his final decision, choosing family above everything. He sacrifices himself by driving his car into the enemy convoy, causing a massive explosion that wipes out all the mercenaries. Sadly, Jacob loses his life, but Dom barely has a moment to breathe. 2 enemy helicopters swoop in, firing harpoons with steel cables that latch onto Dom's car and begin lifting him off the ground. He's left hanging, trapped between the helicopters. But at the last moment, Dom hits his nitro. The burst of power sends both helicopters crashing into each other, erupting into a giant explosion overhead. With the wreckage still dragging behind him, Dom swings back onto the road where Dante is speeding away with Brian. He locks onto Dante's car and begins the pursuit. Using the steel cable still attached to the destroyed helicopter parts, Dom swings the wreckage into Dante's vehicle, bringing him to a sudden stop. Both cars grind across the highway, sparks flying as they skid side by side. At that moment, Toretto yells for his son to jump into his car. Brian leaps and Dom pulls him in, getting him to safety. Meanwhile, Ames lands his plane nearby. Just when it seems like Dom has finally escaped crossing the dam with Brian, 2 large trucks suddenly pull up and block his path. At the same time, Roman and the rest of the team are flying toward the area in a plane coming from London. Out of nowhere, a missile strikes the aircraft, sending it crashing into the ground and erupting into a massive explosion. It looks like the entire crew has been wiped out. But deep down, we know the Fast family never goes out that easily. The real shock comes when it's revealed that Ames is the one behind the missile. He's been betraying Dominic from the start, pretending to be on his side while secretly working against him. As for the crew, of course they survive. It's fast and furious. Here's the real twist. Ames has been working with Dante the whole time. Years ago, he was connected to Hernan Reyes' organization and was even present during the vault heist. Since then, Ames and Dante formed a twisted partnership. Dom puts the pieces together, but he doesn't have time to react. Dante orders the 2 trucks to crush Dom and Brian where they stand. At the last possible second, Dom activates his rear traction and launches his car off the edge of the dam. The massive trucks collide behind him, exploding in a fiery blast. The flames chase him down the dam, but Dom hits the nitro and sends his car soaring into the water below. Dom and Brian escape from the submerged car alive and mostly unharmed. But Dante isn't finished. From a distance, Dante triggers the explosives on the dam, sending a massive flood rushing straight toward Dom and Brian. The screen cuts out, leaving their fate unknown. Meanwhile, in Antarctica, Letty and Cypher watch as a submarine rises from beneath the ice, and stepping out is Giselle, alive after all these years. She arrives just in time to rescue them, bringing their escape full circle. That's where the movie ends for now, with Dom and Brian's survival left unclear. But there's a post-credit scene. We cut to a military operation led by Agent Luke Hobbs. During the mission, he receives a mysterious call. It's Dante. Dante reminds Hobbs that he was the one who fired the shot that killed his father, Hernan Reyes. Now he's coming after Hobbs next. Hobbs removes his mask, ready for the fight, setting the stage for the next 2 confirmed installments of the Fast and Furious saga. And that's where the story pauses, until the next chapter continues. That's the entire Fast and Furious franchise recapped and up to date. You're now ready for the next movie, and rest assured this will be updated once Fast X Part 2 is released. As always, stay awesome and take care.